The exhausting work of Itsuki Shinomiya drains him both physically and spiritually. He questions his purpose and worries about his financial future. After long working days, he waits for the last train, broken from fatigue and depressed by hopelessness. He contemplates escaping to a parallel universe, realizing how his interest in anime and fantasy is slowly fading. Itsuki, imagining himself as a traveler or hero, feels he can no longer chase such dreams. Suddenly waking up, he realizes he is still stuck in reality, and at that moment the last train announcement sounds. Itsuki barely makes it to the last train, breathes a sigh of relief, and does not notice at all that a mysterious woman is approaching him. The mysterious woman confidently introduces herself as a goddess, and her appearance stuns Itsuki. She explains that Itsuki will be sent to a parallel world, although he protests and does not believe it. Suddenly, Itsuki finds himself in another world. He learns that he has died and is forced to start everything from the beginning. The goddess offers Itsuki skills for his new life, and he is stunned and uncertain. Itsuki hesitates whether to go to the parallel world or not, but the goddess assures him that his choice is right. He hesitates about which skill to choose, combat abilities or other options offered by the goddess. Itsuki decisively chooses a skill. He wants to live a cheerful and exciting second life. The goddess hesitates but accepts his choice, hinting that there might be better options. She escorts him to the first city, warning him to be careful on the road. Itsuki stands before a huge, terrifying monster and realizes with horror that this parallel world is much more dangerous. He tries to break free, calls the goddess, disappointed that this is not the slow life he was promised at all. Stunned by the harsh reality, he asks himself how his peaceful second life turned into chaos. Suddenly, a brave adventurer appears. He rushes at the monster and shields Itsuki from a deadly attack. Grateful and surprised, Itsuki notices the impressive appearance of the traveler and wonders who this new ally is. Itsuki meets Hayato, another wanderer who is also reincarnated into this strange parallel world. Hayato introduces himself. Itsuki tells about his reincarnation, and a bond immediately sparks between him and Hayato. Itsuki meets a group of female adventurers and is captivated by their diversity and charm. The women look at Hayato with interest and hint that they could unite into a supportive team. Surrounded by beautiful women, Itsuki begins to embrace the unexpected adventures and pleasures of his new life. Itsuki enjoys the company of his harem on the way to the city, overwhelmed by nostalgia for Japan. They discuss Itsuki's unique ability and curiously speculate on how it will help him in this new world. Itsuki proudly reveals his skill of earning pocket money daily without working. The group reacts with surprise and interest, immediately understanding how well this skill suits Itsuki in his desire to live leisurely. Filled with confidence, Itsuki accepts his new life, ready to face the challenges and joys that lie ahead. Itsuki contemplates what to do next. It has a skill, some pocket money, knowledge of alchemy, and experience in agriculture. He decides to join a guild and devote himself to alchemy, meanwhile avoiding fights and stress. The group arrives at a bustling town where the air is filled with anticipation and new opportunities open up for Itsuki. Itsuki admires the female adventurers and imagines a measured life surrounded by beauty. Filled with confidence, Itsuki embraces his desire for a slow life and is ready to fully enjoy his second chance. Itsuki embraces his new life, full of hope and determination. His adventure in a parallel universe is just beginning. Itsuki arrived in the city, biting into a beef shashlik on a skewer, and using Hayato's map was looking for the alchemy guild. Walking, he suddenly felt a tug on his back. He turned around and saw a small figure. A shy girl with cat ears stood silently. Itsuki offered her a piece of beef and noticed a collar on her neck. Someone shouted at him, explaining that she was a slave. Itsuki looked at her, not believing that such a young girl had such a fate. Slave trader Yasus approached, mistook Itsuki's concern for interest, and offered to sell him the girl. Itsuki distracted the slave trader by pointing randomly. The girl quickly shoved the beef into her mouth. While she happily ate, Itsuki smiled, waved goodbye, and quietly slipped away before the trader could notice. Finally, he reached the alchemist's guild, glanced once more at Hayato's letter, and prepared to meet the guild master. Itsuki carefully stepped inside and called out to announce his arrival, unsure how the meeting would begin. An old woman appeared, grumbling at his loudness, and turned out to be the guild master with a sharp gaze. The old lady stared sharply and, without the slightest hint of kindness, demanded to know what Itsuki wanted. Nervously, Itsuki introduced himself, explained why he came, and mentioned Hayato's letter. This eased the tension a bit. Recognizing the name Hayato, she muttered about how drifters managed to rise so quickly, hinting that he had somehow inexplicably become a nobleman. Suddenly she handed him an envelope and magic worked, catching Itsuki by surprise and illuminating his hand. Trials ended when she showed his guild card. Thanks to Hayato's trust, he was exempted from the exams. Itsuki requested training in alchemy, and the old woman muttered under her breath, repeating over and over, "Wonderful Reinrich." Frightened by her gaze, Itsuki quickly apologized and begged to be allowed to study. She responded with cautious consent. Reinrich looked him over, sensed potential in him, and quietly invited him to observe her work. She showed him how to mix medicines, took out the equipment, and earnestly asked him to carefully follow her instructions. Reinrich explained that magic works faster but warned, only manual labor hardens skills and makes the potion better. Reinrich warned Itsuki, to truly master alchemy, one must repeatedly practice the movements, not just cram or understand in theory. When he tried to mix the potion, Reinrich decisively corrected his mistakes and guided him with relentless attention and precision. Itsuki did not give up. He trained again and again, occasionally resorting to magic and concentrating hard, while Reinrich tirelessly adjusted his posture and technique. Exhausted and drained, Itsuki collapsed on the floor, but Reinrich praised his first successful batch of potion. Reinrich called to have food brought to her and urgently ordered her assistant Rit to feed the boy, who was already completely exhausted. Rito served food and tea. Itsuki greedily devoured his dish, and Reinrich could not stand it. She began to reproach his manners. Sipping tea, Reinrich enthusiastically praised Itsuki's potential and calmly suggested that he start working for her. Itsuki struggled with the taste but failed. Reinrich sharply pointed out his reaction. Reinrich offered him shelter and said, "Sell potions and put off the payment for later." Night fell. She asked if he needed money. He blushed and admitted that yes, he really needed it. The thief dashed through the market with a stolen wallet, and the crowd shouted for help. With a blade in his hand, he threatened to kill anyone who stood in his way, and panic spread through the street. Ahead, a calm warrior with cat ears noticed him and swiftly rushed forward before anyone could react. The thief rushed forward, but she easily repelled him, igniting rage in him. He cursed. Suddenly, the thief struck back so hard that she painfully fell to the ground. Sort proudly shouted, while Aina stood calmly. With one powerful, decisive blow, she subdued the thief. Aina checked the thief's condition, a little worried, but Sort reassured her he was still breathing. Townspeople recognized them instantly. Aina and Sort from Red Line, grateful passersby showered them with thanks and admiring looks. Reinrich and Itsuki noticed a crowd beginning to gather. She pointed the way to the Adventurers Guild and left. Standing in front of the guild, Itsuki was nervous but full of hope. He realized that his new life had truly begun. Under the same moon next to Hayato, Itsuki relaxed calmly, unaware that everything would change again tomorrow. Hayato stealthily approached Reinrich and asked her to give Itsuki a gift as a token of gratitude. Itsuki entered a suspicious tavern. He was immediately met with cold stares and dangerous men looking at him suspiciously. Itsuki felt awkward because of the crowd's attitude and moved cautiously, realizing that this place was not suitable for peaceful matters. When the cheerful girl behind the counter noticed him, an important feeling immediately appeared. This girl was probably trustworthy. Itsuki asked to buy potions and ore, and he was surprised to see that the girl agreed without any doubt or question. Tension hung in the air when others noticed him. They accused him of overpricing and doubted again whether his potions were really worth the money. Teresa calmly explained that the potions were second-rate, but all eyes were still sharply fixed on Itsuki. The man interrupted, speaking casually, but his movement frightened Itsuki, and all the bottles with elixirs fell. Terrified, Itsuki helplessly watched as the fallen bottles shattered and released a chaotic swarm of summoned insect-like creatures. The adventurers laughed at Itsuki and accused him. They said he was from the pharmaceutical guild and was trading forbidden potions. He remembered how Reinrich acknowledged the quality of Itsuki's potions, but the bald man mocked him and grabbed him by the hair. Cornered and enraged, Itsuki clenched his fist ready to fight for his pride, although the odds were against him. Angry over the destroyed potions, Itsuki swung in a fit of rage, but a sharp voice stopped his reckless strike midair. Aina, a knight in armor, easily deflected Itsuki's blow and stood between him and the inevitable disaster. Aina silenced everyone with a sharp voice, and Itsuki and the bandits froze instantly. Before Itsuki could respond, the sharp-eared warrior Sort scolded him and warned him to calm down. Girls in armor introduced themselves as Aina and Sortefimus, members of the formidable guild, Red Front. Everyone tensed. Aina confirmed she had been here yesterday, and Itsuki began to doubt their accusations. Itsuki proudly said that he was from the lesser-known Alchemists Guild and admired the beauty and armor of Aina. Itsuki showed the guild card. The crowd froze, and Aina and Sort decisively stepped forward to protect him. Aina waved it off and called it a misunderstanding. The bald man panicked and reluctantly apologized to avoid even greater trouble. Sort sharply scolded Itsuki, but he snapped back, blaming everything on a bad misunderstanding and damaged potion. Nae calmed the quarrel, offered compensation, and gently apologized on behalf of her team. Reinrich, the leader of Purgil, burst in, burning with rage, accusing them of destroying her products and refusing to accept the apology. Reinrich shouted, calling for the guild master, and declared that she would speak only when an official appeared here. Despite the guilt, Itsuki felt relief. Reinrich reminded him that blame should not be placed on the one who tried, but on those truly at fault. With decisive words, Reinrich severed the ties between the alchemical guild and the offenders. The crowd instantly froze in shock. Panic spread. The bald man begged for forgiveness, realizing that from now on they would have to buy potions at exorbitant prices. Reinrich directly scolded Aina, demanding justice for the destroyed works of her students, enraged that their passion was met with negligence. Reinrich showed a letter from Hayato, and the entire guild froze in shock. The hero himself supported him. Hayato, the legendary dragon slayer, was confirmed as a supporter of Itsuki, and everyone around froze in shock at this connection. Frightened by the wave of outrage, the guild agreed to pay 1,000,000 NAR and expel the guilty adventurers. Ryan once again questioned the sincerity of the payment, suspecting deceit, while others stood bewildered before her demand. Sword exploded over the huge amount. Reinrich fiercely defended Itsuki, shouting Hayato's name as the last resort. Faced with the astronomical sum, Ine stepped forward and firmly offered to take full responsibility herself. Tears welled up in Aina's eyes, and she said she would become a slave to repay. Everyone froze, stunned. Aina offered herself into slavery, resolutely deciding to repay the debt that weighed on her honor and pride. Shock swept through the guild. Itsuki and the bald man froze, silence pushing out all questions in their minds. Renrick stood before her confused and exhausted, questioning her sacrifice and demanding an explanation. The brazen thug begged for another way, but her determination shook the guild, risking their fragile reputation and position. Despite Ferris's protests, she stood her ground to save the guild's future. She had to give up her own freedom. Aina gently comforted Ferris even as doubts grew around her. Itsuki rushed to Reinrich with reproach for allowing it. Sword exploded with rage, rejecting the idea that spoiled potions justified Aina's choice to go into slavery. Aina stood her ground firmly and reminded Swordy that she had promised to take responsibility even at the cost of everything. She declared herself a knight ready to protect others, even if the adventurers disappeared tomorrow. Standing before the alchemist, Ine pleaded for forgiveness, while Reinrich, irritated, refused to support her plan. Itsuki panicked, recalling his dream of peace, but instead chaos followed him. Giants brought troubles and now slavery. Standing at full height, Itsuki announced their schedule. 4 days left, and everyone gathered for the final work sprint. Goods were ready, and the team unitedly raised their fists, determined to sell everything together. The crowd gathered at Market Square. Curious adventurers and townsfolk flocked here, drawn by the mysterious new shop. Intrigued by the noise, a group of girls watched from afar in fascination and decided to investigate together. When the crowd parted, the trio Renge, Aina, and Sort proudly stood on the front stage. The 3 girls in dazzling outfits instantly caught all eyes, and their confident stance turned the shop into the center of attention. Itsuki loudly cheered from the side, energetically praising their goods, and buyers flocked to their bustling stall. Wrench enthusiastically praised the strength and convenience of the gear. Sort added that it brought blessings, and it quickly earned customers' trust. Aina enthusiastically described its beauty and versatility. Both travelers and fashion enthusiasts were enchanted by this design. Excitement exploded. Everyone wanted the same things the girls wore, and Itsuki offered discounts to boost sales. Wendy and the team skillfully served the customers. Smiles and laughter filled the lively crowd at the market. The backstage meter approached Itsuki with pride. Their plan was working. He smiled quietly, relieved that everything succeeded. The plan worked. Shiro and others attracted attention, and demand for women's gear instantly increased. Mara reminded Itsuki about the borrowed item. He was delayed because he didn't like accepting favors from others, but he was still grateful for the opportunity. Reluctantly, Itsuki accepted her support. Mara admired his honesty. He seemed interesting to her, though a bit awkward. 3 days remained. Itsuki threw himself into full work, creating, selling, and repeating everything again and again because a burning deadline loomed ahead. With joy and relief, they celebrated together. The goal was achieved, and everyone gave their all with pride. Wendy blushed with gratitude, and Itsuki sincerely thanked her for helping come up with costumes and accessories. At Yasusa's mansion, Itsuki proudly handed over the entire sum. This money bought the freedom of Sort and Rengus. Yasu's confirmed 120 million NAR. Hitsuki refused dinner, kept his promise, and remained focused on his intentions. That night, everyone gathered to celebrate. They raised their glasses in joy. Sort cried from incredible relief. Laughter spread throughout the room. Itsuki drank a lot, satisfied. Others cheered loudly, and a few warned him not to overdo it. Renji shyly approached Itsuki and apologized for all past troubles. Itsuki listened calmly, carefully holding his drink. Under the moonlight they smiled. Everyone was safe, and that was enough. Gratitude peacefully ended the journey. Itsuki leaned out the window, took a deep breath, and using his mysterious forging skill, brewed a potion. After making several bottles, he confirmed that his skills had improved. Alchemy reached level 9 and the experience circle activated. He looked at the unfamiliar words floating in the air. Confused, he stared blankly at the blue morning sky. At home, Shiro remembered that expenses were rising. Itsuki pondered, more mouths, more effort to maintain the usual comfort. Wendy offered to help, but Itsuki firmly refused. As the one who had to provide everything, he vowed to do it all himself. Wendy's words touched him deeply. She did not want wealth, only wished to share happiness with Itsuki. Despite her support, Itsuki begged Reinhard to give more work, hoping that extra earnings would ease their burden. Reinhard sternly warned him. She admired his progress but reminded him not to neglect alchemy. Itsuki explained how the new skill appeared. During crafting, the experience circle activated and effortlessly raised his mastery in alchemy. Reinrich fell silent and listened to every word. She warned him, keep this skill a secret, otherwise it could attract unwanted attention. Reinrich warned him again, 9th-level alchemists are almost never encountered, and others are just waiting to exploit such valuable skills. She entrusted him with preparing the potion and gave 3 days to complete it. Itsuki cheerfully and immediately got to work. On his way home, Itsuki thought about Reinrich's instructions, felt the sharpness of her words, and realized how much he had grown. Recalling his old job, Itsuki felt pride. The life of an alchemist suited him better than working in a corporation. At that moment, the girl carelessly ran into him. He was thrown backwards, stunned by the unexpected impact. Itsuki was thrown back after the sudden collision, his head spinning and everything hurting. He groaned, stunned by the blow. When he opened his eyes, he suddenly realized his face was awkwardly pressed against the stranger's thigh. The girl was sitting on him, dizzy. She grimaced and, rubbing her head, looked confused. The girl called him older brother. Itsuki screamed in panic, begging her to get off immediately. She twitched and accused him of touching her. Their tangled position only worsened and attracted the shocked glances of nearby passersby. Itsuki sat by the fountain, stunned. The girl kept apologizing incessantly, blaming gravity for the chaotic collision. She warmly introduced herself as Orgal, and her bold charm stunned him, especially when she guessed that he was a vagabond. Orgal, as if it were meant to be, casually mentioned that her grandfather was the master of the entire town. Itsuki could hardly comprehend how wealthy she was. Itsuki, overwhelmed with panic, begged her not to mention that incident. She agreed but said that he was a bit scary. Orgal herself insisted on joining him. Ignoring his objections, she declared it a date and happily followed him. Standing on the observation deck, Itsuki and Orgal admired the peaceful town, bustling with life and joy. Itsuki pondered his old world. There were fewer smiles and more pressure there. This world, though imperfect, seemed welcoming. He admitted it was difficult but spoke enthusiastically about the warmth of people who laughed and lived closely together. Moved by his words, Orgal quietly thanked him. Her gaze softened as he opened his heart. With a bright smile, Orgal dashed ahead. Itsuki warned her once more not to trip on the descent. Yasus arrived by carriage, dismissed the guards, and calm and composed prepared to meet the lord. Yasus introduced himself, and he was led to the magnificent lordly estate to report in person. Yasus briefly summarized the incident with the wrench. No rules were broken, but the noise from the people demanded some reaction. He insisted on justice but also asked for leniency, hinting that Itsuki was not like the others and requesting that the decision take into account the subtle nuances of the situation. The master agreed. Itsuki was strange but intriguing. Past connections with Yasus put everything in place. When asked, Orgal indifferently admitted that she had met Itsuki, and a thoughtful, perhaps even interested expression appeared on her face. Relaxing in the chair, she smiled slyly and admitted that Itsuki might still be her type. Orgal sat confidently and casually showed her interest in Itsuki, while Yasus responded with quiet anxiety and slight surprise. Yasus noticed that Orgal's condition was worsening, and although she was smiling, her cough revealed the truth about the seriousness of her state. Orgal admitted that the transfer of power in politics was failing, and seeing how Hayato and others were barely holding on, she reluctantly began to relinquish power. Yasus quietly pondered, could that vagabond Itsuki achieve what others had clearly failed at even before Yasus? Yace advised restraint, brushing off her hopes as premature, and Orgal silently doubted his judgment and tone. Yas quietly apologized and left, leaving Orgal alone. She watched him go, and uncertainty swirled in her mind. The lonely Orgal looked out the window and quietly wished she had more time to wander the city. Outside, laundry danced in the wind, and Wendy and Range hung sheets and quietly talked under the light breeze. A strong wind swirled leaves around them, and Rang smiled and assured Wendy that helping with household chores was not a problem at all. Range confirmed that the master had summoned Ain and Sort, and could not hide his admiration for Wendy's beauty. Itsuki was busy, so Wendy suggested going for lunch. Range agreed, and they headed inside to eat. At the table, Shiro ate quietly. Wendy asked gently, and he replied that the food was delicious. Noticing Rengi's hesitation, Wendy asked cautiously. Renge blushed and, despite her silence, insisted that the food was tasty. Suddenly confused, Renge stood up and apologized. She had never truly said she was sorry for her actions before. Wendy also apologized with a burden of guilt on her chest, and Itsuki comforted her. Although they were still almost strangers, Itsuki's care was evident. Reng finally confessed, once she had tried to kill the one whom Wendy now deeply loves and faithfully serves. With a trembling voice, Renge bowed deeply and, feeling sincere shame, finally apologized to Wendy with all her heart. Wendy nodded gently in response. Itsuki had already forgiven her, so Wendy accepted it and moved on. Smiling warmly, Wendy explained her forgiveness. Her love for Itsuki prompted her to embrace peace and healing. Then Wendy stepped aside. Renji agreed to bring food to Itsuki, and Shiro warned cautiously. Wendy quietly laughed, hiding her anxiety behind laughter. Itsuki worked tirelessly, often skipping meals, not even noticing it. Her thoughts stopped on him, on his fatigue, and on his determination. She wanted to somehow ease it. Now she whispered the truth to herself again. She had fallen in love with her gentle master. Every confession, even silent, squeezed her chest. She was afraid that these feelings would never reach him. But it reminded her he was kind to everyone. She quietly wondered if she really stood out. Wendy snuggled closer to Itsuki, recalling that warmth. He had not touched her since that quiet night. Longing filled her chest. She needed to know for sure. She needed proof. She reached out, hoping he would respond sincerely. When he held her, Wendy closed her eyes. She wanted to feel truly loved, not forgotten. Later, sitting quietly, she felt ashamed. He truly valued her, so why did she still doubt? Shiro gently embraced her. Wendy's voice trembled. She confessed that it was her heart that hurt. Shiro gently soothed Wendy's aching heart. Wendy quietly confessed. Maybe the pain still remained inside. Meanwhile, Itsuki rummaged through ancient volumes. The recipe for the panacea was blurred, too complicated, and key instructions were missing everywhere. He came across a description of a miraculous treatment capable of restoring all that was lost: body, heart, soul. Through a circle of experience, a potion was born in his palm, light swirling in response to his focused will. Itsuki carefully studied the result. The medicine worked, but someone's life might pay the price for it. Renge brought lunch from Wendy. Itsuki felt that something was wrong. He thanked her, but his thoughts had already drifted away. He looked again at the potion. If others found out, would they fear him or seek him out? Itsuki doubted the origin of the potion. He doubted his own skill, and was not sure whether divine guidance was involved. Shiro peeked through the door and sensed Itsuki's tension. He remained silent, not wanting to raise alarm. Wendy greeted him warmly. He spoke little, choosing silence over truth, and something deep stirred in his chest. Later, he sincerely thanked Wendy for the lunch. Meanwhile, Renjin Shiro offered his help, trying to lighten the mood a bit. Wendy did not look into his eyes. She smiled gently, hiding her unease. She offered tea, concealing what she could not say. Wendy lowered her head. Her silence spoke louder than words. Itsuki felt a hidden burden within her. They quietly returned home, and Itsuki sensed something strange in the air. Restless tension was growing inside him. Aina and Sort entered, armor-battered, and tired faces spoke of a danger far more terrifying than they could have imagined. A warm bath brought them relief. Faces relaxed, muscles calmed, souls slowly recovering after brutal battles. Later, sitting side by side, they recounted that the guild's order had gone awry, and Itsuki listened, silently worried. The guild gave a clear task: to catch the mutated Vorpal rabbit that had escaped from its trader's hands. The creature seemed quite ordinary, but was intelligent, cunning, and strategic, able to control wild beasts through mysterious signals. Sort told of their failure. The rabbit easily outran them. Itsuki teased her, and she swore revenge. With determination, they gathered the group again. Rengar returned to Aina and Sort, and their chances in the chase noticeably increased. Before they set off, Itsuki waved them goodbye. Shiro suddenly also joined the team. The team moved out, now complete. Shiro approached Sort and asked for a child companion. She believed teamwork mattered more than brute strength alone. The group set out on the mission, joking about dinner, while Itsuki stayed behind, watching them confidently disappear. When the others left, the house fell silent. Itsuki and Wendy realized they would dine alone tonight. In the silence, old memories surfaced, and you suddenly recalled how long ago it was when it was just them. When Wendy slowly turned around, the tension increased, and Itsuki felt anxiety. He realized they were alone again. Dinner started calmly. Itsuki tried to behave normally, but Wendy's gaze made everything strangely personal. Later that night, Itsuki stood alone, and the silence with the moonlight made him feel Wendy strangely clearly. Memories of awkward moments flashed, and he reminded himself, no longer a teenager, he had to behave like an adult. Embarrassed but determined, Itsuki entered. His heart was pounding, but he forced himself to respond confidently. Alone in the bath, Itsuki carefully rubbed himself, repeating to himself, "Do it properly this time." Itsuki dressed carefully, rehearsed properly, then brushed his teeth, rinsed his mouth, and cheered himself up with a snack. He reached her door and froze, not daring. Silence hung in the air while he, with trembling fingers, prepared to knock. Doubts crept in. Was Wendy ready too? Imaginary reproaches and nervous noise swarmed in his head. Hearing Wendy's voice, and he panicked. Shooing away strange thoughts, he tried to retreat with embarrassed steps. Wendy gently opened the door and calmly invited him inside, and he, stunned and confused, stumbled. They sat silently. The air around was heavy. Both did not know how to start this long-postponed moment. Wendy offered tea, and Itsuki, overwhelmed with nerves and determination, gently stopped her hand even before she stood up. Seriously and with a firm voice, he called her by name, in his eyes with such confidence that it erased all previous doubts. He squeezed her hand, his voice trembling. He asked if she could still keep their shared promise. She did not say a word, squeezing his hand. Her eyes were tender. The answer came quietly. Wendy smiled gently, her hands trembling. Closing her eyes and breathing evenly, she whispered a quiet yes. Wendy stepped closer, spoke softly, giving her heart, asking to stay by his side forever. Before she could finish speaking, Itsuki leaned in. Their lips met, sealing a bond that had waited for years. Her eyes filled with tears. She pressed him tightly to herself and finally whispered, "I love you." Itsuki silently waited as Wendy came closer, and the moon above them quietly watched as their silent distance melted away. The curtain gently swayed while he held her. She did not resist. His warmth made her tremble slightly. When his lips drew near, Wendy froze. Their hearts pounded wildly, and they did not know which was louder, desire or nerves. Fingers instinctively clung to the fabric. No one spoke, but something intimate flashed between them, uncertain, restrained, yet no less mutual. Itsuki quietly apologized. Wendy, with a blush on her cheeks and breath caught, was silent, but her gaze lingered longer than before. Wendy gently wrapped her hand around his neck. Her whisper radiated warmth. She did not want regret. Clothes were left behind and lay quietly, while outside the night stood still, not feeling at all the emotions raging inside. Wendy stood before him without a shadow of shame, and Itsuki, sitting silently, seemed to absorb her gesture with hesitant admiration. She approached slowly, her eyes soft. Itsuki reached out his hand, feeling her trust. No words were needed. They lay side by side, their breathing intertwined. His hand froze, searching for her gaze. He nodded, silent, confident, sincere. In the dim light, Wendy pressed against him. Her breathing quickened, emotions boiled, thoughts scattered, and warmth enveloped her. They moved as one, uncertain but without fear, and in that moment silence said everything they dared not speak. Between gasps and closeness, all hesitation vanished. They pressed even closer, every movement filled with quiet vulnerability and trust. Whispers became names. Their bond grew, not haste but a quiet, strong closeness held not only by desire. She instinctively reached for his hand. He gently squeezed her palm, becoming an anchor for her amid the storm of feelings. The moon slowly faded as if the night was retreating. Outside their quiet chamber, the whole world was wrapped in silence. Morning came with the gentle song of birds. Sun rays seeped through the curtains and flooded the room with golden color which had only recently been in shadow. Itsuki stirred, heavy eyelids, the warmth of the previous night still lying nearby, real, calm, and deeply soothing. He quietly got up, glanced once more over his shoulder, and felt something inside him had changed. It became lighter but more confident. Wendy was sleeping soundly, her smile sincere and defenseless. No words were spoken, but everything between them was understood. Itsuki gently tossed her hair back. A smile appeared on his face, satisfaction read in his half-asleep eyes. Wendy flinched at his voice. Still lying down, she slowly opened her eyes and softly met his gaze. She greeted him warmly, quietly, and close by, without explanations, just one simple shared morning. Their lips touched again, not hurriedly, but calmly. Silence sealed the new beginning. Somewhere in the trees beyond, something stirred. Rustle quietly and quickly rustled the bushes, watching intently. In another part of the forest, Sort was running wildly, chasing a thieving rabbit with furious rage. She shouted that this time she would catch it. The rabbit flipped in the air, teasing her with a sly smile. She dashed forward but missed again. The tail sharply twitched and kicked up dust, and she crouched down in frustration. Panting, she growled, her eyes flashed, unwavering. She would not allow herself to be mocked twice during one hunt. Suddenly, a deep roar sounded behind. Sort turned around, her face pressed against the fur of the giant beast. The rabbit was gone. The beast's paw struck forward. Sort barely dodged, her body low and tense, all senses focused on the fight. Sort sharply changed position, her eyes tracking the movement as the beast lunged, wounded, but still fierce. The rabbit ran again through the grass, weaving underfoot, while Ring stood nearby ready, attentively waiting to see where the path led. But she did not retreat a step as the rabbit approached, adjusted her stance, and instantly calculated its frantic direction. The rabbit charged. Ring's hand instantly caught the weapon in midair. Her movement stopped smoothly and precisely. The swing of the keys missed as the rabbit twisted in the air. She spun sharply to catch it before it escaped. She instantly gathered herself, sensing its speed, and sharply intercepted the stance to change the direction of its escape. The rabbit dashed upward, but its flight ended right at the cliff where Ine waited. With a sudden strike, Ine's weapon intercepted in midair, and the rabbit howled, flipping, rolling straight into captivity. Ine landed precisely, dust settled, and Range and Sort erupted with joy. Finally, they had brought down their elusive target. The team gathered after the hunt. Once the request was fulfilled, the trio sighed with relief and quietly teased each other. Sort long gazed at the captured beast. Its worn, patched body unsettled her. Something unnatural pulsed beneath the skin. The rabbit twitched strangely, laughing to itself. From the shadows, another figure stirred, alert and watchful. Sort froze, eyes wide open. The beast leapt up, its body twitching oddly, and struck her right in the stomach. Before she could react, it swiftly jumped away. Silence fell. Sort stood motionless, shock evident on her face. A sudden surge of energy so frightened the weakened rabbit that it was thrown aside just as Shiro appeared nearby. One rabbit screamed sharply, its body sparking with static electricity, a sign that something much more powerful was approaching. Elsewhere, Itsuki was easily handling household chores, while Wendy stood on the stairs watching him, interested but silently pleased. A knock on the door broke the silence. Two entered the room, a young girl and an older butler, their faces revealing nothing. They stood silently at the threshold, holding their breath. Whatever message they brought, it would overturn everything. After the chaos with Renge, Itsuki was finally enjoying peace until Orgal suddenly appeared. To explain where she came from, the story rewinds to the time when Itsuki had not yet inherited the estate. In the dungeon, the monster lunged forward, jaws wide open, ready to tear to pieces anyone who dared to come here. Hayato rushed into the attack and instantly sliced through the demon's torso before it could react or injure his friend. Focusing his gaze, Hayato tightened his grip, preparing to deliver the next blow and end the fight. After the battle, Hayato sheathed his blade and scanned his friends, checking if everyone was safe. Letty smiled and reported that there were no injuries as they gathered and moved deeper into the crumbling dungeon corridor. Chris looked exhausted, so Hayato suggested taking a break and gave the group some rest. Letty handed Hayato a drink, while the group gathered around the boiling cauldron regained strength near the ancient ruins. They talked about how Orgal was weakening and confirmed that the rare elixir was hidden deep in the last chamber of the dungeon. Letty recalled the assassination attempt and realized that because of Orgal's status, Orgal had become the target for enemies. Hayato calmly responded, acknowledging the motive but insisted that justice must be served for such treacherous acts. As they walked, Letty remembered Itsuki and aloud asked how Hayato's friend was outside the dungeon. Hayato, sipping tea, explained that he couldn't contact Itsuki but promised to bring ore as a token of gratitude. The lady admitted that she did not dislike Itsuki, and Hayato teased her about the magical pouch she had given. Suddenly, the hungry partner lunged at Letty. He mistook her cloak for food. She lifted Letty's skirt in protest and demanded proper food, regardless of anyone's reactions or decency. Emily and Chris firmly asked them to calm down, reminding everyone that monsters could hear their screams. Chris calmed Hayato, assuring her that she was fine, while Letty scolded Mii again for her frivolity and inappropriate behavior. When the break ended, the group gathered again and moved on, advancing deeper into the ancient halls of the dungeon. They solemnly announced their next mission to rescue the feudal Lord Orgal, marking a new turn in their journey. Orgal appeared with the butler Soma, suddenly requesting an urgent meeting with Itsuki, saying the matter was extremely important. The visit caught Itsuki by surprise and he fidgeted, trying to compose himself and respond clearly to her. They sat down for tea. Itsuki nervously apologized, and Orgal laughed and advised him to just relax. She casually brushed off past problems, her words involuntarily making him blush, while Soma stood silently behind them. Orgal introduced herself again, explaining that she was a halfling and already an adult, and Soma formally confirmed who they were once more. Orgal asked about the estate. Itsuki explained that he had inherited it and described the spacious, well-furnished interior. Interested in the bath, Orgal casually asked for access to it, obviously showing her interest in the offered amenities for relaxation. While they were chatting, Orgal suddenly started coughing. Soma became worried, and Itsuki enthusiastically praised the special bath in his estate. Seeing that her condition was worsening, Itsuki quietly asked Wendy to bring something important to help Orgal recover. Wendy returned with a rare elixir. Soma carefully accepted it, and Orgal watched with barely noticeable interest. Orgal hesitated but still drank the potion. Maria calmed her down, and Itsuki insisted that the price did not matter. The effect was immediate. Orgal's strength returned, and she quietly thanked everyone, relaxing in her chair. Itsuki asked with relief why she had really come, and the conversation became more serious. Orgal finally revealed her cards, explaining why she was investigating Renge from Redline, mentioning those past cases they already knew well. She told about her findings gathered from local testimonies, guard statements, and Yashisu's report, so that all this would be officially reviewed. Orgal took a deep breath, acknowledged the situation, recalled previous agreements and people's characters, and calmly explained that she would investigate without bias but thoughtfully. She decided this time to turn a blind eye to the incident, although she usually strictly followed the rules at work. Since no witness confirmed that case, Orgal decided to dismiss it, and Itsuki sincerely thanked her. But Orgal instantly changed tone, sternly pointed a finger at Itsuki, and angrily reproached him for constant pranks that disrupt order. She vented her irritation, listing complaints against him, while Itsuki weakly defended himself under the barrage of accusations. Soma politely asked Itsuki to avoid further incidents for the sake of the oracle and bowed deeply and sincerely. Suddenly, Orgal fell into a coughing fit again. Soma held her back, although she pushed away help and insisted she was fine. Barely speaking, Orgal apologized and explained that she had to leave, her health was deteriorating. She was quietly taken away by carriage. Itsuki and Wendy watched from the gates, growing more anxious. Entering the house, Itsuki admitted he was worried. He was still unsure about her health. Sort cheerfully welcomed their return home. A group of adventurers returned proudly, reporting success. Each stood confidently, and their faces and posture showed the mission had been difficult. They solemnly presented Itsuki with their prize. Despite minor troubles, they insisted everything went smoothly. While they shared stories, a rabbit suddenly jumped out of a bag, and in the middle of the conversation, everyone froze in surprise. The rabbit wildly jumped up, lifting Wendy's skirt, immediately shocking her and Itsuki. Embarrassed, Wendy scolded Itsuki, trying to cover herself. He awkwardly reached out to prevent the rabbit from escaping. The rabbit suddenly slipped under Wendy's skirt, and everyone was confused. Shiro immediately rushed to pull him out. Later, Orgal lay in the bed of her estate, exhausted and barely able to speak. Two servants quietly whispered about how her condition was worsening. Orgal fainted again, and her strength was steadily fading. The old man confirmed that Lord Hayato's potion did not work, and despair slowly appeared on his face. They said that only a spiritual potion could save her from this deadly curse, and Orgal's condition was rapidly approaching a critical limit. Itsuki sat in silence, tormented by doubts. Magical medicine could not relieve Orgal's suffering. Itsuki opened the box. Inside lay a strange dagger, and he hoped it was the answer they needed. Itsuki washed his face, looked at his stubble, and wondered, maybe invent a rotary trimmer to shave more efficiently. Thoughts spun, and he, confused by the consequences and social turmoil, imagined Aina as a slave. Coming to, Itsuki rejected everything. He could not accept her offer and could not allow this to continue. Exhausted, he explained that slavery helped no one. The room instantly fell silent. Glances darted around as logic displaced emotions. Itsuki sincerely thanked her and refused to accept her sacrifice. She saved him, so he would never allow her to be made a slave. Itsuki stated the truth directly. Hayato's involvement meant nothing, and he stood by his decision without any obligations or regrets. He smiled, calming Aina. Everything was fine. he would just prepare the potion again, the one she considered spoiled. Aina resisted, proving her worth, but he sharply cut her off. He would not allow her beauty to be enslaved. Aina froze, embarrassed by his words. Sort growled protectively, and emotions swirled through the stunned room. Reinrich, intrigued, suggested using Aina as a workforce. Her position made this proposal strangely attractive to others. Reinrich challenged Dina. If she insisted on staying, she would have to earn respect. Aina and Sort froze in silence as Reinrich walked away. Itsuki followed behind, confused but composed. Later that night, Itsuki collapsed, powerless, with everything replaying in his mind. Could this really be his home? As sleep overtook him, dreams came alive. The promise of tomorrow flickered, peace, duty, and perhaps even a future with her. He woke up in shock. Aina was lying on him, her warmth still felt, and reality blurred between awkwardness and something deep. Itsuki froze, suddenly awake. He saw that Aina was lying on him, too close for morning calm. He jumped back, confused and panicked. Aina stood still, uncertain, her presence completely sincere and vulnerable. She quietly explained. Reinrich told her that this was the duty of a slave. Her innocence sharply contrasted with the awkward tension. Itsuki cried out in despair, accusing Reinrich of manipulation, and begged Aina to stop and get dressed. Aina, embarrassed, turned away and asked if there was something wrong with her. Doubts and silence spread in the air. Aina's confidence wavered. She began to doubt herself aloud, mistakenly interpreting Itsuki's panic as rejection and proof that she was not good enough. Itsuki did not have time to explain anything when Sort burst in, shocked by what she saw. She shouted, "Aina!" With lightning fury, Sort flipped in the air, ready to punish Itsuki for the alleged offense. Her flying kick hit with such force that Itsuki groaned in pain, and the room instantly turned into chaos. Calling him a beast, Sort swore to save Aina. Itsuki desperately tried to explain the misunderstanding. Itsuki, who was summoned by the goddess, found himself in another world. There he was humiliated and faced terrible monsters. While he was recovering, he came across a strange girl in armor who decided to sell herself into slavery. They sat at the table, ate, and between bites calmly planned a visit to the slave trader right after lunch. Aina enthusiastically suggested titles for Itsuki, misunderstanding slavery, and shocked everyone with her frank, almost solemn devotion. She casually mentioned the marriage rule of her race. Itsuki was embarrassed, and a stunned silence fell over the table. Sort insisted on buying Aina's freedom, but she refused. She wanted sincerity earned through her own sacrifice. Itsuki tried to lighten the mood with a joke about money, but the tension between them still lingered. Aina stood firm, and Sort, sensing her determination, agreed to go with her, even though it was dangerous. As always protective, Sort warned Itsuki, "Don't touch Aina, I will personally guard her." Despite everything, Aina once again firmly confirmed her choice, still calling him "my lord," and they continued on. Itsuki could not understand what drove Aina. He admired her determination, but her actions still deeply troubled him. He resolutely adjusted his tie and silently prepared for everything that might lie ahead. Orgal received a neat washing of his back from the maid. Her slender body was weakened by illness. She asked to have her hair done, insisting that she must look neat in case an opportunity suddenly arises. While she was dressing, her maid suddenly whispered to Orgal about her sincere love for Angel. The maid gently reminded Orgal how much everyone loves her for protecting the city and its people. Orgal, weakened but composed, begged her maids not to lose hope and to hold on until the very end. Summoning her willpower, Orgal acknowledged her fear but desperately wanted to see the light of her world again. She opened the curtain, looked outside, and quietly reaffirmed her duty to the town she loved. Orgal, finally ready, received the messenger of the Alchemy Guild and allowed Itsuki to speak urgently. Itsuki knocked, apologized awkwardly, but was sternly warned, "Do not come again without prior arrangement." When he was led inside, Itsuki bowed respectfully. Orgal, sitting like a true ruler, asked the reason for his sudden visit. Orgal gently smiled at his modesty. Itsuki apologized but asked him not to be so tense. With calm determination, Itsuki stepped forward and said he had something important to give her. While others watched with curiosity, he extended a glowing vial, the very powerful remedy called miraculous. The servants were shocked, and Itsuki dodged questions about the origin of the remedy, giving no direct answer. Itsuki challenged Orgal, hinting that her ailment was not just a disease but something deeper and otherworldly. Soma revealed the truth. Orgal's condition is not a disease but a powerful and dangerous magical curse. Finally, they explained why the butler betrayed. He was manipulated by Dadel, the one behind the assassination attempt. Orgal explained Dardarel's motive was political advancement, not loyalty. He sought power through her downfall and replacement. Orgal noticed that Hayato failed the task. Itsuki admitted this and sadly regretted judging him so harshly. Itsuki stepped forward and extended the miraculous medicine. He sincerely believed it would be enough to save Orgal. Orgal took the vial with trembling hands, overwhelmed with emotions, and whispered a grateful thank you. Those present bowed deeply, thanked Itsuki, and begged that he be properly rewarded for this miracle. Orgal understood what retribution was. Itsuki froze, not knowing what to ask for in return. Itsuki modestly and sincerely offered to repay everything to make the town peaceful and cozy for living. Orgal agreed with a quiet smile, her eyes warm with trust. She accepted his terms. Later, Itsuki was strolling through the town, noticed something strange near the gates, and, overcome with curiosity, turned back. He approached the gates where the guards were actively arguing with someone. Itsuki calmly asked if everything was all right. The guard recognized him with surprise. Itsuki saw that sort and the others were already waiting and scolded them for being late. Itsuki assured the girls that he was fine. They ran outside, clearly worried about his safety. To ease the tension, Itsuki invited everyone for a drink and treated them to lift their spirits. They walked side by side under the sky, laughing. Calm had returned, and their bond quietly deepened again. Itsuki, with a cup of tea, admires the peaceful sky and thinks about peaceful days after delivering the miraculous medicine. Softly smiling, Itsuki takes a sip of Wendy's tea, enjoying its warmth and how it soothes his soul. Reinrich and Yasus arrive, intrigued by the tea, and immediately start asking Itsuki about his recent absence. Darwin sharply comments on the enslavement of Reinjez and teases Itsuki, saying he has brought another woman to his home again. Surrounded by noisy guests, Itsuki regrets that they are here and longs again for a quiet, unhurried tea time. Itsuki begins to be wary. Is another assassination attempt being prepared among these powerful guests? Although worried, he sipped tea while the guests enthusiastically examined the impressive details of his home. Darwin does not hide his admiration for the luxurious bath and alchemical laboratory, and Reinrich nods and says that this equipment is of the highest level of magic. Mera, Darwin's daughter, excitedly shows how much can be earned from the alchemy room, and her chatter about business entertains Itsuki. Despite his charm, Itsuki hesitates. Darwin's adopted daughter with an eccentric brother, a hassle he would have avoided altogether. Darwin suddenly demands an answer, pressing Itsuki, forcing him to say where the so-called miraculous drug came from. Everyone's gazes sharpened. Ryan, Rick, and Yasus fell silent, and Itsuki suffers, unable to find the right explanation. Itsuki nervously laughs and says that the goddess gave him that drug as soon as he found himself in this new world. For now believing the story, Darwin changes his tone and sharply demands to see Itsuki's personal guild card. Itsuki hesitated and pushed away the request. It is clear how nervous he is because he is afraid to show what is written on the card. Darwin reads Itsuki's guild card aloud and falls silent in amazement. There are rare skills, such as spatial magic and others. Itsuki nervously explains the skill pocket money, which gives one large payment daily. Everyone reacts with disbelief. Reinrich doubts Itsuki's innocence and feels that behind these miracle drugs lie deeper secrets and acquired abilities related to them. Just as Darwin presses again, Orgal bursts in and attention instantly shifts away from Itsuki's lie. Everyone gathered again and Orgal easily explained why she returned. Her lively energy dispelled all suspicions. Orgal stuns everyone, sits on Itsuki's lap and cheerfully, without hesitation, calls him older brother. Itsuki awkwardly refuses intimacy, but Orgal does not let go. Reinrich mocks her childish behavior, even though she is over 40. Orgal explains that she is a legitimate halfling, eternally young thanks to elven ancestry. Mara silently watches, embarrassed. Orgal insists on bathing together and reminds Itsuki of a promise that he clearly does not remember. Darwin apologizes and leaves the interrogation, suggesting to celebrate later alone, though not without suspicious looks and teasing jokes. Orgal energetically clenched her fist and exclaimed excitedly that it's time to go straight to the bath. Itsuki nervously accompanies Orgal and Mera, unsure of her recovery despite her being so cheerful and clingy. In a carefree mood, Orgal undresses, humming confidently as she prepares to immerse herself in a relaxing bath. Itsuki watches in shock as Orgal runs in naked, not believing that she is really over 40. Suddenly, Mera appears in revealing lingerie and indifferently says she is joining, and Itsuki simply loses his head from panic and embarrassment. Itsuki sits in the bath with both girls, overwhelmed with embarrassment from the absurdly intimate situation unfolding. Orgal enthusiastically praises the bath. Itsuki gives all credit to Mera, and she quietly smiles with satisfaction. Orgal tells about his long history with the group and smiles as he recalls chasing after Darwin and Yassi's. Suddenly she asks about Wendy and the Red Line girls, eagerly inquiring whom Itsuki loves the most. Myra boldly interrupts and sharply says that she will not tolerate talks about other women in her presence. Trapped in the bathroom, Itsuki panics. Both girls pressure him and demand a romantic choice right now. Orgal and Mara stayed overnight, chatting endlessly near Itsuki. He could neither sleep properly nor rest. Tired and indifferent to the mood, he quietly excused himself, and Wendy peeked in with a worried expression. Wendy sat alone and silently convinced herself that their presence was normal, even if it hurt her. She clenched her fists, trying to accept her feelings, and repeated that everything was perfectly fine. Itsuki returned and asked for tea, sensing her unease. This gave her a reason to feel needed. Wendy brewed tea herself, pondering her confused reaction and quietly feeling ashamed. Sword and Shiro noticed that she had become distant and anxiously asked if something had happened the previous night. They whispered that Wendy was jealous of the guests, but Itsuki firmly rejected any romantic relationships with them. Sword suggested apologizing just in case, while he himself was panicking, not knowing what to do or say. In despair to fix everything, Itsuki rushed away, shouting that he would apologize, and his wild pressure caught everyone by surprise. Aina approached Wendy, sensing that something was wrong, but Wendy waved off with vague words and hesitation. After a brief silence, Aina suddenly decided to act completely differently, cheerfully and unusually. She grabbed Wendy by the hands and suggested taking a bath together so suddenly and warmly that Wendy was quite surprised. Wendy hesitated for a moment, then followed her, puzzled by the unexpected offer and Aina's strangely warm energy. Washing her back, Ine gently soothed Wendy, smoothing out her anxiety without unnecessary words. When he asked why they were bathing together, Ine simply smiled and offered to help rinse off. Ine praised Wendy for her beauty and gently apologized, offering to listen if something was troubling her heart. Wendy responded gratefully. Ine's sincerity touched her, and in that warm moment she softened a little. Ine admitted that she had her limits, and Wendy calmed her down, brushing off her own feelings as selfishness. Ina smiled with understanding. She felt that Wendy's feelings were much deeper, and her attachment to their master was sincere and strong. Wendy frankly confessed to Itsuki about her feelings, while Aina thoughtfully pondered his mysterious nature. Both were impressed by his reliability, kindness, and warmth, traits neither of them had seen before. Aina admitted that her feelings were different, less romance, more desire to support and protect him. They acknowledged Itsuki's charm and kindness, but all agreed that he would never intentionally hurt Wendy. Wendy quietly offered to prepare food for Aina, touched by her support and gentle understanding. After the conversation, Wendy and Aina laughed out loud and all the tension was left behind. That evening, Renge and Sort noticed that Wendy's mood had improved and quietly wondered if she had grown closer to Aina. Itsuki lay on the bed, exhausted, still regretting that he had not apologized to Wendy. Aina suddenly knocked on his door and asked for just a minute to talk to him. Surprised by the visit, Itsuki got up. He did not understand why Aina had come to him so late. Wendy and Aina appeared together in pajamas. Itsuki stood stunned and speechless. Aina insisted that their dispute should be resolved intimately, while Wendy awkwardly tried to pretend it was nothing serious. Wendy, embarrassed, tried to leave, but Aina insisted that they reconcile openly, while she only watched. Later, Aina returned confused and embarrassed, leaving Sorte puzzled. He did not understand what exactly had happened. Itsuki and the others wake up early because Sort urgently calls everyone to the main hall of the estate. Announcing a crisis, Sort shouts that the morale in the house has collapsed and demands that it be urgently fixed. Itsuki is confused by her sudden concern. She does not understand what made her launch such a loud moral campaign today. Sort suspects that Aina saw something indecent and got angry. She accuses Itsuki and attacks without hesitation. Sort introduces new rules, pretending to be a moral overseer, and loudly proclaims that she is a wolf, not a dog of righteousness. Itsuki resolutely defends his feelings, firmly hugging Wendy. He will not give up his attraction, even despite Sort's objections. Sort explodes with irritation and tries to escape, but Renge stops her and does not let her go. Later, Itsuki drinks calmly, as if not noticing the fuss around, while Wendy quietly reflects on the whole situation. Wendy understands that Sort's anger is a consequence of last night, so she decides to go apologize. Itsuki regrets the harsh words and gently knocks on Sort's door, hoping to make things right. He somehow angrily denies that anyone is here, but Itsuki gently intervenes and apologizes for having overdone it yesterday. Embarrassed, Sort demands sincerity and Itsuki apologizes once again. Renji appears and asks how Aina is feeling. As soon as the word slave was uttered, Ine panics, steps back and rushes down the corridor. Crying, Sword accuses Itsuki and calls him trash for his frivolous emotions hurt Aina. Despite the tears, Sword orders him to apologize properly or strictness hides care beneath trembling determination. Renji warmly greeted Itsuki and said she had an important personal request. She says her body aches from soft beds because she is used to hard floors and constant discomfort. Itsuki without hesitation offers a massage and Renji lies down, exposing his back for treatment. Sword begins to become wary. Itsuki insists that he is skilled, recalling how during training he massaged tired shoulders. Renji blushes from the strong pressure. Suki's massage quickly turns into an overly arousing experience. Renji involuntarily moans. The massage overwhelms him, and Itsuki insists that it is just therapy and completely harmless. Seeing Sword hesitate, Itsuki confidently lifts her and insists that she no longer needs to hold back. Sword loudly protests, but Itsuki still begins the massage, trying to find any residual tension in the muscles. Her body shudders under his touch. Itsuki calmly adjusts her leg, carefully pressing to catch where it is tight. Despite the embarrassment, Sword begins to relax and Itsuki asks her to say how it feels, still focused on easing her pain. Sword shudders, confused. The massage unexpectedly ignites her from within. She flails in confused panic, completely stunned. Itsuki, with wide-open eyes, realizes the situation has unintentionally escalated. Recalling his former exhaustion, Itsuki remembers that only videos of puppies saved him from work stress. Now, standing opposite the fluffy tail, he unbearably wants to finally fulfill his long-standing dream. Overcome by instinct, Itsuki grabbed her tail like a jolt, and he sharply reacted to this sensation. Sword screamed in shame as her sensitive tail was repeatedly fluffed without warning and uncontrollably. Despite her protests, Itsuki continues. Sword begs him to stop, unable to control her reactions. Overwhelmed, Sword begs through tears, but Itsuki insists on helping. His words are lost in this moment. Sword howls from sensory overload, her body shudders. Itsuki finally understands that the situation has turned into chaos. Later, Itsuki shyly explains what happened and the others watch warily. After that incident, Sword behaves strangely. After successfully completing the order, Itsuki nervously receives a new task from the Alchemist's Guild to deliver a potion. Reinrich thinks about old age, recalls acquaintances he has lost, and warmly appreciates those still nearby in silence. Itsuki notices that Reinrich is becoming gentler with age, while Shiro helps the chef cook. Reinrich hides his emotions behind a rough manner. The cook offers sweets and Shiro cheerfully leaves, avoiding those lingering feelings. Itsuki asks Shiro about lunch. She loudly demands meat, while a stranger wrapped in a cloak watches quietly. Itsuki teases Shiro about the meat and warns her about vegetables. Meanwhile, a thief quietly sneaks up from behind. The thief lunges forward. Shiro intercepts him mid-strike and with one quick, decisive move knocks him down. Slight pain and the thief cunningly deceives them. Itsuki and Shiro hesitate, confused by the sudden change. The thief throws the magical bag stolen from Itsuki, calling it payment, and covers his escape with a board and a sneer. Smoke explodes around them. Shiro calms Itsuki, then launches skyward to retrieve the stolen item. The thief flees through narrow alleys, boasting that he robbed a rich and famous local alchemist. Confident in his victory, the thief joyfully celebrates his escape, unaware that Shiro is already in the air and rapidly approaching. Shiro lands in front of him, calmly but firmly demanding the return of Itsuki's beloved magical pouch. Cornered, the thief pulls out a knife and, shouting threats, tries to scare Shiro into retreating. Unwavering, Shiro jumps straight at him, knocks the weapon from his hands and knocks him down, his face fiercely focused. Shiro tightly grips the thief's blade and calmly repeats his demand for its return. Cornered and overwhelmed with panic, the thief agrees to give everything and no longer resist. Shiro unexpectedly gives him a small gift, a simple gesture of kindness, despite his attempt to rob them. Moved and puzzled, the thief unwraps it, bitterly saying it's nonsense, but the gesture clearly touched him. Shiro looks around. The noise of the crowd intensifies, and she realizes she has lost Itsuki in the city. Mira approaches Shiro, recognizes her from Itsuki's household, and asks what she is doing here. Shiro finds herself in Yasu's brothel and immediately all the girls working there look at her with curiosity and embarrassment. The girls ask in surprise why Shiro is in their clothes, and someone explains that Mira brought Hirsch was lost. Shiro bows deeply, sincerely apologizing for the chaos caused during the previous visit. Inside, Madame thanks Mira. The girl is delighted by Shiro's mercy, while Madame herself disdainfully transforms her. Mira says she has already called Master Shiro and asks to just wait calmly together. While dressing the heroine, the women reproached her for her age and taste, and one girl gave her learned verdict. Itsuki enters and awkwardly scolds the girls in the brothel, asking them to stop bothering Shiro DSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSS door. Inside, Shiro naps. Wendy warns Itsuki, unaware that the guests outside bring unexpected tension with them. While the rain pours, silhouettes emerge from under the cloaks. It is Hayato and Letty, standing calmly in the doorway. Wendy warmly greeted Hayato and Letty, let them into the house, and offered to dry their wet cloaks. They crossed the threshold of the mansion, and Hayato learned that it belonged to Itsuki, who now hospitably welcomed them. Wendy served tea while Hayato apologized for showing up without warning. Letty carefully observed everything. Hayato caught up with Itsuki, and in his memory, the peaceful life of the hero and his tireless devotion came alive. Finally, Hayato revealed his intention, to sincerely thank and apologize for past misunderstandings. Letty confessed their initial mission was to obtain the dungeon elixir. It is precisely connected to the Lord's sudden ailment. Hayato admitted their failure and allowed him to feel the importance of the elixir, because he understood how much it weighed on Itsuki. Itsuki easily brushed it off, saying he never urgently needed the elixir, and this somewhat eased their growing guilt. Hayato recalled how the danger gradually surged, and how the team was forced to stop the search. Circumstances suddenly proved stronger than them. In the darkest depths of the dungeon, the number of monsters sharply increased. Everything around became unstable, so they had to retreat immediately. In the dungeon, Hayato loudly warned everyone to stay closer and immediately checked how the exhausted Chris was feeling. Chris insisted that she was fine, but Letty, very worried about her condition, asked to take a break. Hayato agreed to rest. Chris quietly apologized, overwhelmed by guilt and her own physical weakness. While the others checked the supplies, Chris sat alone. The pressure was mounting. He knew the supplies were running out quickly. Memories of past violence haunted Chris. Harsh words echoed in her head, and the feeling of uselessness completely consumed her. Letty gently called Chris. Chris heard her, but inside doubts screamed louder. Chris staggered and barely audibly replied. Her hand touched the wall and something mechanical clicked ominously. The stone trap suddenly triggered. Letty screamed, but it was already too late to stop it. A sudden snake lunged at Chris. Her wide-open eyes froze. Fear silenced any reaction. At the table, Hayato confessed he took all the blame for what happened during that mission. Itsuki inquired about Chris's condition. Letty explained that she was nearby and Hayato was not to blame. Itsuki, who had been in the hospital for over a year, spent 1.5 years there. Itsuki inquired about Chris's condition. Letty explained that she was nearby and Hayato was not to blame. Hayato explained that Chris lost her right eye. No ordinary potion could restore such a fragile organ. Determined to help, Hayato planned to buy an elixir at a secret auction in the capital. Itsuki suddenly realized Hayato wants to save Chris himself because she is truly important to him. After the rain, Hayato and Letty said goodbye and left resolute, with a quiet hope that had rekindled. Itsuki offered an emotional shoulder. Though lower in status, he gave advice as if he were older in life. Hayato smiled gratefully. Encouraged by Itsuki's sincerity, he suggested they go to the auction together. Surprised, Itsuki realized he had never left the town. At first he hesitated, but remained open. The decision was made. They will set off in 3 days, as soon as preparations for the journey are completed. Itsuki predicted that Wendy and Shiro would join, and so the group headed to the capital. Letty, hesitating, stopped Hayato. A thought was racing in her mind, but she could not express it. Embarrassed, Letty refused to explain, and Itsuki lightly teased her, sensing romantic tension between them and his own hesitation. Itsuki jokingly hinted at Letty's feelings. Hayato stood silently. Letty blushed from this misunderstanding. Letty scolded them both for their insensitivity, while she herself clearly felt awkward about personal questions about feelings. A teammate again noticed that Chris was skipping meals. Worried, she gently called her to check if everything was all right. Chris sat alone in deep silence, hugging her knees, struggling hard with pain, shame, and growing despair. I quietly entered, lowering my gaze. Emily put down her book. She felt that something was wrong with me. Chris was not eating, so Emily hugged her tightly, realizing that the sadness was heavier than her recent injury. Hayato and Letty returned and froze at what they saw, while Emily calmly explained that Chris was feeling unwell. Emily spoke nervously. Hayato immediately understood and stepped forward, offering to personally check on Chris. Hayato quietly approached the door, gathering strength to face Chris and his quiet, painful struggle. Hayato stood before Chris's room door, repeating sincere apologies as guilt quietly grew in his chest. Inside, Chris sat curled up, whispering apologies to no one, drowning in loneliness and regret. The next morning, everyone gathered at the table, quietly and hopefully waiting for Chris to recover and peace to come. Letty offered a solution. Hayato hesitated. Emily was silent, but a cautious agreement was visible on her face. Letty reminded them about Itsuki, about his offer to help if needed. Hayato seriously considered this possibility. Emily gently reminded Hayato to stop carrying everything alone, and finally he agreed to ask Itsuki for help. Itsuki responded instantly with kindness, inviting everyone to his home, and without hesitation offering full assistance. Itsuki explained the situation to Wendy, and she responded warmly, immediately offering help without any hesitation or questions. Wendy replied with a gentle smile, ready to help with whatever she could in this matter. That night, the group reached Itsuki's home. They were warmly welcomed, and they were sincerely grateful for the support. They stood shoulder to shoulder before Itsuki, sincerely asking for help, while Chris was silent, cold, and detached in his feelings. Wendy felt that Chris was uncomfortable and looked at her gently. Itsuki silently noticed that complex emotional tension. There was a history between Emily and Wendy, and Emily seriously warned Itsuki, Wendy's feelings cannot be ignored. At dinner, Itsuki announced plans for the trip, and everyone relaxed a bit, enjoying his warm hospitality together. I ate everything with delight, and Letty quietly blushed. She was impressed by how delicious the food turned out to be. Itsuki suggested a bath. He hesitated a little, but the girls were intrigued by his confidence. Itsuki proudly explained the origin of this bath. It was made like the one from Murray's native lands. I, filled with excitement, pulled Letty along. Emily agreed, and Letty finally gave in, confused but willing. Wendy gently took Chris aside. Meanwhile, Itsuki teased Hayato like, "Join us," and for that received reproachful looks from everyone. Chris silently prepared towels, refused praise, was still emotionally distant, but tried to help. Chris quietly replied that the food was delicious, and it was a rare compliment from her despite her reserved, fragile mood. Wendy showed interest in how Chris cooks. Chris, surprised and full of doubts, hesitated to accept the unexpected praise. Chris finally confessed her true feelings. She was going to leave Hayato's party altogether. Chris believed that her injury was slowing them down, and she was tormented by shame for hindering their important mission. Emotions broke through, and Chris screamed, convinced that she no longer belonged here. Wendy directly asked Chris, was leaving truly what her heart desired, or was it just her fear? Chris trembled from the inner struggle when Letty quietly approached and called her name in a soft but strong voice full of care. Everyone comforted Chris. Without her, it would be difficult for them. Her presence, especially her dishes, meant much more to them than she imagined. Hayato spoke from the heart. Chris had helped them so often that he wanted her to stay. Later, Itsuki privately thanked Wendy. She simply smiled, pleased, knowing that her words had reached Chris. Letty gently helps Chris wash, softly reminding her that during recovery it is worth relying more on others. Chris slightly shudders from the chill of the water, but Letty gently and carefully soothes her. Letty sweetly asks Chris for some soup, eliciting a quiet, sincere gratitude in response. Chris warmly smiles, feeling appreciated for her cooking, and agrees to Letty's request without hesitation. Together with the others, they deeply relax in the hot bath, sharing warmth, calm, and quiet joy. Itsuki proudly extends a set of enchanted rings. They provide protection, resistance, and magic enhancement. He says their power grows with closeness. Connected pairs become stronger the deeper they emotionally bond. Hayato admiringly marvels at the craftsmanship, surprised by its power, while Itsuki jokingly hints at wedding symbolism. Though teasing, Itsuki sincerely offers them as gifts, despite Hayato's awkwardness and his apologies. They walk together. Itsuki says it's just a thank you, but his gesture speaks of something deeper. Sort bursts in angrily, suddenly catching Itsuki and shouting a loud, emotional demand for answers. Itsuki calmly asks about her flushed face. Itsuki faces her chaotic barrage of reproaches. Girls rush in, panicked by the sudden news. Sort squeezes closer and demands to be taken too. She lunges at Hayato, desperately shouting that they can't possibly prepare in such a short time. As passions raged, Sort snapped, accusing Itsuki of selfishness, then sharply asked who Hayato was. Hayato solemnly introduced himself to the group and, not hiding his pride, revealed that he is the very legendary Dragon Slayer. The members of Red Line responded warmly, introducing themselves and jokingly competing for Hayato's attention and respect. They enthusiastically praise Hayato's achievements, while Sort jokingly complains about his sudden plans and the fact that he didn't inform anyone. Hayato apologizes and Sort angrily demands gratitude, reproaching him for always being ungrateful and noticing nothing. Not wanting to be left behind, Sort emotionally insists she will not stay at home while others go on adventures. Aina and Renji agree to go together despite organizational details, while Itsuki worries whether they are ready. To their surprise, Itsuki admits that he has already planned everything: the trip, accommodation, and even their underwear. Sort explodes with disbelief. Itsuki knows their sizes, so Sort calls him creepy and shameless. Hayato sincerely apologizes to everyone, admitting that his plans caused problems and unexpected consequences. Sort warmly accepts the apology and smiles when their master commands this is not the first time for them. Hayato asks the girls to look after Itsuki and says that he is also a friend worth protecting. The girls respond confidently, saying it's obvious, and Sort leads as always with dramatic and sincere energy. Shiro unexpectedly joins Sort, impressing her, and with full devotion promises to protect their beloved master. Suddenly, Emily and Letty sneak up behind Hayato and quietly whisper his name with eerie admiration. In the bath zone, the girls felt dizzy, while Hayato and others fussed, trying to tame the chaos. The night softly recedes, the calm sky silently watches over the house after a busy day. At dawn, Itsuki waves goodbye from the carriage, thoughts calm, heart ready. He smiled and announced their departure. Next stop, the imperial capital and everything ahead. Itsuki cheerfully greeted everyone and, smiling, said the weather was just perfect for their trip to the capital. The girls froze with open guides, quietly listening as he explained the travel rules and safety measures step by step. Although he said goodbye cheerfully, Sort and Renji already felt exhausted just from reading that confusing preparation manual. Ina explained that in Itsuki's world, trip planning is a true ritual, and he sincerely enjoyed it. Sort stepped forward with curiosity and asked if their newly sewn travel clothes were really part of the preparation. Ina and Renji expressed concern, yet were amazed by the high quality of everything Itsuki provided. Itsuki confidently reassured them he would never disgrace his comrades because he was their reliable leader. Sort immediately admired him, but suddenly warned him about his reckless habit of guessing clothing sizes. Wendy appeared in special attire. It turned out to be an important gift from their first meeting. Sort watched with a smug smile as Wendy shyly looked away, and Itsuki, noticeably embarrassed, scratched his head. Delighted by the start, Shiro jumped on Itsuki's back and immediately urged him to move faster. The group set off from the estate in a sturdy horse-drawn carriage, and Itsuki confidently held the reins. Everyone settled inside, around them smiling faces and light chatter, and the trip began calmly. Their carriage rolled past tall city walls, and ahead appeared the main gate. This was where their journey began. Hayato and Letty warmly greeted them at the gates, waving for them to pass, smiling and with respectful nods. Carriages rolled evenly along the wide road, surrounded by quiet hills and distant trees. Itsuki began to feel his back ache from riding. He rubbed it, trying to stay calm. Hayato estimated they would reach the capital in 2 days, and just then something strange caught his attention. Next to Itsuki's foot, a strange, round creature chirped, attracting curious glances from everyone around. The girls instantly took it as a threat and drew their weapons when it howled. Itsuki, frightened by the harmless creature, clung to Hayato and trembled while the group watched awkwardly. The creature playfully flipped over and turned out to be completely harmless, just a little gosling, still a child, no threat at all. Shiro gently picked it up, calming Itsuki, but he screamed and demanded that it be taken off. Girls nearby rushed over, embarrassed by the noise, thinking that something serious or dangerous had happened. Itsuki clung tighter to Hayato. He couldn't stand insects, while the other just sighed resignedly. The sun began to set over the lake, and the carriage wheels quietly rolled over the harsh, uneven terrain. Hayato suggested stopping and setting up camp before dark, and Itsuki agreed, halting the wagons. The group dismounted, stretched, and started preparing equipment and supplies while the knights slowly made their way through the forest. Itsuki and Hayato filled buckets from the quiet stream on alert, while Aina gave instructions. Talking by the river, Itsuki admitted that all his camping experience was from anime, but he was really enjoying it. While gathering water, Itsuki noticed a unicorn near the waterfall and froze with admiration. The unicorn revealed a terrifying face that twisted strangely, and Hayato froze in silence while Itsuki panicked. Hayato described the terrible moth, resembling a horse, so mundanely that Itsuki begged him in horror to stop immediately. Realizing that the unicorn was standing still and watching intently, they both decided to retreat cautiously. The buckets were still full. Meanwhile, the girls triumphantly returned with meat for dinner, unaware of the strange encounter with the unicorn. Wendy's stew conquered everyone. Chris praised her dish, and she gladly offered to share the recipe. The group gathered near the tents, eating, drinking, and laughing, enjoying the peaceful evening air. Aina and Emily played music while the others relaxed under the moon, sharing warm conversations. Later, Itsuki sat alone, enchantedly watching the stars while nearby the others slept soundly, resting after dinner. Wendy quietly approached him and offered to stay with him, promising to always be by his side. Sword and Renge laughed, discussing how home baths had spoiled them so much that they no longer bathed outside. They joined the others in the river, but in Sword's eyes flickered a silent thought. Renger and Aina smiled warmly, and the tired Sword seemed about to doze off. More girls arrived, joyful and radiant. Without hesitation, they casually joined the refreshing open bath. Sword silently admired the calm and beauty of everything around, impressed by how truly beautiful they were. He froze at the edge of the forest. He felt awkward joining the others in the open-air bath. Sword surprised her with a gentle touch, and the men who were calming from afar approached quietly, despite the sadness. When they returned to the camp, Itsuki greeted everyone, preparing breakfast next to Hayato. The treat was ready. The girls gathered, their sleepy eyes lit up at the sight of the delicacy. While everyone enthusiastically praised the dish, Letty was silent but began to feel a little more accepted. Wendy apologized for not helping, but Itsuki reassured her. Cooking again was a real pleasure. Everyone agreed today's breakfast was special, much heartier than their usual quiet breakfast. As lunch was ending, Itsuki cheerfully reminded them that there was still dessert. He proudly showed the ice cream spoon, and everyone looked around with interest as he served a portion. Itsuki smiled and confirmed, the last treat was real creamy ice cream. Hayato looked at the ice cream with admiration and inhaled its scent. He was filled with familiar nostalgia. He gently lifted the spoon, tasted it, and began to enjoy the cold sweetness. His face lit up with joy. It was undoubtedly real vanilla ice cream, and he was amazed. Itsuki explained, the dessert was preserved using spatial magic. It allows perfect control of conditions and keeps everything flawless. Hayato quietly smiled, recalling desserts from his world. Ice cream brought memories that no candy could. Everyone was captivated by the vanilla flavor. Letty froze, overwhelmed by unexpected delight. Even Emily, unfamiliar with vanilla, truly liked the cool and creamy texture of the dessert. Suddenly, Aina drew her blade and shouted to Sort and Ranji, "Protect the supply cart." The roaring enemies quickly approached. Sort took a battle stance near the cart as chaos erupted around. Aina rushed into battle with a fierce swing, intercepting the beast that charged their flank. Aina's blade sliced through the beasts, attacking her with iron precision. She stood firm and did not hesitate. Again, several enemies charged forward, but Sort blocked their path, firmly rooted and holding iron determination within. With a fierce cry, she spun and charged forward, throwing her body straight into the battle zone. Sort sharply jumped up and struck down with a spear before the monsters could do anything or gather themselves. One enemy instantly fell. Sort flipped in the air without breaking her form or rhythm of battle. Renge rushed forward with devastating force, her strike hitting directly into the monster's open maw. With effortless strength, Renge knocked down another beast, impressing Itsuki with a display both cruel and calm. Together, Aina, Sort, and Renge formed a powerful frontline, and Itsuki finally saw their full combat resolve. Even knowing that monsters were a common thing, seeing them up close still scared Itsuki more than he expected. A monster sneaked up behind him. In panic, Itsuki turned and instinctively struck, fearing for his life. Itsuki's spell worked at the last moment, trapping the beast in a shimmering, invisible magical cage. The monster was cruelly crushed right in midair. Itsuki froze, stunned and confused by what his power had caused. Jiro gently checked him, and though shaken, he nodded, hiding his anxiety behind a tired response. Meanwhile, it became quiet in the Adventurers Guild. Everyone was depressed by the thought that they might lose someone very important to them. The air grew heavy as Ferris was about to speak. He was embarrassed by their gloominess. Ferris reminded them that Aina had sacrificed her position for the sake of their home and asked them not to waste this sacrifice. Her words ignited a fire in the guild. They decided to work even harder to honor Aina's selfless choice. After a long break, Reinhild visited the armor shop again. The shopkeeper greeted her warmly, as always. He inquired about her supposed apprentice. Reinhild calmly confirmed this, hiding her thoughts behind a reserved mask. Meanwhile, Itsuki entered the luxurious mansion and, thinking it was the house of an aristocrat, did not even guess what it was really for. A beautiful woman greeted him warmly, apologized for the delay, and confidently invited him further inside. Hearing the name Reinhild, she smiled warmly and led the blushing Itsuki forward, her steps graceful and confident. Itsuki, Sort, and Aina waited inside, and the luxurious room took their breath away, more exquisite than they could have imagined. Lord Yasus appeared solemnly, warmly greeted them, paid tribute to Rinrik, and introduced himself as a company representative. Yasus smiled confidently and Itsuki barely restrained himself. He was torn by tension, doubts, and the close presence of Aina. Yasus confidently introduced the girl and Itsuki was confused under pressure. He did not know how to react to this awkward situation. The girl bowed gracefully. Her name was Wendy, a flawless product raised by Yasus's famous company. Itsuki froze in surprise. He could not believe that such a refined Wendy was being sold into slavery, but tension grew as if demanding haste itself. Itsuki writhed in pain, trapped between armor and unbearable discomfort. Yasus began to evaluate. Aina remained calm and Sort panicked, embarrassed by why she was being treated like merchandise. Yasus explained Aina's burden. Sort, moved but devoted, agreed to help her and share this burden. Yasus spoke about types of slavery, criminals, debtors, and everything else, and Itsuki listened attentively, absorbing the harsh, strictly organized reality of this world. Itsuki silently listened as Yasus explained about royal and tribal slaves, but in reality, these two categories were simply people in debt. Without asking more questions, they agreed to move forward. The corridor ahead was strangely quiet and filled with uncertainty. In the room, Wendy began to doubt their skills. Aina answered simply, and Sort admitted that she only had basic camping experience. Wendy smiled gently, then began to undress. Aina and Sort froze, not knowing how to react. Aina, embarrassed but obedient, slowly removed her armor. Sort watched nervously, unsure if it was really necessary. Sort and Aina hesitantly obeyed Wendy's instructions and remained in minimal clothing for inspection, standing quietly while she approached, and her face softened as she calmly examined their physical condition and overall health. Wendy smiled kindly, thanked them, and asked them to turn around. The girls obeyed, exchanging nervous glances. Wendy closely examined Inae's posture and endurance and explained why quick reaction and self-presentation skills are so important in the role of a servant. She repeated that discipline and adaptability are the main traits usually considered when determining a slave's overall value. The inspection became uncomfortable. Inae silently struggled. Her discomfort went unnoticed until the tension became unbearable. Sort reacted instantly, pushing Wendy away indignantly. Her voice rang sharply and disrupted the mood in the room. Wendy smiled slyly, realizing that she wouldn't get anything from these girls. Her interest had already shifted. The papers were finally ready and Itsuki quietly agreed to the deal. Wendy returned late as if nothing unusual had happened. Aina and Sort stood silently, visibly shaken. Itsuki asked, but Sort sharply barked at him not to ask. Lord Yasus glanced over the ratings. Aina and Sort shone in battle, but failed in daily matters. Itsuki, laughing and waving his hand, refused future fights, although he had previously said he wanted to become stronger. Danger receded, compliments were heard, and the power of Redline once again proved indisputable. When the battles were left behind, the group broke camp and peacefully moved on together. They finally reached Rashieu, the royal capital, where new acquaintances inevitably awaited their quiet, slow life. After a long journey, the group's carriage finally entered under the towering gates of Rashieu, the royal capital. He observed the elegant women on the exquisite streets and noticed that the charm of Rashieu differed from the bustle of Ainshil. Embarrassed, Itsuki quickly corrected himself, feeling Wendy's reproachful gaze after admiring the appearance of a local woman with enthusiasm. Still surrounded by strong and beautiful allies like Wendy and Aina, he could not afford to waver. Silently gathering himself, Itsuki descended from the carriage, leaving his thoughts behind. Business was beginning in the capital ahead. Hayato returned to the capital. The townspeople and loyal servants greeted him with applause and shouts full of admiration and joy. As the excitement grew, he asked the guards to officially announce his return to the estate. The nervous rookie guard stepped forward and, with sincere trembling respect, asked Hayato to bless his sword. Though he did not know if it would work, Hayato agreed to bless it, speaking modestly and gently. His popularity stunned everyone in the group. He was constantly showered with offers to unite, to express admiration, or even to bear his child. The group froze halfway, eyes wide open, stunned by the scale of what stood before them. Before them towered a luxurious mansion. Impressive in its grandeur, it was 4 times larger than Itsuki's own mansion. Tension grew due to awkward comparisons. A clumsy humor arose, which only deepened the silence among the werewolves. Hayato opened the mansion door with a smile, warmly inviting everyone to settle in, even if it would be uncomfortable. A row of elegant maids greeted Hayato and his guests with impeccable grace, honoring them. A powerful voice thundered from the hall. Itsuki sharply turned around, shuddering at the solemn, synchronized greetings. The towering butler introduced himself as Fried, calm and reserved, with strength felt beneath his impeccable politeness. Itsuki froze in amazement when he faced the huge figure of Fried and could not hide his reaction. Hayato explained Fried's origin half human, half giant. Fried apologized, anticipating that his unusual origin might embarrass someone. Itsuki beamed with admiration and exclaimed that Fried's size and role were simply incredibly cool, surprising everyone nearby. Fried quietly smiled, touched that Itsuki repeated Hayato's words, not even noticing how similar they were. With refined grace, Fried promised to serve faithfully and impeccably and led Itsuki to his elegantly arranged chambers. Itsuki admired the exquisite room decor, modestly impressed by the noticeable difference in quality. Fried offered them 3 rooms and suggested drawing lots, let justice itself decide who would live in which. The room allocation caused chaos. Everyone begged to switch, argued over who should sleep closer to their master. Hayato set off to the castle on a royal summons, while Itsuki stayed behind, monitoring the tension in the estate. Chris decided to stay instead of going on a journey. He immersed himself in learning from Itsuki how to make ice cream. Fried enthusiastically praised Itsuki's alchemical roots, impressed that he had studied under the legendary and eccentric Reinrich. Knowing how famous Ryan Rix was, Fried suggested visiting the cathedral in the capital, and everyone gladly agreed to accompany him. Itsuki watched from the window as Fried drove the carriage through the quiet stone streets. The lively city atmosphere awakened nostalgia in Itsuki, who had once traveled only on business. After a smooth ride, Fried announced their arrival. Itsuki quietly and gratefully thanked him. Everyone held their breath and looked up the majestic cathedral rose under the bright sky. Itsuki admitted he had seen it online, but the beauty in person surpassed everything he had imagined on Earth. Fried stayed near the carriage while the group, sincerely thanking, entered the majestic cathedral. A cheerful nun warmly greeted them and asked to donate 1,000 nals from each. Having collected the coins, the nuns smiled mischievously and offered to guide them through the cathedral. The group followed her through the echoing halls, intrigued by her charms and strange energy. She led them to the chapel room, indicating it with a gentle but proud gesture. Inside stood a towering stained glass window, the most revered and recognizable artwork of this cathedral. Itsuki froze when he recognized the goddess she was exactly like on the stained glass before him. Itsuki stood still by the radiant statue of the goddess, silently pondering the divine mystery of the new world. Surrounded by friends who supported him, Itsuki absorbed their words and quietly looked at the peaceful golden light of the temple. Suddenly tears ran down his face, emotions overwhelmed him before he even understood why. Embarrassed, he touched his cheek, trying to explain why warmth was flowing from his eyes again. Girls surrounded him. They felt that something important had awakened in him, even though he remained silent. In the silence of the temple, the nun silently watches while Itsuki discusses the assignment with the priestess nearby. Itsuki sits again before the image of the goddess, and Shiro gazes intently, interested in his emotional reaction. The nun suddenly approaches and interprets his stillness as a sign of sincere spiritual connection. The nun, with a self-satisfied smile, praises his faith, and Itsuki noticeably becomes confused and wary. When she suddenly urges him to pray without warning, Itsuki reluctantly complies, is unsure whether to trust this energy or resist it. Rays of light pierce the altar, the image of the goddess shines, and the nun gasps in admiration. The calm priestess gently explained how important the divine energy is. Those lucky enough could undergo the rare baptism of the goddess. She spoke of genuine, not exaggerated benefits and claimed that healing magic was possible. Itsuki believed her for a moment, then felt deceived. She urged daily prayer to raise divine power. Itsuki naively agreed, still confused by her strange mood. The nun, with a slight smile, teased his enthusiasm, hinting that constant prayer might be harder than he thought. The nuns slyly asked for a donation, but Itsuki ignored them and left together with Shiro. In panic, the nun chased after them, shouting that the divine energy disappears as soon as they leave the temple. Cornered, she awkwardly bargained the price from 100 down to just 1 gold coin. Smiling, Itsuki easily sacrificed. He considered this expense merely a trifle for the goddess. The nun theatrically blessed him, mixing a genuine ritual with something that more resembled an attempt to sell something. As he walked away, Itsuki mulled over these intrusive sales tactics, and Shiro suddenly felt something was wrong ahead. Shiro followed the scent to the door, sensing that behind it was the dining hall. Inside, the nuns were indulging in luxury, smoking, drinking, and laughing without the slightest hint of holy restraint. One nun proudly shouted that alcohol tastes better when it is bought solely from the donations of the faithful. Peeking inside, Itsuki froze. Their behavior shocked him, and the debauchery in the room completely shattered his perception. In the lounge, suddenly a nun noticed that her clothing had come undone, and everyone nearby burst into laughter. Unbothered, the nun openly showed the damage and joked that she would replace it again with parishioners' money. Itsuki became worried. Watching Shiro eat, he decided that the temple's behavior had crossed a dangerous line. Sensing someone behind the door, the sisters became alert. It seemed that some stranger was peeking. Itsuki was caught off guard and thrown to the ground. He was mistaken for a peeper, and only later was he able to explain why he was there. The nuns aggressively attacked Itsuki, declared this territory forbidden, and accused him of spying. Nervous Itsuki said he was lost, and the nuns reluctantly believed him, preparing for the next steps. Surrounding him with fake smiles, they demanded that he submit, hinting, "If you submit completely, you will leave peacefully." Itsuki leaned back, frightened, when a nun loomed over him and demanded unconditional obedience. Embarrassed and sweaty, Itsuki asked about the strange behavior around, feeling that something was wrong here. Now tied up, he found himself surrounded by nuns, while Shiro calmly ate sandwiches nearby. Inside, Itsuki panicked and hesitated whether to run away, and Shiro, distracted by food, seemed indifferent to the situation. A sister approached with a book, forbade him to run, and pressured him, demanding an answer. What did he see? The nun pressed even harder, demanding an answer, but Itsuki hesitated, lost and confused in his own thoughts. His memory returned. The sisters shamelessly drank and smoked cigars, laughing uncontrollably and without shame. Itsuki stammered, trying to explain, but the nuns waved the book and scared him into silence. She calmly retreated, saying he misunderstood her, and her voice strangely changed from aggressive to apologetic. Itsuki loudly asked about their behavior, stunned by how others defended Captain Teresa with drunken devotion and pride. Laughter surrounded Itsuki as he again insisted that it was just a big misunderstanding. The unsolved silently remained peaceful. The wine symbolized divine blood, and the Idrasil cigars were sacred remedies for tension. She insisted that everything they ate and drank were sacred gifts obtained through her healings and purifications. Itsuki froze. Their logic was confusing. They persistently rejected cigars with a lower level of divine energy. He learned blessings multiply through sacrifice, but harming the innocent or acting for oneself exhausts divine power. Itsuki asked if one could learn magic through prayer, and she confirmed it requires sincere, unwavering faith. The sacred symbol revealed the truth. Divine energy grows with faith and enables the creation of powerful holy magic. She proudly proclaimed her title and boldly declared that she was a true saint, chosen by a deity. Itsuki nervously stepped back when another nun approached him with a strange, incomprehensible intent. Under group pressure, panic seized Itsuki, and it was completely unclear why everyone insisted so much that Teresa was a true saint. The nuns loudly greeted Teresa as a saint, and she modestly admitted that she could barely believe her own strength. He doubted the title captain. He did not understand why a nun was treated as if she were a military commander. Another nun declared that Teresa was a heroine who led priestesses and defended people from undead threats. Not believing their words, Itsuki aloud wondered how such a tiny girl could be their leader. Teresa easily twirled the heavy weapon in her hands, confident that her strength and readiness for battle were gifts from the gods. Teresa muttered that the goddess was unjust, and Itsuki hesitated to say what he really thought. He finally dared to ask if she hated her power, and she honestly admitted that it was hard for her to bear. Although nervous, Itsuki smiled and said that her power was truly impressive and simply incredibly cool. He explained that she still helped people even if she did not love her power. That was true strength of character. When she heard his words, Teresa blushed deeply. The praise caught her off guard, and she did not know how to respond. The nuns showered Teresa with shouts of saint. Their overly enthusiastic glorification sincerely embarrassed her. Blushing and angry, Teresa exploded with rage, swinging her weapon to silence the relentless mockery. While chaos raged behind them, Itsuki asked Shiro for help, and she indifferently continued eating. Nuns lay fallen. Teresa stands, breathing heavily, clutching her great sword after a fierce battle. Teresa looks fiercely at Itsuki, who is tied up and clearly worried about what she will do next. Teresa dispels her previous anger with laughter. They drink together, and the tension between them gradually melts away. Itsuki offers a potion to help those who have fallen, and Teresa asks for permission before using it. They smash the herb garden. Teresa thanks them, brushing off the fallen attackers, implying they brought trouble upon themselves. While drinking, Itsuki hears about the herb garden and casually mentions that he would like to visit it someday. When the nun learned that Itsuki was a wanderer, she became curious and asked if he had received strong blessings. Itsuki proudly activates his skill. Radiant energy gathers around him, and he confidently shouts the name pocket money. He demonstrates the skill's effect. Coins fall into his palm, and Teresa freezes in shock and embarrassment. Tense silence spreads around. Itsuki panics, wondering if they suspect him of counterfeiting or forging coins. Teresa tightly clutches the coins, captivated and stunned by the powerful divine energy emanating from them. Other nuns gather around, freezing in amazement. In each coin they feel divine power and begin to whisper excitedly. Itsuki, surprised by their reaction, explains what he does every day. Teresa, noticeably embarrassed, suggests an exchange. The nuns swarm Itsuki, all demanding exchanges for coins, and he panics under the pressure of their attention. When they finally calm down, Itsuki and Teresa politely introduce themselves. Shiro joins and simply states her name, for example. Suddenly, Teresa asks him his true purpose, and Itsuki calmly says he is just sightseeing and waiting for the auction. Teresa explains that the auction is sponsored by the church. Itsuki did not even guess that the venue is the church itself. Itsuki suspiciously asks if it is illegal, and Teresa calmly explains, it is for the nobility and handled by impartial clergy. Itsuki silently reflects. Imagination paints corruption when nobles decide everything behind closed doors without any neutrality. When he leaves, parishioners politely wave their hands. Itsuki smiles, surprised by their warm, formal farewell. Itsuki returned to the group, and Sort with Wendy immediately began questioning him. Another surprise was in the air. Freed calmly suggests returning home, and Sort jokingly clings to Itsuki, and he again noticeably blushes. The moon slowly rises over the church dome. The day quietly fades and calm envelops the entire city. At Hayato's estate, Itsuki greets warmly. They discuss the trip, both pondering with a barely noticeable smile. The group gathers in high spirits. Hayato and Itsuki joke about princesses, and Fried calls everyone to dinner. Jiro and Renged watch as the food is served. The aroma fills them with childlike joy. Everyone happily dines together. Itsuki and others laugh, savoring the food and wine. After dinner, the company relaxes in the luxurious lounge, and Itsuki warmly chats with a friend. Later, the women gather on the balcony and under the moonlit evening sky begin sharing stories. Sort sits in the bath, completely confused, while nearby the lion fountain theatrically pours water. Renge, Sort, and others together immerse themselves in the hot water, grateful for its warmth after hard travels. Wendy froze in admiration before the bath's splendor, impressed that it was created by the hands of a court craftsman. Ina fell silent, feeling a wave of emotions, but quickly brushed it off and forced a nervous smile. When night fell, Itsuki wished Hayato a good rest, and the day quietly ended with their soft farewells. Fried enthusiastically praised Itsuki's stories. The young guest's journey brought rare joy to the experienced guard. Walking with Fried, Itsuki friendly invited him once for a drink to sit and share old stories, while Aina quietly watched. Fried said good night. Itsuki thanked him, then flopped into bed with a satisfied sigh. Lying in bed, he felt warmth and coziness. True rest finally returned to him. Behind the door, Aina hesitated. Her heart was pounding. Something unresolved silently held her in place. Itsuki was peacefully snoring in bed, completely unaware that Aina quietly entered and nervously watched him sleep so soundly. Interested and blushing, Aina slowly leaned over him, trying to make sure he was really unconscious. Itsuki stirred in his sleep, confused by the strange presence looming close over his half-awake face. Fried and the maid entered the room, surprised that he woke up so late and looked a bit disheveled. While Itsuki drank tea and blamed everything on travel fatigue, he had no idea that Aina had already, embarrassed, fled the room. Fried relayed Aina's message. She asked for permission to personally take care of Itsuki during his stay. In a moment, Aina entered cheerfully, teased Itsuki that he had overslept until noon, and confidently smiled beside him. But her mood softened. She admitted that she felt lonely, even though she finally shared a room with him. Gathering courage, Aina shyly asked to spend time together today, hoping he would not be offended by her selfishness. Smiling warmly, Itsuki rubbed his head and silently agreed to her request, a little amused and with gentle understanding. Itsuki, still feeling tired, invited Aina to spend a quiet day with him at the estate. Later, he settled on her lap and was surprised at how her presence immediately became so warm and soothing. Aina smiled gently, enjoying the quiet moment and strangely feeling his weight on her as calming and pleasant. When he began to doze off, she told him that he could fall asleep again. He decided not to sleep. He was drawn to her, and he asked to hear the continuation of her story. When Itsuki inquired about her past, Aina hesitated for a moment, then quietly agreed to tell her old story. She recalled her youth, how hard her sword training was under the watchful eye of a strict mentor. After each defeat, her mentor calmly corrected her mistakes, primarily in posture, steps, and sword work. Together with friends Sort and Ren, she endured harsh lessons every day, cooking and fighting under the supervision of their shared teacher. Even now, Ine remembered how she trembled before the incredible strength of her mentor, a woman she deeply admired and at the same time feared. Although Aina was strong, her master had a bunch of quirks. He was capricious during baths and always drank excessively. Aina admitted that her master never spared her, often bringing her to tears due to battle wounds or tough training with monsters. Yet on sleepless nights she comforted them, allowing them to settle on her lap and singing until they fell asleep. Itsuki, lying peacefully on Ine's lap, felt why this simple touch carried such deep warmth and a sense of security. While Aina quietly sang nearby, he closed his eyes and smiled, finally understanding her most precious memory. While Ine softly hummed, two maids approached the door, intrigued by the unexpected melody coming from there. The maids, hearing the voice, exchanged surprised glances, unsure whether to continue or quietly retreat. Meanwhile, Itsuki stirred in his sleep and involuntarily pressed deeper into Aina's lap, and suddenly tension arose between them. Startled and confused, Ine asked if he was awake, not knowing how to react to his posture. Her cheeks blushed, she begged him to stop, but he, in that state after the day, pressed her even harder. Outside the door, the chambermaids listened nervously, their hearts pounding when they heard Aina calling Itsuki. Just as they whispered in panic, Sort and others suddenly appeared behind, interested and confused. Confused and stunned, the maids quickly came up with excuses and rushed away, leaving the others even more suspicious than ever. Even more perplexed, Sort hesitantly reached for the door, not knowing what awaited inside. They entered and saw Itsuki pressed against Aina, who, blushing and flustered, tried to explain this awkward, compromising pose. Wendy stood silently, her face puffed up with irritation. She clearly did not like this strange scene before her. Itsuki woke up with a yawn and realized he had overslept. Wendy puffed her cheeks in silent protest, and Aina blushed shyly. Renjin Sort stood opposite him and began asking about his strange sleeping habits, anxiety showing on their faces. Dressed for the auction day, Itsuki hears that only Wendy will accompany him. She quietly asks if he minds. Wendy nervously adjusts his collar, seeking his attention. Itsuki stammers, surprised by her sudden closeness. Emotions overwhelm Wendy. She confesses loneliness and hugs him tightly. Itsuki gently apologizes, finally understanding her feelings. Suddenly, Shiro hugs Itsuki from behind, grumbling about his pace, and Wendy freezes in surprise. Shiro sharply pulls him forward. Wendy clenches her fists angrily, and Itsuki panics under the pressure. Meanwhile, Hayato prepares to leave alone. Itsuki asks why, and Hayato replies that everyone else is too busy. Letty, out of breath, manages at the last moment and, decisively unwilling to be left behind, boldly shouts out. Despite being out of breath, Letty forces herself to look confident. Others ask anxiously, but she insists that she is fine. Hayato listens to the housekeeper's story. With a calm smile, he turns and says they are setting off. Under the night sky, several carriages stand near the magnificent building, the nobility preparing to depart. At the entrance, Hayato scans the crowd. Only two are allowed through at a time, so they will move slowly. Someone warmly greets Hayato. The group gathers near the carriages, ready to enter the auction together. Sister Teresa welcomes them. She announces that 2 miraculous medicines will be shown, and curiosity instantly awakens in the hall. In the hall, Letty quietly observes Hayato's restrained reaction. He receives the briefing with composed, quiet calm. Teresa says the place is behind the door. Guests must strictly follow the rules for backstage trading. Bidders receive numbered tags. Itsuki's group puts on glasses that hide their faces to remain anonymous and protect buyer information during the auction. Guests take their seats in the elegant theater. A loud voice welcomes everyone and announces the start of the auction. The nun host theatrically raised her hand, full of energy and pride. She solemnly opened the mysterious auction. Guests quietly observe from behind. Someone watches the sisters' energy with admiration while Itsuki remains focused, carefully analyzing everything around. First lot enters the arena, a 20-year-old man, a criminal slave. The bidding starts at 500,000 NR. Wendy gently holds Itsuki's hand. He thinks about having bought her and others, and guilt weighs on him. The auction heats up. The first buyer wins the slave for over 1 million NARs, and the tension rises. Next appears a mermaid slave, beautiful and silent. She needs a large aquarium, and the crowd holds its breath. Itsuki trembles with excitement. The appearance of the mermaid seems unreal, and he loudly shouts to the group, "This is real." Despite the temptation, Itsuki hesitates. Wendy reminds that their group is already large, and Shiro simply shouts, "Fish." Bidding intensifies. Itsuki raises the bid to 6.5 million, while Wendy remains calm. She is clearly unimpressed by his growing enthusiasm. The mermaid is sold to Itsuki. He nervously apologizes. Wendy lightly scolds him with a few irritated fist taps. The new lot is brought in a mysterious set of 3 necklaces. The leading nun announces the next auction. Hayato recognizes these necklaces. They were created by a high-level master alchemist, items of rare magical value. Itsuki admits he made them, and the nun insists they were specially ordered even before the auction began. The nun energetically explains that the accessories enhance attack, defense, and voice volume, then clearly demonstrates their effect on stage. Itsuki warns them too late. The nun screams, her voice uncontrollably thunders over the stunned audience. Everyone recovers. Itsuki proudly shows his invention, a pendant microphone that also amplifies the sound of trumpets if attached correctly. The auctioneer announces the starting bid 10 million. Hands immediately rise, bids rapidly soar above 30 million. Itsuki cannot believe his eyes, watching the bids rapidly increase, and Hayato notices. There are no microphones here, and this is a true revolution. The crowd roars as the accessories sell for 50 million. Itsuki receives quiet praise from friends. Itsuki smiles proudly. His products are highly valued. Wendy quietly congratulates him, sensing his joy and relief. The next lot is shown a half-elf chained in shackles. Itsuki's face freezes as feelings stir within him. The auction proceeded quietly, but Itsuki noticed the elf girl. Her appearance suddenly caused a strange silence in the crowd. Whispers spread like lightning. People averted their eyes from her. She was a half-elf, unwanted by both humans and elves. Hayato, sitting nearby, coldly apologized. He understood that discussed half-bloods, unlike humans, were cruelly rejected by society. No one placed a bid. Her calm face hid pain. She expected nothing. Their eyes met. Itsuki hesitated. Wendy was pushing him. He was not moved by her beauty, but by the injustice around her. Itsuki hesitated again. He was afraid that if he involved her, he would only endanger the lives of those nearby. Rengyu and Sort loudly defended him, saying he would take anyone, as long as they were kind. The host announced the miraculous drug, today's star of the show, and Itsuki and Hayato instantly turned their eyes to the stage. Both men froze. The miracle medicine they had been waiting for weeks was finally being auctioned. Hayato whispered the market price. Itsuki named his entire budget, twice that amount. He was unwavering. The first miraculous drug was sold for 550 million. Itsuki and Hayato were completely shocked. No one dared to challenge. The first vial was sold. The second started again at 100 million. Despite the pressure, Itsuki encouraged Hayato, extended a helping hand, and instilled confidence in him. Their plan for the next round began to take shape. Hayato agreed and Letty was silent. The stakes instantly soared 150, 200, and then Hayato boldly jumped to 600 million. Hayato remained calm. Itsuki panicked. They hoped their bold move would put an end to this. Eyes were fixed forward. After the auction, Itsuki calmly received the goods and money, hiding his thoughts behind polite smiles. Hayato stood silently, lost in thought. Letty approached, but he moved on, and meanwhile Teresa met Itsuki. Itsuki spoke with regret. Hayato was defeated. Both miraculous medicines went to a richer, unknown, and bitter man. Hayato whispered an apology to Chris. He could not keep his promise, and guilt gripped him from within. Letty silently looked at him under the moonlight. Her face showed nothing, but her eyes understood everything. Standing under the moon, Hayato silently promised Chris that he would cure her at any cost. Meanwhile, Itsuki lay in bed thinking that Hayato was probably blaming himself too deeply for everything. Itsuki felt Hayato's pain, admired his determination, but feared that he was carrying too much alone. Resolutely, Itsuki got up. He could not wait. If there was a chance, he would try right here. He tried to improve the medicine, but as expected, everything failed because he still lacked experience. Itsuki panicked. The Idrasil drug disappeared without it. It was impossible to turn the substance into miraculous medicine. He quickly decided tomorrow he would go to the city and visit every alchemy shop he knew. The next morning, Itsuki walked through the narrow alleys of the city, passing merchants and carts searching. All the stores responded the same way. This medicine was not available. Itsuki was getting more and more irritated. In front of the cathedral, he met Teresa. Her unexpected greeting caught him in the middle of a thought. The nun playfully teased, whispering absurd fantasies, and Teresa blushed and was flustered by the unexpected indecent words. Unable to endure the humiliation any longer, Teresa angrily threw her captain and chaos erupted in the courtyard. Itsuki, ignoring the noise, politely asked to borrow the Yggdrasil flower, and everyone was embarrassed by the very timing of his request. The captain told about the extraordinary value of this herb. Even a tiny amount of it could change the novice's future. Unfortunately, she told him that nothing was left. The last flower had already been used. Itsuki politely declined the offered replacement. He still believed that he would find the true flower of Yggdrasil himself. He waved goodbye along with Shiro. The nuns stood silently and watched them, mixed expressions and tangled thoughts on their faces. Suddenly, Teresa shouted loudly. She remembered the place where Yggdrasil grew, and this contradicted what she had said earlier. Itsuki was surprised. The nuns hesitated, then admitted such a place really exists. Permission was granted, but the captain, as always, joked she was immediately punished even before she could finish the sentence. Teresa kindly invited him. Their next stop was the herb garden. Itsuki smiled, ready to go there with them. Teresa led Itsuki to the sacred garden, a place where rare herbs for alchemical wonders were secretly grown. Chris's fading star could only be saved by Yggdrasil, the legendary flower hidden deep in the very heart of danger. Although his heart was pounding and he trembled with uncertainty, Itsuki still took upon himself the burden of personally assembling Yggdrasil, despite having no combat skills. Suddenly attacked by a golem guard, Teresa struck fiercely to protect the mission even before Itsuki could react. When the zombies attacked, Teresa covered Itsuki again and shouted orders, while he froze from the pressure and incredible fear. When more and more zombies approached them, another nun joined Teresa without hesitation and fear. She fiercely swung the sword cross. Itsuki froze, looking at the chaos, and remembered their goal was only a medicinal herb garden, not war. Instead of grass, they came across severed heads and living corpses, and Itsuki began to doubt everything, was so nauseated with disgust that he almost vomited. Teresa stood firm, raised her blade, signaled Itsuki, and promised to carve a path for them. With sword and fury, Teresa hacked through the horde, demanding that Itsuki rush forward at her command. Teresa unleashed a sacred vortex that cut through hordes of undead and carved a brutal path through them. She shouted Itsuki. Whirlwinds struck with full force. Zombies were torn to pieces, their bodies scattered across the battlefield. The ground was littered with corpses. Teresa stood firm, making sure the path ahead was completely cleared for escape. At Teresa's signal, Itsuki rushed forward but muttered that the herb gathering should have been done quite differently. Teresa calmly explained, night priests are made for this. Their divine power perfectly counters creatures like the undead. Running, Itsuki learned about rare herbs controlled by the church, while Teresa strictly insisted that only priests could enter the deeper sanctuaries. When even more undead appeared, Teresa entrusted Itsuki to Shiro and dashed forward, her sword ready for battle again. The vice captain responded to the challenge and quickly took position. Teresa stood on alert, ready to intercept the next wave. The deputy captain fell precisely, blades ready. She found herself before the horde and without hesitation covered Itsuki's escape. With two swords wildly spinning, the vice captain launched a devastating aerial assault, slicing zombies with furious strength. The vice captain's whirlwind swept through the undead, bodies torn in the air. Nothing remained but scattered limbs and shredded flesh. Slipping past another beast, she stumbled upon two giants but did not panic and quietly whispered a calm oops. Teresa squinted, calm and focused, her grip tightened. She was ready to strike without hesitation and without mercy. With a wide arc, Teresa struck her giant sword into the torso of the brawler. He flew up and tore away from the ground. After the slaughter, Teresa sighed heavily. The creatures were increasing in number. Even Itsuki realized these were not ordinary nuns. Shiro asked for her knife. Sensing danger, she calmly turned around, while Itsuki behind just stood, confused. When the ground shone with strange magic, the summoning circle flared. Something huge was breaking through it. From the darkness burst a skeletal guardian, and Shiro immediately recognized him, an ancient gatekeeper created to keep invaders out. The Reaper loomed over them, his scythe enormous. Teresa and Itsuki froze under the moonlight. Itsuki shuddered, Shiro blinked slowly. Both understood this was not just a mob, this was definitely a boss-level monster. The bone boss drew his massive scythe, the dark aura rose, and the air chilled with tension. Teresa roared orders. Shiro calmly stepped forward. Itsuki panicked. It was clear not everyone was ready for this fight. But without fear, Shiro decisively said she would kill the Reaper and walked straight toward him, while everyone watched silently. The sky tore apart. A skeletal giant appeared, forcing Itsuki and Shiro to instantly retreat. Although Itsuki protested, Shiro stepped forward, calmly drew her blade, and was ready to face the threat alone. Meanwhile, in the Hayato Sorda estate, a maid dressed up, and the other servants watched her with admiration. Landing in front of the undead, Shiro instantly sprang upward, her weapon barely glowing, and she was ready to deliver a precise strike. Her attack failed. Only divine energy could harm him, and Shiro realized this battle could not be won by brute force. The undead swung its scythe with terrible force, and a huge shockwave instantly tore through the ground. Teresa felt the divine energy tremble. Sherry warned Itsuki, anyone weak would freeze from the roar of the terrifying monster. The undead's weapon flared in the moonlight. It raised the scythe again, determined to annihilate any resistance. Shiro struck the ground, covering Itsuki. The shock from the blade cracked the soil, forcing him to jump back. Darting past the monster's deadly swing, Shiro carefully took position and studied its movements, searching for the moment for a decisive counterattack. The undead screeched piercingly and raised the scythe again. Shiro narrowed her eyes, sensing its next brutal lunge. The ground beneath them exploded, throwing shards and clouds of dust into the air. The monster's attack destroyed everything around. Itsuki screamed in fear and Teresa tightened her grip. Shiro vanished amid the explosive shockwave. Under the moonlight, Shiro soared high, her blade gleamed, and she quietly but confidently whispered farewell. Her strike hit right in the skull, the bones cracked and light exploded. The runny nose released silence. Shiro decisively gave a thumbs up despite the fierce clash. She returned completely unscathed and full of confidence. Teresa enthusiastically praised Chiro's endurance. Itsuki still couldn't believe she survived that roar and didn't even sweat. Even those who possess divine power fall if they are careless. Teresa's display threw Vice Captain groaning helplessly onto the rocky ground. Teresa confirmed that even more undead would appear. Their next destination, the grassy garden, was probably already teeming with lingering death. Itsuki's hope instantly faded. The corpse tore with claws, and the team rushed forward, destroying enemies one by one. Itsuki remembered the divine coin he forged. If filled with holy energy, maybe it would work. Confidently, he summoned the vacuum ball technique, filling the golden coin with energy as if making it a weapon. The ball hit the zombie's head directly. Itsuki flinched from the impact and immediately heard a sharp crack. The coin exploded on contact with immense force, shattering the zombie's skull and stunning the surrounding undead. Deputy Captain Furios permanently banned this move. Itsuki nervously saluted, again accidentally turning the divine currency into a weapon. Morning came. Itsuki collapsed from exhaustion, but Teresa waved off his whining. They had finally reached their goal. Standing on the edge of the cliff, Itsuki gazed into the distance. The journey was hard, but the view was worth it. Below them stretched an endless field of grass, a beautiful place, and it became their next destination. Itsuki, full of gratitude for Teresa's help, sincerely thanked her. She smiled and gently reminded him about the donations to the temple. Before him, endless grasses. Itsuki smiled. So many ingredients, now he could create anything he could imagine. Itsuki came across moon grass, rare and grown in the dungeon, but unfortunately, despite its rarity, it had no special value. He still decided to keep one just in case. Maybe it would faintly shine, more beautiful than useful. To thank Teresa, he gave her a flower wreath, and she blushed and accepted it with surprise. Teresa blushed and hid her face in embarrassment. When the vice captain began teasing her, she panicked. Itsuki returned to the manor with the soundly sleeping Shiro, and Fried greeted them warmly and immediately offered food and a corner to spend the night. Yasis calmly laid out the results. Both girls were reliable in battle but lacked the broader usefulness that makes a true partner. Interesting, Yasis questioned Sort's limitations. When he offered to explain, Sort's data did not correspond to her true age. Wendy gently explained that Sort was still maturing as a beast person, and Sort, embarrassed, angrily brushed off this delicate conversation. Wasting no time, Wendy roughly examined Sort. Laughing loudly, everything turned into an awkward scene, and Sort remained embarrassed and helpless in her protests. Wendy explains Sort's beastly instincts. Her physical traits make contact with people awkward and physically difficult. Final sums established. Aina earned 600,000 NAR. Sort followed 400,000 Z. Payment settled. Yasus convened the circle. All participants gathered and placed their hands together to form a bond. When their palms touched in the circle, glowing marks flared on the skin. Magic sealed their alliance. A sharp burn struck Itsuki's hand. A glowing crest was carved on it. He became their master. The contract was confirmed. Wendy briefly and sternly explained. Loyalty means that slaves cannot harm their designated master. Ignoring protocol, Sort launched a test attack. Itsuki barely managed to react as magical backlash struck instantly. The contract was activated. A wave of pain overwhelmed Sort, and she fell to the ground, writhing in agony. Itsuki checked if she was okay. She grumbled irritably, still confused. He calmly warned her not to resort to violence. Sort insisted that she was a wolf, not a dog, and suddenly they noticed Aina giggling. Everyone froze because of that. Aina smiled, feeling the tension melt away. Despite the objections, the quarrels between Itsuki and Sort showed that a friendship was growing between them. The group left the House of Contracts. The papers were sealed, the bonds secured. Now they had officially become one whole. Aina reminded them of their duty to report. Itsuki hesitated. He still did not know how guilds worked. Somewhere another group stood on alert. Hayato had not returned, and the quiet night in the camp was filled with anxiety. A young girl complained of hunger and rummaged through the camp supplies, ignoring warnings about emergency food reserves. Letty panicked when the elf returned from bathing, barely dressed, and, as if nothing had happened, calmly argued over the soup. Letty, embarrassed, scolded her. The elf just shrugged, not understanding human shyness and rules of conduct. While they waited, the anxiety for Hayato grew, and the elf teased Letty, pushing her to go bathing too. While the hungry girl dreamed of meat, Letty desperately chased the elf, shouting in circles. Somewhere else, Hayato sat alone. The forest was silent, but something hidden among the trees was watching him. Hayato sat under the stars and did not take his eyes off his hand. The night was colder than usual. Another figure approached, and they both asked aloud how Itsuki was doing after the contract termination. Meanwhile, Itsuki was cheerfully celebrating, and the guild adventurers warmly greeted him, raising their mugs and shouting loudly in unison. Filled with gratitude, Itsuki prepared to set off. An elder reminded him to give all his strength for the sake of his group. Travelers sincerely apologized to him. Thanks to Aina, they stood side by side again, united and full of hope. The guild member raised a farewell toast, and someone quietly reminded Itsuki, "You are a traveler, different, but still one of us." One careless comment ignited Sort. She exploded into a tirade, fiercely defending Aina and outraged by assumptions about appearance and roles. Itsuki stood up, overwhelmed with emotions. Tired of the tension, he honestly said how exhausting the atmosphere in the group had become. When Itsuki rejoined the others, Sort whispered doubt. Aina looked uncertain, gazing at him with mixed feelings and silence. Sort warned Aina not to fall under his charms, grumbling and sipping from her cup. Sort slumped at the table and groaned, while Aina silently watched, unsure whether to scold or comfort. Aina looked at the room, not knowing what to feel. The smile slowly faded and turned into thoughtful silence. After a pause, Aina barely smiled. Maybe she was simple, or maybe she really cared. The tavern roared with joy, and Itsuki declared that the world was wonderful and promised to throw a party using his skill. Smiling, Itsuki activated his power. A coin fell into his palm, and he confidently shouted, "Pocket money." Itsuki boasted about his talent, but amid the applause the money melted away, and reality began to catch up. Others looked embarrassed, while Itsuki kept dancing, not noticing the worried glances and the judgment of passers-by. The moon gently shone over tired faces. The party faded into silence, empty bottles, guests asleep. Itsuki fainted among barrels and mugs. His thoughts drifted away, and he felt that this was also part of the journey. Faces he had met flashed before his eyes. Aina, Sort, Hayato each left a mark on his heart. With the coin in his hand, Itsuki smiled. His second life had begun, simple, calm, and entirely his own. Itsuki entered the tavern, delivering elixirs. Adventurers sat idle, no tasks remained, taken by the Red Front. Aina and Sort, the elite of the Red Front, swore to Itsuki, "We will make up for that mistake with the elixir." Although in slavery, Aina and Sort fiercely fought, gathering rare alchemical materials as part of their duties. With their help, Itsuki relentlessly advanced in alchemy. His skills grew, confidence strengthened, and debt melted away. Every morning, Itsuki summoned pocket money, quietly smiling. His slow life was sustained by dedication, diligence, and magic. Itsuki took a deep breath and activated his skill with a light movement. A familiar coin appeared in his hand. His skill changed, no longer copper, a golden coin shone. Pocket money rose to level 2. Looking out the window, Itsuki clenched his fist. He finally decided today is only his day. Though he dreamed of an easy life, in reality he was destined to endure failed potions, strict mentors, and endless days in Reincarnation's laboratory. Having received money, he rushed into the city in search of comfort, entertainment, and tempting services he had only dreamed of before. Sitting alone, Itsuki quietly chewed. Although now rich, he did not particularly want to go anywhere. Lost without a map, Itsuki suddenly came across Yasus and Wendy, familiar faces from the local noble estate. Wendy, elegant and refined, introduced herself. Itsuki froze. Her smile made his morning brighter than gold. Talking about his day off, Itsuki admitted he barely knew the city, and Yasus unexpectedly offered him company. Yasus thoughtfully smiled and suggested Wendy become the guide. Itsuki agreed, unaware that this walk would change everything. Wendy gently offered to help him rest. Her kindness concealed the deep devotion she quietly carried within herself. Embarrassed, Itsuki quickly denied that he was dissatisfied. Yasus smiled contentedly, and Wendy politely and gracefully offered her help. Together shopping, Wendy tried on new clothes, and Itsuki stood speechless. He had never done this with anyone before. Enthralled, Itsuki picked outfits for both. Wendy's beauty stunned him, but he remained polite and cautious. Wendy promised to cherish this gift. Though it was worn clothing, Itsuki's heart unexpectedly filled. Standing outside, Wendy showed care, and Itsuki, overwhelmed with emotions, realized he valued her calming presence. Holding hands, Wendy led him outside. Her warmth warmed him and gave him the courage to follow her without hesitation. They savored tea by the sunny window. Itsuki smiled broadly. This was the embodiment of a slow life. Surrounded by street performers and laughter, they strolled. The city seemed to glow, and holding hands came naturally. Wendy laughed beside him. Itsuki responded with a radiant smile. In this world, joy finally became real. As silence fell, the aristocrat's voice cut through the street. Wendy's name sounded commanding. Itsuki turned around while Wendy hesitated. The man growled questions, suspicious and jealous, completely ignoring Wendy's anxiety. Dadel demanded answers, angry and possessive. Itsuki calmly stepped forward, stood in front of Wendy, shielding her and insisting that she was not a thing. Dadel, son of a noble family, boasted about his status and wealth, proudly declaring that he would buy her for 120 million nars. He shouted at Yasus. Wendy stood next to Itsuki unshaken, and he froze at that number. Without hesitation, Itsuki pressed Wendy to himself and boldly declared, "I will protect you. Status means nothing to me." Dadel trembled, veins bulged, lips twitched, rage raged in his eyes, and the servant cowered behind his back. After an unsuccessful hunt, Aina and Sort quietly returned home, knowing that everything they had gathered belonged to their master. Aina grumbled angrily about having to serve, but duty still forced her to gather herbs for her alchemist master. In the city, Wendy caught Itsuki off guard with a gentle gesture, and he, stunned, did not know how to respond. Itsuki remained calm, brushing off the shock. He claimed that hard-working days had toughened him, and this embarrassed Wendy and silenced Detrayal. The angry daughter exploded with insults. Threats were heard, but Itsuki and Wendy stood firm, unmoved by noble anger. Tension exploded. Dadel and Itsuki both claimed Wendy. Emotions raged, and Wendy trembled in the middle. Dadel, furious and irrational, began to accumulate energy, and Itsuki stood firm, uncertain, but ready to respond. Later, when they were alone, Wendy quietly whispered, "Are you really going to buy me out of the yoke?" Before Itsuki could answer, someone appeared. His presence filled the air with tension, and Wendy did not know how to stop. Yasus appeared, catching Dadel in the heat of anger. Everyone turned around. Finally, the situation was in the hands of a person with true authority and common sense. Yasus challenged Detrayal's bluff and directly asked, "Do you really have 130 million nor to pay now?" Dadel panicked. Yasus explained that Wendy was not sold. She was only temporarily appointed as a guide for the guest. Dadel called his father's name. Calmly, Yasus challenged the threat, regardless of political pressure or intimidation. Despite protests, Dadel begged for a little more time. Yasus reluctantly agreed, and tension raged among all three men. With a bold smile, Yasus proposed a duel. Itsuki versus Dadel to decide Wendy's fate once and for all. Wendy stood tensely, feeling hostility. Yasus quietly smiled. She clung tightly to Itsuki, embarrassed by the sudden confrontation. They entered the Alchemist's Guild in search of materials. Aina politely greeted Reinhardt, and tired Sort yawned nearby. Aina inquisitively asked about the master alchemist, and Reinhardt glanced back, pointed with his hand, and quietly confirmed, "Itsuki is in the room, working alone." Sort pushed the door. Aina followed. They found Itsuki so immersed in his notes that he did not notice their presence at all. They brought rare supplies. Itsuki nodded, surprised but sincerely grateful for their work today. Then Sort noticed something. Sort came across shiny jewelry scattered on the table. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity and childlike wonder. Aina asked why the jewelry was there, and Itsuki, clearly nervous, hesitated and tried to explain their unexpected appearance. Sort exploded in despair. Her scream echoed throughout the city, and Itsuki flinched, already regretting the situation. Sort loudly revealed the truth. The jewelry belonged to Dadel's son, a man known for his strength, pride, and cruelty. Sort unleashed harsh words, while Itsuki remained calm but silently endured insult after insult with a wounded heart. Aina defended Itsuki, and only when he admitted he planned a walk around the city with Sort did the tension dissipate. Sort reacted sharply, not understanding her own feelings. Itsuki apologized. Aina shifted the conversation to a future event. Itsuki confessed the contest was raising money to free Wendy. He needed 80 million NAR for everything to succeed. Sort exploded with rage again. Itsuki steadfastly withstood the attack, and Aina struggled to keep both sides under control. Calmed down, they agreed to help. Itsuki asked them to gather accessory materials. Aina agreed with firm determination. Plans fell through, so Itsuki decided to sell potions. Ine apologized, but he accepted this failure without hesitation or complaints. Aina warmly praised him. Sort, full of energy, decisively pulled her away to gather materials. Elsewhere, Wendy sat alone. She waited, torn by thoughts about the impending challenge. She told Itsuki that he didn't need to help, but he smiled and decided to move forward anyway. He gently comforted Wendy. Confidence came instead of fear. Together they vowed to face the trial ahead. Wendy, overwhelmed by uncertainty, questioned his intentions. Yasus sensed her anxiety and gently tried to find out the truth. Yasus did not look remorseful. He called it luck, a conscious risk, while Wendy stood silently, quietly absorbing this betrayal. Yasus gently promised Wendy that everything would get better. She listened quietly, unsure if she could really trust him. Wendy openly admitted that she was a rare slave with the right to choose. She suspected that Yasa planned to sell her. Itsuki directly accused Dadel, shocked that he was put up as a stake without his consent. The game suddenly became personal. Later, Yasus casually asked Wendy how her day went, and she felt even more uneasy, recalling Dadel's inquisitive look earlier. Itsuki softly smiled to calm her. Wendy hesitated, then barely nodded. Their uncertain alliance quietly began to form. Wendy questioned Yasus's harsh deadline. The task seemed impossible, but he was terrifyingly confident. Her hesitation revealed doubt, and Yasus pressed harder, testing her faith in Itsuki's strength when the odds were almost zero. Yasus insisted that Itsuki would not abandon her. His assurances seemed manipulative, but Wendy could not argue. Meanwhile, Itsuki worked late. He believed this challenge could help them both. Reincarnation advised Rest to rest and carefully monitored his progress. She hinted that Wendy and Sort shared troubling details. Reincarnation, sipping tea, teased Itsuki about his youth. Their light argument eased the tension after talking about serious matters. When pouring tea, Itsuki confessed his doubts. He wanted to be independent and sell potions without guild restrictions. Reincarnation briefly pondered what was said, then remembered Dadel. She hinted that potions would not necessarily bring profit. She lifted the veil. Dadel's strange appearance concealed his influence, and the pig nearby was actually the guild manager. Itsuki realized the bitter truth. Making money from potions would be difficult, and he sighed, disappointed but full of understanding. Reincarnation finished the advice and nudged Itsuki to think beyond potions. He quietly considered the idea. While Itsuki was pondering, he received a message from Hayato. An old acquaintance appeared out of nowhere without any explanation. Hayato was asking for help through the screen, and Itsuki felt the urgency. Danger was already unfolding nearby. A huge phoenix burst out of the smoke clouds, and Hayato's team stood firm, ready to face whatever would come next together. The girl summoned a whirlwind. The enemies were thrown into the air. Another instantly struck nearby. The group attacked in unison. The girl jumped ahead of her comrade, shielding him from the beast that lunged, and shouting desperately, simultaneously opened access to the supplies. The phoenix spread its blazing wings. Its energy rose even higher and exploded with a force that instantly stunned the attackers nearby. After the clash, Itsuki sincerely praised their efforts and promised that next time he would return with the red dungeon. Hayato dashed forward clearly and without hesitation. He threw a shining blade that pierced the phoenix's protective barrier. Hayato, drawing his weapon, challenged the phoenix. He smiled confidently, ready for a real fight. The monster roared. Hayato confirmed the request with his guild card, and the girl burst with joy as the smoke cleared over the battlefield. Returning to the workshop, Itsuki looked admiringly at the guild card. Real-time communication, like a magical phone. He took up crafting again despite the fatigue. He worked persistently, polishing tools and formulas with precise, silent concentration. Exhausted from the road, Itsuki refused food, and Sort's loud exclamation before the giggling maid scared everyone present. While Itsuki stood puzzled, Fried told him about Hayato, and Sort, embarrassed by her previous prank, burst out screaming in irritation. Itsuki asked for a room so Shiro could finally rest, and he himself decided to go wash up. Meanwhile, Mi calmed down. She found comfort in dessert, savoring a lavish cake in peaceful silence. They praised the cake with admiration, and Chris proudly confirmed that it was hers, saying Wendy had taught her. Chris stared into her cup of tea. Quietly, she admitted that she was unsure whether to stay on Hayato's team. She felt useless, thoughts spinning in her head, tears welling in her eyes, and she believed that her absence would bring the group the greatest benefit. Memories of Hayato moved her even in sadness. Chris could not help but notice how deeply she respected him. She barely smiled and offered Hayato a piece of cake. Her voice trembled, but a hope flickered in her heart that he still needed her. Hayato sensed Chris's unease, her hands trembled, and he, with regret in his voice, quietly apologized for everything. Chris blamed herself for every mistake, her confidence shaken, and she feared becoming a burden to Hayato. Despite her fears, everyone warmly embraced her, and she cried because she realized they truly accepted her as she was. Hayato sincerely comforted her. His words reminded her why she wanted to cook with love. With renewed enthusiasm, Chris smiled. Confident again, she served the cake baked with hope, and Letty guaranteed its taste. Hayato smiled gently and silently watched over the others. Their peace and laughter now meant everything to him. Emily noticed that Letty had become softer. She shrugged, sipped her tea, and secretly rejoiced that it had become easier again. In the bath, Wendy suddenly appeared next to Itsuki. She asked why he was so tired and where he had slept. Itsuki stammered, avoiding the truth. Wendy moved her foot closer and watched as he nervously twisted. An awkward silence hung around. Itsuki sincerely apologized and Wendy was silent, but her calm gaze made it clear that she understood everything. While bathing, Wendy noticed bruises along Itsuki's shoulder, and her calm disappeared. She sternly scolded him for recklessness. Although Wendy respected his independence, it still annoyed her. She could not endure the constant stress of uncertainty. Overwhelmed with emotions, Wendy hugged him in the water. Her tenderness quietly grew into something deeper. Ina, suspecting nothing, entered to help, but what she saw made her freeze with shame. Outside, the maids whispered anxiously. Rumors about what happened in the bath spread instantly. Some found it amusing, others irritating. Late at night, under the moonlight, Itsuki carefully prepared something, and Wendy watched silently. In Itsuki's hands, a magical artifact came to life, and Wendy froze. She recognized what was once thought to be lost forever. Hayato doubted the origin of the artifact. He himself knew that such things could not be bought even at elite auctions. Itsuki handed Hayato the artifact and said it was a repayment of a debt. The girl confirmed that the artifact was indeed from Orgal. Itsuki also handed over money. He insisted that his peaceful life began with Hayato's kindness, and this was his gratitude. Hayato bowed deeply, overwhelmed with emotion. This gift was not just help, it restored the hope he thought was lost. Chris stood silently, then raised the bottle. With determination in her heart, she drank the mysterious liquid. Everyone held their breath and watched. Chris's eye opened wide, her sight returned, and for the first time she saw them clearly. Tears streamed down her cheeks and she smiled. Hayato's face, once blurred, now clearly emerged before her. The room exploded with emotions. Everyone hugged her tightly. After pain and doubts, Chris finally felt whole. Emily asked what ingredients made up the rare elixir, and to her surprise, Itsuki had moon grass, which everyone considered useless and lost. When her sight returned, Chris smiled warmly and, surrounded by friends, thanked them from the bottom of her heart. Having successfully healed Chris's eye, the young man plunged back into alchemy, this time preparing an elixir from the rare moonlight herb received from Emily. Emily said this herb was a true rarity, found only in the deepest dungeons. Though it was difficult, he managed to make a whole elixir from a single blade of grass and gave it to her. Later, when he finally relaxed, two girls clung to him, demanding attention. He tried to concentrate, torn between their voices. Tension rose. The girls threw sharp glances at each other, and sparks of silent rivalry ignited in the air. One passionately wanted to choose an outfit for herself, while the other thought only about food, tea. Tension between the girls flared up. They argued over who spends more time with their master. To calm the situation, he proposed a simple solution. They would all explore the capital together, and no one would be left behind. His words seemed to melt the tension. She reluctantly agreed, realizing that he was trying to be fair to everyone. Yet a quiet uncertainty still hung over them, and their faces became thoughtful, as if feelings hard to express were hidden in their eyes. Far from the group, though with the same status, the girl looked at the city and could not help but feel the distance that separated her from the connection that seemed to exist among the others. Morning light flooded the capital, and the group stepped onto the crowded, bustling streets. Soon they entered a luxurious clothing store. The elegant interior enchanted them, and one girl eagerly rushed to pick out clothes for her master. She insisted on updating the wardrobe. He hesitated, preferring simplicity, but she still pulled him to the fitting room, determined to see him properly dressed. Dressing in formal clothes, he hesitated whether it was really necessary, though everything fit perfectly. The girls watched with mixed emotions, each thinking about her own preferences. When asked to choose something, the quiet one refused. She already had clothes for outings, and behind her gentle refusal, there might have been deeper reasons of modesty. He asked Ine and Renge to choose outfits that they liked. Ine hesitated at first, but she was told to take what suited her. Hearing his encouragement, sparks lit up in Aina's eyes, and she resolutely took on the task, promising to do everything to see it through. Zolt praised him for his thoughtfulness. While Shiro was not interested in fashion at all, she cared only about food, and others could take care of style. The saleswoman cheerfully offered help, but her excessive enthusiasm scared the girls, especially Aina, who found her manner a bit too intrusive. Later, while they waited, Shiro admitted she was starving. The others had already changed, and she was only thinking about how to satisfy her hunger. The seller greeted the girls in the fitting room, clearly filled with anticipation. She theatrically waved her hand and showed the store's treasure collection in school style. The girls came out with uncertain expressions, and the boy looked puzzled by such an unexpected theme. The seller leaned closer, impatiently awaiting feedback. The boy, though surprised, admitted that the outfits were nice, even a bit nostalgic. In her excitement, the saleswoman came too close, causing him to stumble, and she confessed that these items were invented by previous travelers, people from another world, possibly like him. Without blinking, she again presented the three girls, proudly showcasing them in their new look. In a police uniform with a short miniskirt, the girl shyly stood before him and asked if she looked strange. At first he was silent, while the clerk, on the contrary, beamed with delight and impatiently sought his approval. Although he acknowledged the uniqueness of the costumes, he could not get rid of the thought of how many other wanderers had passed through here. Although hesitant, the girls felt completely at ease. One tensed her hands and was surprised to feel that the outfit was strangely practical, and another shyly raised her eyes. She looked gently and explained, buying clothes for her was not about luxury, but her way of repaying all the care she had been given. Her face flushed red when he said she was cute. Embarrassed, she could not hide her emotions and ran away, and he jokingly imagined her as a school idol. Meanwhile, the girl in the police uniform nervously admitted that her appearance was too exaggerated. He quietly admired the design of the outfit, not understanding who came up with such a combination, but in his thoughts sincerely praised the unknown creator. A gentle smile blossomed on her face. With sincere eyes, she thanked him and in a soft, sincere voice called him master. His heart stopped until a voice broke the silence and reminded him that he was drooling. Shiro reminded everyone that she was hungry and clearly did not want any more distractions. Toru stood in front of a pile of shopping bags, surprised at how much he had received. Walking through the lively city in the company of friends, he peeked into several shops. The sellers smiled gratefully as he put everything into his magic bag. They were walking, one of the girls gently reminded about lunch, and he suddenly realized that he had not eaten at all. He was distracted by the kindness shown to him. He picked up the little girl animal and asked what she wanted. She instantly replied her favorite meat. Soon she happily munched in the square, full and satisfied. The group settled in a circle on the grass under the warm sun, savoring shashlik and snacks. All were relaxed and joyful. A local told Tor that the park is a favorite place for tourists, especially couples, and the atmosphere itself was festive and welcoming. He remembered how such scenes used to drive him crazy before, but now those bitter feelings had turned into calm. When the girls looked at him warmly, Toru truly felt accepted among them. Hai's heart overflowed. In his imagination, he appeared surrounded by beautiful companions, as if holding a bouquet in both hands, and at this thought he smiled uncontrollably. Wandering near the park, Toru came across a statue that resembled Wendy. Others explained that it was a monument to the Great Water Fairy, known for her mysterious disappearance. Later the group sat down to eat. Aganth, young beastman, enthusiastically praised the food. Her tail wagged happily as she chewed next to Toru. After the walk they returned home and found two elegant girls near the entrance. Toru was caught off guard by this. He became curious, asked who they were, suspecting that they might be people of noble lineage. Instead of answering, the host with a nervous smile changed the subject, suggesting some entertainment for everyone, which left Toru confused but intrigued. News about the martial arts tournament in the imperial capital attracted everyone's attention. Toru and his comrades froze before the announcement, watching with admiration. The host enthusiastically told about the tournament, where skilled fighters from all over the capital would clash to prove their strength. Toru hesitated whether to enter, so he asked Shiro what she thought, and she, surprisingly, refused. Fighting was not entertainment for her, but a way of life. Returning to the others, Toru asked if any of them would participate. At first hesitating, the girls nevertheless stepped forward, ready to show their true skills. Later, one of the beast girls approached Shaylee and offered to compete with one condition. If they won, she would ask for something in return. Her face flushed, she lowered her eyes. The beast girl hesitated before confessing that she had something to say, and her voice was barely audible. Taro answered calmly, accepted her request without hesitation, gently warned not to act hastily, and finally agreed to register the group for the tournament. Confidence appeared again on her face. She decisively pointed at Taro, promised a confident victory, and asked him to cheer them on. Without delay, the girls encouraged each other and rushed to training. When the evening sky turned to night, their preparations were already in full swing. Later that night, in a quiet room, one of the girls began to behave strangely. Her friend looked at her with concern, not understanding why she had changed so suddenly. That night, Wendy tried to comfort her friend, feeling her unease, and could not help but notice how uncharacteristic it was for her to impulsively sign up for the tournament. The conversation continued, and the beast girl confessed her true feelings. Though hesitating, she admitted that she was jealous of the time others spent with Taro. Gently hugging the pillow, she whispered the truth. Maybe she liked him. These words left Wendy speechless, her eyes widened with surprise. The mood changed sharply as soon as others joined in. When Renj was asked how she felt, she blushed and became embarrassed, and this only deepened the tension. Everyone was watching, and Renj could barely respond. With a confident smile, Aina boldly admitted that she also liked the master. Her open confession surprised the others. They had never heard her say this aloud before. Renj looked confused as it dawned on her that the three of them had feelings for the same person. Returning to the topic, Renj asked if she planned to confess her feelings after winning the tournament. At first there were jokes and embarrassment, but soon deeper anxieties surfaced. These were not ordinary girls, they had once been criminals. Wendy, who was completely different in status and experience, did not leave their thoughts. One girl quietly noted how different they were from her and could not decide whether that difference was distance or hope. Late at night, the girls gathered and were silent. Feelings hung in the air, unspeakable, but the truth was clear to all present. Meanwhile, Taro relaxed in the bath, completely unaware of the emotional storm raging among his companions. He thought about the upcoming tournament, hoping the girls would stay safe and not get hurt. On a wide meadow near the cliffs, three girls prepared for sparring. One of them, holding a wooden staff, took a fighting stance, and another gave the signal to start. Without hesitation, the girl with the staff rushed forward, shouting during the attack, her eyes fixed on the target. She fiercely swung the staff, aiming it directly at the girl who was calmly standing opposite. The attack missed. The staff struck the ground. The red-haired woman instantly responded with a swift counterattack. The woman jumped high, spun in the air, and with a precise kick pushed the calm girl backward. Charged with energy, the girl with two ponytails unleashed a powerful long-range attack. Several explosions burst forward, and she shouted decisively. In response, the other fighter swiftly jumped onto the training dummy and, skillfully flipping in the air, demonstrated impressive control and precision. Their movements collided. Both girls rushed forward, fists clenched, aimed at the same target. Sparks flew as their strikes met in the center of the battlefield. A precise hit one girl's leg lifted the opponent into the air and knocked her down, while the victor stood firmly and silently watched what had happened. The red-haired woman charged forward with a fierce strike. Her face showed a sharp, focused expression, ready to turn the tide of the fight. Shouting in the middle of the attack, the girl delivered a circular kick directly at the opponent. The movements were lightning fast, and the strike seemed sharp, as if. Despite the fierce exchange of blows, all three suddenly collided mid-movement. After the clash, the small girl calmly settled on a nearby stone, watching the two exhausted fighters below, and bluntly said that their technique was sloppy. When she was asked about agility, she proudly stated that it was because she was a kitty, and others just looked at her with distrust. She later admitted that she was not serious at all during training, and two others under the midday sun were left stunned, disappointed, and speechless. Tension filled the air when the confident girl threw a sharp remark, declaring that she should not take this current version of her rival seriously. Her words hit right in the heart. She did not back down. The girl pointed at her and issued a challenge: stay until the tournament. Far from the group, a red-haired swordswoman approached the waterfall. She walked decisively with blades in her hands, her presence calm but dangerous, as, raising her weapon, she pondered. Her recent fights had been against monsters that did not pose a real challenge. Without hesitation, she released a powerful slash. Water splashed from the sheer force. Her eyes focused, her stance sharpened. She was ready for a real fight. With one mighty chop, the red-haired warrior split the rock in half. The force of the blow sent fragments into the air. She caught her balance and whispered that she must find her grip again. Somewhere nearby, a determined girl with cat ears unleashed a powerful charge, swinging her weapon with a fierce scream. Meanwhile, in a quiet manner, a young man lazily yawned, completely unaware of the battles unfolding outside. Boredom and restlessness drove him to wander the corridor, wondering whether to take up some alchemy, and the girl nearby instantly understood he was an alchemist. Suddenly, another girl appeared before him. She glanced sharply and asked suspiciously if he was the one from yesterday. The girl proudly introduced herself as Iris and demanded to be called exactly Iris. Outraged, Iris shouted at him, demanding proper respect, reminded him that she was a noblewoman, and insisted that he start over with appropriate politeness. Deciding it was not worth arguing, the boy switched to full politeness and apologized deeply. Crossing her arms arrogantly, Iris accepted the apology, confirmed that he was indeed an alchemist, and theatrically praised him for finally understanding his place. With a spark in her eyes, she ordered him to immediately show his alchemy. When he hesitated, memories of past authoritarian bosses flooded in and he already knew what would happen. He tried to buy time and suggested waiting a week, but she would not tolerate it. Her firm grip on his sleeve demanded action here and now. Hidden in the trees, Akinoichi silently observed from outside. Her eyes fixed on the conversation through the window. She remained in the shadows and listened attentively. The confident girl demanded a demonstration of alchemy, stepped forward with zeal and challenge. He stood with a stone face, clearly uninterested in the task ahead and already regretting the trouble. He barely placed the items on the table. A magical stone appeared and a sphere spun, but the girl was unimpressed by his indifferent attitude. She coldly examined the instruments and disdainfully called the spinning sphere merely a child's toy, without much value. He hesitantly activated the materials, trying to follow the steps. She narrowed her eyes, unimpressed by this failed attempt when, while the boy continued working, the maid quietly entered and offered the girl more tea. 2 hours passed and only then did the boy lift his head with relief. In front of him stood a reddy strange device resembling a small fan that glowed dimly. They both looked at the strange object on the table, and she leaned in a little closer, embarrassed, trying to understand what it was for. He pressed the button and the fan came to life. The blades started spinning. A powerful gust of wind suddenly swept through the room. Surprised but delighted, she admired the cool breeze, and although the boy admitted that it still needed finishing, she could not hide her joy at the unexpected comfort. He enthusiastically explained how it worked, like a regular electric fan, but inside a water magical stone that cools the air like an air conditioner. He added that if you just put a fire stone in it, it instantly turns into a heater. She leaned in, curiously examining the device up close. Although he asked her to stay away, she did not seem worried at all. But suddenly there was a sharp crack. One of the fan blades cracked in the middle of spinning. The boy reacted in shock with. Suddenly the blade lunged straight at her, and her eyes widened at the approaching danger. Instinctively she jumped back at the last moment. The broken piece flew past and got stuck in the wall behind them. The warrior rushed forward with fierce steps, engulfed in rage, seeing that Iris was in danger. Her blade was ready. Pronouncing judgment, she raised her weapon, set on punishment. The boy panicked and tried to calm her down as she approached closer. Before the situation escalated, Iris intervened and calmly ordered the swordswoman to retreat. Realizing the mistake, Ime lowered the weapon and bowed, officially apologizing. The boy admitted guilt for ignoring the previous warning. When the tension dissipated, Iris introduced Ime as her personal bodyguard and reassured everyone, "Today no one here will lose their head." Glancing at her clothing and manner of behavior, a thought flashed through his mind. This outfit, this behavior, he recognized them. He could not believe it and whispered Cunning to his surprise. Such female ninjas really existed in this world. His thoughts spun into chaos. He was distracted by exaggerated fantasies about seductive skills and stunning presence. Lost in the moment, he sharply returned to reality when she looked at him suspiciously and embarrassedly, and immediately denied having any indecent thoughts. She changed the subject and, praising his alchemy, noticed his technique and was amazed to learn that his skill was already at the 9th level. He, as if casually, admitted that he was a wanderer and explained that his high level of alchemy was due to strange origins, and she was still impressed. He modestly downplayed his talents and credited his mentor who had guided him from the very first steps, while the girl became increasingly interested in this mysterious teacher. When he pronounced the name Ryanrick, her face changed. Recognizing the name, she instantly understood his connection to a famous mystical figure. As the day came to an end, they exchanged polite words, and as soon as the others began to disperse, the mood lightened. She teased him with a sly smile and promised forgiveness if he entertained her once more. He accepted the challenge with a smile, with, Iris waved cheerfully and walked away, her guard following behind while the boy froze in place, unsure if they would ever meet again. He watched her leave, pondering their encounter. Although everything seemed light and carefree on the surface, this day left a deep mark on him. Time passed, the city caught a new rhythm, and finally the day of the great tournament at the capital Colosseum arrived. Tension hung in the air as the warriors prepared. Among them, rivals readied themselves for battle with fierce determination. A group of women in armor stepped forward, focused and united, and their footsteps announced the beginning of a new chapter in this unfolding story. The majestic city arena rose up, drawing crowds from all sides to its base, while nearby lively rows of shops buzzed with energy. People gathered for the day's festive celebrations. Among the crowd, a group watched in awe as excitement swirled around the event. Even those who had just arrived in the capital felt how popular this festival was. They found a quiet spot to rest and happily ate from packed bentos. The little girl with animal ears especially enjoyed the meat skewers. Suddenly, a familiar voice shouted, energetically waving from the crowd. The group turned toward the sound, "Friend." Friendly faces met again. They exchanged news and prepared to move to the reserved seats where others were already waiting. Before they moved on, one of the men jokingly complained. It was clear he was bothered by the playful nickname given to his group. Soon the group headed towards their goal and they easily passed the checkpoint. The guards recognized them. No explanations were needed. Walking down the corridor, they noticed several suspicious men whispering nearby. One of the group members noticed the quarrel but decided not to react immediately. Their path eventually led to large wooden doors and someone from the staff met them, promptly leading them inside. Inside, they entered an exquisite private box from which there was a breathtaking view of the majestic arena. The group settled into a luxurious VIP suite, amazed by such treatment. Their host explained that this was the result of fulfilling a request from one of the nobles. While the rest respectfully admired the scenery, the girl animal jumped onto the sofa, too excited. Just as they began to relax a little, deliberate footsteps echoed through the hall. Someone new entered the room, fashionably late but clearly radiating confidence. Confidently stood a girl in official attire, with crossed arms and a sharp, piercing gaze. She radiated such presence that she attracted attention from the moment she entered. Everyone suddenly recognized her. It was Iris, the one they did not expect to see at all. Unexpectedly cheerful, the girl firmly grabbed Hayato's arm, her eyes shining with tenderness. She confidently and familiarly called him by name and he froze in place because of it. She confronted him face to face and sharply asked why he constantly tries to avoid her. Meanwhile, the rest of the group quietly whispered explanations, and it turned out that the girl was none other than Princess Sufali. During the hunt, Sort instantly launched an attack. Aina tried to speak, but Sort was completely focused on his prey. Materials collected, the tension subsided. Aina smiled. Sort agreed it was time to go home together. Aina carefully gathered the materials. She sincerely hoped that Itsuki would craft valuable things from them at home. Sort poured out her indignation over how this item was used. It pained her that something important was turned into something trivial and devalued. Aina sat calmly, sipping tea, while someone else grew increasingly irritated by her relaxed behavior and blind forgiveness. Sort struggled with her thoughts. She was annoyed, but she also could not completely reject how Itsuki acted. Despite her tantrums, Sort still did not acknowledge her feelings. She mocked others' preferences to hide emotional confusion and pride. Still embarrassed, Sort forced herself to smile and, gathering herself, decided with enthusiasm to overwhelm Itsuki with a pile of tasks. Returning home, everything exploded into chaos. Reinrich handed over a suspicious potion and assured that it would invigorate the exhausted Itsuki. Before he could object, the girls pinned him down, and Shiro announced it as a gift with deadly admiration. Itsuki slowly woke up, his eyes still foggy, his head resting on something warm, and he realized it was someone's knee, like a pillow. Still dazed, water was gently offered to him, and he was surprised to realize that he had been resting on Aina's armored legs. Overwhelmed with fatigue, Itsuki ignored her embarrassed objection and insisted on staying in this cozy position a little longer. Sort, with a flushed face and irritated, leaned over him and warned him not to abuse her kindness anymore. Frightened by her reaction, Itsuki abruptly stood up, confused, and Sort turned away, deliberately pouting. Itsuki finally stood up and immediately asked about Aina, and Sort only said that he was a complete idiot. Aina greeted him gently, and food was served to him. Itsuki devoured everything in one breath, and when his stomach was full, he felt relief. He stood looking at those exquisite accessories, stunned that they were made under the influence of drugs, and remembered nothing. Reinrich estimated their total value at 40 million, and now Itsuki had only 5 days to return 36 million. Materials ran out, time was running out, and Itsuki sat anxious, looking for another way to earn money. Examining the last piece of ore, Itsuki suddenly understood everything when he saw it mysteriously tremble. Once an ordinary office worker, Itsuki Shinomiya began his unpredictable journey in this strange parallel world. Despite defeats and mental fatigue, he tirelessly recreated inventions, relying on vague memories of his past life. Under the pressure of human knowledge and burning desire, he created a tool made solely to give others pleasure. After countless attempts and complete dedication, Itsuki proudly completed his best creation and named it the Pink Rotor. Sword and Aina noticed the device and, intrigued, asked Itsuki what exactly he was holding up. Embarrassed and evasive, Itsuki could barely describe the device, and Sword guessed it was for massages. Sword teased Aina by suggesting she try it, and Aina hesitated at first, but the idea interested her. When the device turned on, Inus's face flushed. He was struck by the sudden and strong physical sensation. Ine could not control her reactions. She trembled, overwhelmed by the sensations from the vibrating device pressed against her skin. Stunned by the vibrations, Aina's body went numb. She could not resist the powerful effect of the strange device. The sensation became unbearable. Aina collapsed, filled with euphoria, and Sword indifferently remarked how relaxed she looked. Aina turned to Sword hopefully and asked to try it, and Sword, still unconvinced, inquisitively asked what the instrument was for. Itsuki nervously explained that it came from his world. Sword stared blankly, silently restraining growing irritation. Suddenly Sword grabbed a weapon, boiling with rage, and directly asked if she could finish off Itsuki now. Under Sword's piercing gaze, Itsuki tried to flee the room, but she angrily warned him to stop. Outside, under the moonlight, Itsuki once again enthusiastically examined his invention, planning to sell it as soon as possible and make money. He whispered the name Wendy, recalled his promise, and nervously looked around the area for possible shopkeepers. The group approached him with smiles. He decided they were customers and did not even suspect that he had now become their target. He barely had time to react when they rushed forward. He stumbled, the tension grew, and their faces became anxiously sharp. Itsuki stumbled during the escape, and those men put on a show, exaggerating injuries and demanding money from him for fabricated treatment. Surrounded, Itsuki offered a potion, and suspecting blackmail, he directly accused them of working for Dadel. Shocked by the accusation, they denied everything, and he suddenly dashed away before they could restrain him again. He loudly shouted about supposedly found gold coins, confusing them long enough to rush far ahead. When they chased Itsuki with weapons ready, he smirked and at the last moment activated the skill Pocket Money. As the sword swung at Itsuki, a girl suddenly appeared and without hesitation knocked down the attacker. Softly landing under the moonlight, the girl confidently looked back at the stunned Itsuki and whispered, "I succeeded." Itsuki froze under the moonlight when a girl in a cloak appeared, her fur strangely shone pure white. He recognized her, the same girl from the day of his arrival, small, quiet, sold into slavery. They met again in the city, and while eating together, she simply called herself Shiro. Later that evening, hostile men blocked their way, and Shiro stepped forward alone without hesitation and without fear. Standing firm in the alley, Shiro declared herself the shield of Itsuki, her face calm and unwavering. Shiro coldly warned them, any threat to Itsuki is a deadly retaliation, without any hesitation. The hooligan rushed forward without any thought, but Shiro easily dodged. Her reflexes were precise and utterly stunning. She prepared to deliver a deadly blow, while Itsuki panicked and begged for mercy before it was too late. Shiro obeyed his command but left the attacker severely wounded. Her movement was lightning fast, precise, and merciless. Shiro dashed at the remaining enemies. Their shock was immediate as her body flew through the air. The enemies were defeated. Shiro stood victorious, and the residents watched, stunned by her unexpected strength and confidence. Itsuki sincerely thanked her. Shiro calmly explained her mission. Yasus ordered her to protect her new master. Confused, Itsuki asked about her home, and Shiro explained that Yasus was her former master, but now Itsuki had taken on that role. Although Itsuki could not yet take her home, Shiro agreed to the delay and quietly followed him without any hesitation. Walking side by side, Shiro gently squeezed his cloak, showing trust. Their strange bond had just begun. Shiro peacefully curled up next to Itsuki. The lord sweetly watched her tenderness, and Itsuki awkwardly waved it off, pretending it meant nothing. In a private room, Itsuki presented his idea. He planned to sell a mysterious item to make money. Yasui snorted disdainfully at the price and said it was worth much less. Itsuki silently remained determined. Itsuki clearly explained that he was not selling the item itself, but only the exclusive rights to its production and promotion. Yasus clearly understood his plan. This pink rotor was a massager, and the rights meant owning the business. Yasus became interested in the product, and Itsuki, excited, asked to first discuss the contract terms before making a final decision. Yasus was worried. There was no assurance of return, no guarantee of supply, and the price seemed too high. Itsuki confidently replied that he could gather materials and, with the help of others, ensure stable deliveries. Shiro silently observed. It became clear to him, trust is hard to earn when offering a deal to someone you barely know. To prove sincerity, Itsuki offered himself as collateral, ready to become Yasus's slave if the deal failed. Wendy's memories surfaced like Sayase's, who sternly warned Itsuki his proposal could not be taken lightly. Yasus laughed at the audacious proposal, accepted the agreement, and completely crossed out the clause about slavery. Yasus said without hesitation that he wanted to become the sole owner, and permanent rights made the symbolic contract between them completely unnecessary. With a piercing look, Yasus warned Itsuki, betrayal will destroy trust and instantly cancel all future chances. As the negotiations were coming to an end, Itsuki nervously asked for one more favor with a trembling voice, and the conversation completely shifted away from business topics. When morning came, Itsuki finally finished making the rotors. Tired and yawning, he noticed that the sun was already rising. Sleepy Shiro slowly crept up. They had reached the guild, but she was barely standing on her feet. Despite drowsiness, Shiro stubbornly insisted on protecting Itsuki, even when she was being carried over the cobblestones. Elsewhere, the chief scolded the bandits for not stopping the stranger. Rage filled the hall. The nobleman Dadel waved off the warnings. Determined to win at any cost, he planned sabotage regardless of risks and consequences. Dadel swore revenge, vowed to kill anyone who dared to touch Wendy while she bathed quietly. Wendy, quiet and thoughtful, barely whispered "my lord" while washing, lost in conflicting thoughts in silence. The next morning, Itsuki came to the Alchemist's Guild. The duel date had not yet been finally decided. Face to face with Dadel, Itsuki stood calmly while the opponent demanded that he admit defeat in advance. Itsuki boldly challenged Dadel to settle their competition, and Dadel, confident that he was better, mockingly laughed at him. Unmoved, Itsuki insulted Dadel. Sort and Aina stood aside, impatiently waiting for the explosive outcome. Lord Yashuz announced the result in advance, confidently naming the winner between the two opponents. Itsuki showed huge bags of money, 80 million in profit. Dadel froze, speechless and unable to believe it. Raising his fist in triumph, Itsuki declared a complete victory. The humiliation of Dadel was absolute and public. Lord Yashuz confirmed the result once again. Itsuki was the first to reach the goal, and Dadel stood stunned and speechless. Yashuz angrily declared the competition over, and Orgal shouted in protest, fiercely refusing to accept defeat. In despair, Dadel accused Reincarnation of bribing Itsuki, furiously pointing fingers and grasping at any explanation to refute the verdict. Reincarnation calmly handed Dadel a document, and Dadel, suspicious and panicked, grabbed it and sharply demanded to know what was inside. It was official confirmation of payment. Reincarnation bought accessories worth 40 million directly from Itsuki's business. Reincarnation decisively defended the appraisal, emotionally emphasizing Itsuki's alchemical mastery. The price was fair and not inflated at all. Orgal panicked, suspecting a conspiracy. Itsuki's eyes filled with tears from Reincarnation's help. Yasus showed the royal seal and contract proof that the remaining amount had royal approval. The device called Pink Rotor received the king's approval and was officially sold for $40 million. Boldly smiling, Itsuki declared himself the winner. For him, losing was never an option, only survival. Wendy calmly asked Orgal to accept the result. His loud refusals became increasingly desperate and senseless. Dadel demanded that Wendy return. She stood her ground and refused to go back to the man she had not chosen herself. Wendy proclaimed her loyalty to Itsuki. Her heart and body now belonged only to him, not Dadel. Suddenly, a huge object crashed into the building, stunning everyone and instantly interrupting the tense confrontation. Broken and humiliated, Dadel ran away, cursing. He felt that everyone had conspired to mock and destroy him. Breaking under pressure, Dadel ordered a brutal attack. His thugs rushed forward, ready to kill without hesitation. Reincarnation sighed at this reckless audacity. Aina and Sort instantly prepared to intercept Dadel's approaching forces. Wendy trembled, but Itsuki resolutely calmed her. She believed in him above all else. Aina swore to protect Itsuki together with Sort, and Sort, offended by being called a dog, agreed despite the insult. He was ready. Shiro, a nimble warrior cat, burst in spectacularly and confidently reminded them that she was part two. Ina rushed forward with fierce determination. Sort and Shiro walked alongside, ready to deal with the attackers. The three charged at Durrell's men, blades and fists clashed in a chaotic, explosive skirmish. Shiro struck accurately with a kick, Sort blocked the blow, Ina met the brute force with a trained blade. Watching the fight, Wendy was gripped by fear. Itsuki quietly explained that he lacked strength, he could not fight but would stay by her side. Though weak, Itsuki promised never to let go. His strength was in standing beside Wendy. Itsuki tightly clasped Wendy's hands and confessed that he wanted to be by her side, no matter what happened. Overwhelmed with emotion, Wendy recalled all the feelings since she met Itsuki. Tears welled up and her heart sincerely opened. Dadel, still blind with rage, shouted about blood. Even innocent lives meant nothing to him anymore. Ina and Sort subdued the attackers and calmly wondered, why did Dadel recklessly escalate the situation? Reincarnation mocked the noble father, blaming all on his foolish son. Itsuki demanded that the Red Front be held accountable for their actions. Through the broken wall entered Darwin, the overseer of the Western District, with an impenetrable gaze and a heavy presence. Itsuki raised his head in shock. Before him stood the district chief, Darwin himself. Darwin silently stood next to the mysterious girl, and Itsuki could not understand why such a man was traveling with her. Darwin flinched at Darwin's voice. The formidable father stepped forward and demanded explanations to assess the entire conflict. Darwin was surprised by Dadel's formality and wondered why his son simply did not call him Dad. Itsuki watched as Darwin awkwardly talked about being called Dad and was embarrassed by his strange manner of behaving so formally. Despite the jokes, Darwin's aura was simply overwhelming. Unlike Yas's or Reincarnation, his presence demanded instant respect. Daryl nervously tried to justify himself while Darwin ignored him, focusing only on the fact that this concerned Wendy. Darwin sharply reprimanded Dadel. A loss is a loss without any excuses. Once defeat has occurred, the result can never be changed. Darwin approached Itsuki, fascinated but cautious. Shiro instantly drew her blade and sternly warned him, do not advance. Darwin sarcastically praised Itsuki's allies, calling them pawns, and Itsuki stood firm, but the man's crooked tone unsettled him. Darwin asked for cooperation, and Itsuki tried with all his might to calm Shiro. The drawn sword between them heightened the tension. Itsuki persuaded Shiro to retreat. She reluctantly complied but threatened Darwin at the slightest suspicion. She would not remain silent. Darwin confidently plopped down on the sofa as if showing that everything was under his control. The mysterious girl sat silently nearby, watching intently. Everyone sat down to talk. Darwin listened carefully, piecing together the events while Yeshus warmly treated the guests. Dadel, bound and humiliated, begged for understanding, but Darwin rejected his excuses, seeing only childish desperation in them. Errol insisted that he deserved to be a son, but Darwin coldly dismissed any blood relation, and Errol's shame only grew. Darwin, angry and sarcastic, claimed that true sons would never disgrace him. He openly doubted whether Adderall had the right to exist. Darwin repeated his life lesson once more. Mara calmly confirmed it. Winners fight persistently, and those who lose must accept it and move on. Yasis decisively listed Dadel's offenses: slander against him, attack on the Alchemist's Guild, and violation of established neutral diplomatic agreements. Darwin demanded compensation for mental damage. Yasis, unfazed, demanded payment for emotional trauma caused by Dadel's violence. Yasis subtly pressures Itsuki with financial arguments, reminding her that he is married. Itsuki mentally recoils from this disturbing image. Reincarnation calmly lists what she should be compensated for, demands that the wall be repaired, and then casually states that Darwin's bank is hers. Darwin, hearing her decision, falls, overwhelmed with despair. Itsuki is not surprised, and Myra confidently confirms her choice. Darwin pleadingly begs for mercy. Reincarnation proposes a compromised joint management of loans. Itsuki hesitates and considers this, not saying no immediately. Reincarnation threatens to expose the crimes of Darwin's son. Itsuki pretends not to understand, and Darwin is crushed by ruthless blackmail. Darwin exploded in despair, accusing the caught criminal that his illegal affairs had repeatedly caused him problems. Tied to Darwin is gripped by panic when Darwin warns him of harsh punishment from the church and public humiliation. Darwin tries to regain favor by offering help. Itsuki feels cornered, and Reincarnation lightly mocks his embarrassment. Shiro loomed over Darwin with deadly pressure. Darwin nervously praises her, understanding that she could kill him effortlessly. He praises Wendy for her kindness and invites her to come, trying to win her trust, although she clearly hesitates. Itsuki rushed to defend Wendy from Darwin's nasty remarks, and Darwin, touching her and mocking Itsuki, only fueled the tension between the parties. Darwin tests Itsuki's determination. Itsuki stands firm, does not retreat, and does not allow anyone to take his people. Itsuki confidently declares that he will live life to the fullest. Darwin doubts he will survive, but Itsuki brushes off the danger with a smile. Itsuki stubbornly refuses to reconcile. He demands justice for Darwin's guilt. Darwin himself suddenly became interested in his origin. Darwin, as a gesture of goodwill, offers Mary marriage, and Itsuki looks at this proposal with obvious surprise. Mara boldly flirts with Itsuki, teases him, and intrigued, challenges him. "Can you really satisfy me?" Stunned, Itsuki awkwardly declines the offer and modestly admits that he cannot meet Mara's demanding expectations. Itsuki asks for a favor and Reincarnation encourages him. "Speak frankly, ask for everything you truly want." Instead of wealth or power, Itsuki catches a quiet moment drinking tea and gently embracing his peaceful solitude. Over tea, Reincarnation notices his chaotic nature, and Itsuki emphasizes that everything has worked out and with a bunch of benefits. Reincarnation considers the bank a fair reward, while Itsuki downplays it, calling it a modest and mutual compensation. When Aina and Sword approach, Itsuki awkwardly laughs. He suddenly realizes that Darwin planned to deceive them from the very beginning. Reincarnation assigns Itsuki a task and he agrees, calmly heading towards Darwin's messenger who is already approaching. Walking through the city, Itsuki says he is unlucky and the girl laughs and teases him. Apparently, on the contrary, random benefits and ease are constantly coming his way. With the map in hand, Itsuki steps forward and Aina and Sword support him with growing affection. Following the map, Itsuki and the girls finally reach their goal. Ahead towers a huge mansion. Finally, he reaches the dreamed-of goal, his own home in this new fantasy world. Approaching the door, Itsuki hesitates. Aina admires the house with delight and Sword silently condemns it. Not knowing how to respond, Itsuki questions Aina's comment and Sword says he has seen worse places. Though everyone is waiting, Itsuki delays entering. He honestly says he is nervous and does not know what to expect in this unfamiliar new home. The memory of his first apartment surfaces. Itsuki thoughtfully reflects on how far he has come since then. Though doubts still linger, Itsuki opens the door and quietly steps inside, still trying to sort out his tangled feelings. Wendy gracefully walks through the hall in formal attire. Her face is calm, she is ready to perform her role. She warmly welcomes Itsuki and he freezes in surprise. Her smile is sincere and he is completely confused. Wendy confidently explains why she is here, and Itsuki is flustered and blushes. He is impressed by how easily and naturally she took on the duties of a maid. Just as Itsuki's heart swells with joy, Darwin intervenes, casually greeting him with a teasing smile. Darwin assures him that all promises are true. He had to struggle with doubts for a long time to believe that this luxurious house now belongs to him. The house has luxurious furniture, a large bath, and an alchemical laboratory. Darwin offers it as compensation. Darwin departs, entrusting Itsuki with the care of the estate. Itsuki gratefully thanks him and is already preparing for tomorrow's guest. Itsuki gladly lets the girls inside, giving them complete freedom in the room. Meanwhile, Wendy serves tea, remaining a devoted maid. So Wendy calls everyone to dinner, and Itsuki jokes that he will sleep under the open sky, as if questioning his sudden burst of responsibility. Aina and Sword try the bed for comfort and are delighted. They agree that it is much better than the local options. Sword persuaded Aina to go swimming with her, and they, chatting impatiently with excitement, happily set off. Meanwhile, Itsuki, alone in the steamy bath, finally releases the tension that had been pressing on him. He stretches, recalling the exhausting work and small joys of his former life. This luxury now seems unreal. While washing, he began thinking about useful inventions. His thoughts turned to alchemy, and suddenly someone interrupted. When he unexpectedly enters, she, calm and sincere, offers to wash his back. Itsuki froze in shock. Itsuki panics and Wendy approaches calmly. She insists on washing his back and he stood still, stunned and speechless. As the water gently flows, Wendy suggests joining the next baths. Itsuki blushes and does not know what to answer. Wendy begins to carefully scrub his back. Itsuki struggles with embarrassment, desperately trying to stay calm under this awkward pressure. Wendy leaned too close and Itsuki flinched from surprise, instinctively feeling the sudden closeness and softness. Wendy asks him to turn around and panic instantly flares in Itsuki's head. He realizes that next she will wash him from the front. Wendy hugs Itsuki from behind and everything spins in his head. He is afraid that from excitement he will draw his sword. Wendy confesses her feelings, sincerely grateful that he belongs to her. Her gentle sincerity completely caught Itsuki by surprise. Their faces slowly come closer, tension rises. Itsuki tries to speak, but emotions make him silent. As they approach, Sort bursts in, irritated by the delay. Aina tries to calm her co. Caught red-handed, Wendy and Itsuki froze. Sort and Aina silently watch. Judgment hangs in the stifling air, and Itsuki panics. He tries to explain the situation while Sort fiercely accuses him of inappropriate behavior and disrespect. Sort breaks down in tears, shouting that Aina now hates her. Both of them ran out, leaving Itsuki stunned and feeling guilty. Itsuki defends himself. Nothing happened. Suddenly, Aina sincerely apologizes, looking straight into the eyes of Itsuki, Sort, and Wendy. Aina resolutely states that it is their duty to help Itsuki, and Sort admits that she passed the work onto Wendy. Aina decisively steps forward to help, and Itsuki, in despair, is forced to get out of his own bath. Inaz sharply slipped and dramatically fell to the floor, and everyone immediately remained shocked and concerned by her unexpected fall during movement. Itsuki falls into despair because of the spoiled bath. Sort instantly rushes forward, covering Aina, and the tension explodes into chaos again. That night at Darwin's house, the guests shyly apologized for disturbing the hosts so much and spoke about it with regret to Dadel. Dharma listens silently while Myra bitterly talks about Darul's shame and how deeply it affected their family's standing. Although Dharma agrees with her, she grows tired of this conversation and begins scolding Dadel for his foolishness and ingratitude. Dharma wants to meet the vagabond responsible for this, noting how bravely he acted during the recent guild conflict. The morning sun spread over the quiet region, gently warming the peaceful roofs and the distant silhouette of the estate. Shiro stood on the roof and watched the birds flying away, his ears trembling at every flap of wings and chirping. Interested and cautious, Shiro silently and quickly sneaked down the corridor, sniffing the air to make sure if it was a familiar scent. Stopping by the closed door, Shiro quieted down, listened carefully, and then peeked inside with quiet curiosity. In the room, Itsuki was sleeping soundly. Shiro quietly entered and called his mistress anxiously. Itsuki muttered anxiously in his sleep, as if reliving that tense dream again, and Shiro silently watched, embarrassed and worried. Shiro gently stroked Itsuki's head, soothing him. He muttered incomprehensibly, but his breathing gradually evened out. Warm sunlight seeped through the window. Shiro turned her gaze and, quietly squinting, felt that morning had come. Itsuki sleepily got up and saw Shiro sleeping nearby. He quietly whispered her name. Wendy entered with breakfast. Itsuki explained why Shiro was here. She sighed, brushing Shiro's hair, and called her bothersome. Wendy approached to wake Shiro but froze. Itsuki quietly calmed her and decided to let Shiro rest peacefully. Everyone gathered for breakfast. The table was laden with dishes, and suddenly hunger sparkled in their eyes. Everyone praised Wendy's cooking, and Sort felt defeated. She realized she couldn't compare, but still quietly admired the dish. Although Itsuki clearly enjoyed the food, his chaotic manner at the table worried Shiro. He sat silently watching him eat sloppily. After they finished everything, they politely thanked Wendy, served tea, and the quiet morning routine slowly faded. Itsuki, who now lived in peace, enjoyed another luxurious dinner. Wendy's dishes brought them comfort and daily pleasure together. The next morning, teasing remarks poured in. Sort joked about Itsuki's dependence, hinting that Wendy had completely tamed him. Defending himself passionately, Itsuki fervently spoke about the power of food, about how taste and anticipation make every dish truly meaningful. Moved by his words, Wendy became the emotional heart of the home. Her dishes gave the whole family hope and unity. Then Wendy quietly thanked Shiro for the cleaning. A calm settled over their home, sustained by their shared responsibility. Shiro quietly noticed that Wendy had changed. Her dishes had become warmer, as if full of barely perceptible tenderness. Gathered together, the group listened as Itsuki nervously prepared to thank them for their support. He showed small, thoughtful gifts, little symbols of gratitude, to thank everyone for their help and friendship. Touched by the gesture, Aina, Sort, Wendy, and Shiro agreed. Their faces softened, moved by Itsuki's sincere attempt. Wendy promised to cherish this and, as if whispering, said, "So everything is fine," and her heart quietly shone with joy. Itsuki suggested they stay longer, but Sort refused. Their debt must be worked off through adventures. They parted, cheerfully saying goodbye. Ine warned them to take care of themselves, and Itsuki tried to calm Sort's energy. Later, the tension rose again. Everyone feared that Renji would find out about their situation and misinterpret their connection with Itsuki. Despite the anxiety, Sort still moved forward with firm determination and promised to do everything in her power with resolve and pride. That afternoon, under the supervision of Yasus Itsuki, he concluded a formal agreement with Wendy and Shiro, finally solidifying their unity. Taking hands and speaking words, the magical contract sealed loyalty and a shared fate. Yasus accepted the result with humor, and Itsuki modestly apologized, grateful that he was entrusted with their future fates. As dusk fell, Itsuki sat silently. Wendy called him and saw that he was looking at the distant hills. He explained that he was thinking about using the free land for farming, a peaceful idea born from a feeling of contentment. When he asked inquisitively, Itsuki answered easily. The calm environment inspired him to start anew. Itsuki gently hugged Shiro to himself, silently promising a life filled with warmth, care, and peace. Wendy joined them, her heart thawed, and she was born a new dream of a peaceful family. Just as coziness settled, suddenly there was a knock. Wendy looked outside. Strangers had come, and an unexpected tension suddenly appeared in the home. When Dharma formally introduced himself along with Myra, his words shook Itsuki's peaceful life. Dharma proudly introduced himself and began listing his achievements and connections, while Itsuki listened, feeling an overly confident and intrusive tone in his words. Later, Dharma together with Myra visited Itsuki's home and formally expressed gratitude and apologies for past misunderstandings. He apologized for the troubles caused by Dadel and regretfully admitted that the situation had become worse than they thought. Dharma offered to explain in more detail, but Itsuki refused. It was better to quietly leave it in the past. Dharma offered to explain in more detail, but Itsuki refused. It was better to quietly leave it in the past. Smiling, he evaluated Judge Dharma Dadel, quietly not understanding how someone could choose such a shameful man for the family. Dharma insisted once again on thanking Itsuki for the Darwin case, and her unusual sincerity made everyone tense. Itsuki asked not to be called young master anymore, and Myra, watching closely, warned him to stay alert. Dharma confessed his admiration. He placed Itsuki third immediately after his adoptive father and said it with a strange, passionate, and sparkling confidence. Itsuki felt very awkward, and Myra sharply declared him taboo. She was irritated by Dharma's charm turning into obsession. Later, near the house, Dharma indifferently asked if Itsuki was comfortable, pretending as if nothing had happened. Itsuki praised the quality of the bath, and when he learned that Dharma personally designed it, putting so much thought and care into it, he was genuinely surprised. Madara openly said that she had listened to Drifter's feedback and worked tirelessly to meet Itsuki's expectations. While she showed him the city, Itsuki, observing her composure, awkwardly thought about her adoption story. Dharma and Myra politely said goodbye, extending a hand of support, and Itsuki quietly nodded in response with barely noticeable gratitude. Tired and hungry, Shiro cuddled up to Itsuki. He apologized and promised dinner tonight Wendy would grill. Dinner was served generously. Laughter filled the table as Itsuki, Shiro, and Wendy enjoyed everything. Then Itsuki settled into the armchair together with Shiro. Both were full after the hearty meal prepared by Wendy. Wendy suggested a bath she had prepared. Shiro immediately insisted on joining, and Wendy promised to follow. Under the stream of warm water, Itsuki gently bathed Shiro, making sure she was clean and felt comfortable. Shiro pouted but obeyed. Itsuki finished washing her and led her to the bath to immerse and warm up. Shiro splashed carefree, ignoring Itsuki, and floated freely, although she was half a cat. Wendy approached nearby and asked, "How do you like the bath?" Cairo deeply relaxed and quietly purred with pleasure. Wendy quietly entered, her face calm, ready to join them in the bath. Itsuki advised Shiro to immerse up to her shoulders. She lazily nodded, enjoying the warm water. Wendy quietly came in. Itsuki turned, surprised by her appearance, while she carefully began to wash off the water. Wendy carefully stepped into the bath, and Itsuki, shuddering for a moment, turned when she softly spoke to him. She quietly and gracefully joined them. Shiro rested calmly, and Itsuki offered Wendy a place nearby. Silence stretched for a moment. Wendy looked away, nervously rubbing her neck, not knowing how to ease the tension. Gathering courage, Wendy asked if she could enter his room. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were calm and firm. Itsuki quietly replied, "Yeah," leaned closer, and the evening faded under the quiet, moonlit sky. In the lonely room, Mitsuki was quietly resting. A sudden knock broke the silence. He quietly responded with agreement. Wendy entered quietly, lowering her eyes, and her voice trembled as she called him, seeking quiet comfort. Itsuki smiled gently when Wendy offered help, but refused and promised to teach her next time. Memories surfaced, his first date long ago blurred, bittersweet, and it sharply contrasted with the quiet joy he felt now. Silence hung between them, and Wendy carefully reached out her hand. Her palms gently covered his hands, full of care. Wendy softly soothed him with words, reminded him of her role, but his heart was still restless. Turning to her, Itsuki sincerely confessed. His feelings were real, he had fallen in love with Wendy. Wendy hesitated for a long time but finally dared to ask. She was uncertain, wondering if her feelings were mutual or if she was mistaken. Though initially quiet, Wendy gathered her courage, squeezing her own hand, and quietly confessed her feelings. With a trembling voice, she tried to speak, slowly confessing and not knowing how to explain what she felt inside. Memories overwhelmed her, the time spent with him, the shared warmth, and she finally spoke her truth with tears and sincerity. Somewhere whispers of gossip spread, men compared each other, but Wendy felt her master was kinder than anyone she knew. Wendy hugged him tightly and whispered that she no longer cared about status, only the comfort he gave her mattered. Trembling, she pressed closer, seeking warmth and confidence, quietly asking him to accept her. She whispered her desire, begging not out of duty, but from a deep longing to truly be his. Lying next to him, vulnerable and sincere, Wendy gave herself completely, trusting his heart more than words. Their bond deepened in a quiet embrace, not out of duty, when suddenly someone intervened. Shiro entered half asleep and shuddered upon seeing Wendy so close to Itsuki in the middle of the night. Itsuki panicked, stammering in excuses and staring into emptiness, simply asking if Wendy was okay. He instantly diverted Shiro's attention, offering help to distract her while Wendy silently lay on the bed. Morning light crept through the leaves and Itsuki stood outside, unable to sleep after everything. Shiro found him wandering. She spoke calmly. Wendy prepared breakfast and a new day began. At breakfast, Wendy smiled warmly and offered him more soup, and Itsuki gratefully accepted, appreciating her gentle care. He announced that he was going to visit Reinhardt. Wendy nervously looked away. Meanwhile, Shiro just kept eating. When he was about to leave, Wendy gently stopped him. She was worried, but hid it behind a soft voice. He held her hands with quiet determination and gentle strength and promised, "Next time will be better." Wendy smiled warmly, let him go, and quietly wished that he would return safely from Reinhardt. Itsuki left confidently, quietly smiling to himself as he approached the quiet streets of Reinhardt. At the Alchemist's Guild, he showed his achievements, and Reinhardt, examining them, noted his gradual improvement. Jokingly, Rick teased him, loudly asking if he was already tired of cute girls. The conversation turned to past mistakes. She mockingly ridiculed his restraint and reproached his hesitation, laughing with her cruelty. Reinhardt sighed deeply in disappointment, and she insisted with a cold look that it was time for his training. Reinhardt poured the drink without hesitation. Itsuki doubted at first, but though reluctantly, agreed and took a sip of the strong drink. She sharply but sincerely scolded him. Itsuki admitted his fears and, acting from uncertain feelings, hurt Wendy. Reinhardt spoke about female truths, about how feelings always break out. Itsuki doubted her and for that received even sharper torments. Itsuki raised his glass and exclaimed that this night would be crazy. Reinhardt warned him that she would not clean up his mess. He got drunk and fainted. The innkeeper smiled gently and wished him a good night while he snored peacefully. Reinhardt caught him in the fall, muttering to herself and sighing, holding his drunken body. Later that evening, she watched him sleep soundly and thought about Wendy's fate, trapped in silent devotion. The mansion shook loudly. Wendy smiled sinisterly and Itsuki froze, nervously waiting for what would happen next. He opened the door and Wendy immediately rushed to meet him. She greeted him joyfully and cheerfully, despite his awkward return. Wendy kindly served tea. Itsuki quietly swallowed, averting his gaze from Shiro as the tension in the room grew. Remembering the promise, Itsuki apologized and swore to fix everything, but guilt weighed on him. Wendy's words calmed him, but her empty smile revealed her pain. Itsuki understood that his mistake had not yet been forgiven. Wendy walked alone, holding a stray animal close to her. Her voice was quiet. She waited, but he never came. Itsuki looked at the sky, weighed down by guilt. Her sadness kept repeating endlessly in his mind. Memories surfaced, bitter words poured out, promises crumbled. He realized that he had hurt others before, not just Wendy. He sat up sharply, lost in thought. Even if he is rejected, he will sincerely and straightforwardly apologize, not avoiding the truth. Wendy approached quietly. Itsuki looked up. She asked softly. He nodded with a heavy heart, hoping that she still cared. They sat quietly side by side. Itsuki hesitated, the words stuck in his throat, and Wendy quietly waited nearby. He stood up, bowed low, and apologized. His voice broke, but the sincerity hit Wendy right in the heart. Lowering his eyes, Itsuki quietly admitted his failure. I knew he had broken her trust, and it hurt him in his chest. Wendy exhaled, half smiling. Her voice softened. She forgave him, but barely this time, she warned. She gently clung to his shirt, begging him not to leave her anymore. Itsuki nodded, this time truly listening. After that touching moment, Wendy began preparing lunch. Itsuki, as if casually, invited Kairo to join him outside later. While they were cleaning, Shiro asked with curiosity, and Itsuki, holding the plates, dropped a hint that he wanted to try something. They gathered outside. Itsuki, feeling that he had been safe for too long, wanted to change and showed a strange spinning device. Wendy gasped with delight. Itsuki called it cosmic magic, and she asked if it was his special ability. He calmly explained that the goddess had recently bestowed upon him a gift and he had risen to a new level, and the backup plan, which was previously ignored, is now being tested. Itsuki activated spatial magic. A glowing shield flared around him, wrapping his body in a shimmering protection. Excitedly, he explained that he made the transparent wall himself and asked if it could protect him. He asked Shiro to test it. She took the weapon in her hands, hesitating a little but trusting his confidence. Shiro rushed forward with a sharp scream. Her first strike was powerful, but the wall held. It was not easy for him, but he urged her not to stop. She struck again, and he watched anxiously, surprised the wall withstood everything. Interested in the magical durability, Itsuki asked Wendy. She offered to help and revealed that she knew a spell. Wendy approached calmly, magic swirling around her. Itsuki gave the signal, preparing behind the barrier. She released a water sphere without hesitation. The sphere hit the shield, it tensed, and the wall held. Grateful and excited, Itsuki suggested going to the city. Shiro beamed with joy and eagerly awaited food and entertainment. Suddenly chaos erupted. Sort and Aina were rushing through the forest in pursuit of a beast, weapons at the ready. Aina lunged with precision. The blade passed through the monster and her strength and posture showed no hesitation. Sort wiped sweat and caught her breath. Around them, the bodies of monsters lay motionless. Their hunt for today was over. Later by the fire, Sort sipped stew. Aina quietly stirred the pot, her voice soft and calm. Sort reassured Aina, simple dishes are perfectly suitable. Aina hesitated but still admitted that doubts tormented her about whether she would please those she admired. Aina confessed her doubts. She wanted to do more but felt unworthy if Renji judged her again. On the second wall of the city, a young girl screamed and her voice echoed, desperately trying to break through. Guards blocked her way. Despite her pleas, they did not move. They were told not to let her in. Fists clenched, voice breaking, she confessed. No coin, no bribe, only sharp need and empty hands trembling with hope. The ranger dashed to the checkpoint, her tail wagging. She insisted on entry, though the guard clearly hesitated. Sensing danger behind, Renj growled sharply. Her keen instincts warned of something rapidly approaching. One guard turned, confused, when suddenly a blur flashed before his eyes. He froze in silence. Before he could react, Renj unleashed a fierce spinning kick and threw him back without breaking stride. She ran inside, slamming the gate behind her, while another guard shouted and blew a whistle. Ring dashed through the city gates and loudly shouted that she would rush to help before anyone else got hurt. Meanwhile, a living potato-like creature was hopping through the market, confusing the locals and attracting curious glances. Itsuki approached the strange creature, and Wendy explained that it was a moa, a jumping type of plant. Surprised, Itsuki realized that here vegetables could walk, unlike at home, where only fish moved. Shiro suddenly grabbed him, pleading for food, and without hesitation greedily gnawed on the living vegetable. Shiro shouted for meat, and Itsuki softly laughed and promised her a hearty, good meal. Wendy smiled at Itsuki's request and confidently offered to take them to the best place in town. They walked side by side, Shiro happily hopping behind, and Wendy gently squeezed Itsuki's hand. Then the three arranged a real feast. Laughter rose into the air, and Shiro joyfully devoured the meat. Meanwhile, somewhere far away under the moonlight, the guards were scouring the shadows, still searching for the one who had sneaked in earlier. Ring ran across the rooftops under the moonlight. Irritated, the guard relentlessly chased him all night. She fired into the sky, broke through the wall, and fell hard next to the stunned man. Meanwhile, Shiro found herself surrounded by guards. She raised her weapon and they shouted in unison, "Stop." Renj took Itsuki hostage, warned everyone not to move, and immediately demanded safe passage. She begged Wendy to believe her, persistently repeating that she only needed a brief help to protect her friends. Wendy screamed and Shiro froze, torn between the call of her master and the need to act. Itsuki, wounded but smiling, told Shiro to protect Wendy while the guards were closing in from behind. At that moment, Renji sharply signaled Itsuki to escape with her through the alley ahead. Itsuki unleashed his space magic, gathering strength, fleeing together with Renj through the narrow back streets. Behind them, a spell exploded, the wall shattered into pieces, and they disappeared deeper into the shadows. A loud rumble interrupted the chase. Ring struck a guard and cleared the path ahead. Itsuki hurriedly apologized, and chaos erupted in the narrow corridor among the confused soldiers. Without hesitation, Renj and Suki rushed away together, pushing forward to prevent the guards from surrounding them again. From above, Wendy shouted to Shiro, asking her to stay and instead protect Itsuki. Shiro silently nodded, took off into the air under the moonlight, accepting her new mission with iron determination. The hostesses waved happily to the guests, their charm hiding the tense atmosphere brewing behind the scenes. The new hostess led them inside, her calm voice concealing curiosity as she prepared their table. Renj became worried. She was unsettled by Itsuki's decision to hide in a place that clearly looked like a brothel. Itsuki learned that Reng had passed the barrier due to lack of money, which further complicated her situation. While Renj insisted that her friends were in danger, the madam quietly asked her to identify herself and explain what had happened. Itsuki showed a letter from Sort. It stated that Ainu and Sort had been captured by a pervert. The letter described terrible abuses, and reading its disturbing content, Itsuki froze in horror and became angry. Renj misunderstood the context of the letter and determined to save her friends, while Itsuki calmly tried to explain. Madam suddenly recognized Itsuki, the one rumored to be the leader of the Red Front. Rangshui sharply turned to him. Reng suddenly attacked Itsuki, furious. She was convinced he had deceived everyone and unjustly seized power. Rumors spread like wildfire. Ainu and Sort were called his slaves, and suspicion and fear flared among the adventurers. A few months ago in the Adventurers Guild, someone quietly approached Red Front and handed them a task. The name Rengak constantly appeared in the nomination lists, raising questions. Where do these frequent requests come from? An urgent mission arrived. It was about the land dragon. Rengsh rushed forward, determined to handle everything herself. Despite warnings about her carelessness, Renji waved them off. It's simple, and with cold confidence completed the mission herself. But smiling proudly, Renj promised to stretch her legs a bit before getting down to business. When she reached Rukaku, the heat and exhaustion hit her, but she still kept moving toward her goal. Walking through familiar streets, Renj muttered about the heat, her tail gently swaying while locals went about their daily affairs. Suddenly, children surrounded her, full of excitement. They immediately recognized Renj, joyfully shouting and gently pulling her by the hand. Renj warmly greeted the children and immediately noticed Shama's hand. Anxiety grew when she asked about the noticeable injury. Shama confessed the tragedy. During their journey, they were attacked by an earth dragon which wounded his father and shook their family. Feeling responsible, Ranga handed Shama a pouch and asked him to deliver it to his father. She smiled gently and said that this was repayment for an old favor she had been postponing for years. Before leaving, she, joking about her hunger, smiled and gently asked to send her regards to their father. Renya called the children to eat with her, and it turned into a warm, happy moment. Everyone was smiling. When the sun began to set, Range went to the Adventurers Guild Rukaku to report. The old guildmaster warmly welcomed her and quietly explained that most members were absent due to recent dragon attacks. He mentioned the appearance of the Earth Dragon. Adventurers were defeated, ordinary weapons were powerless against its powerful scales and wild strength. Dragons disappear like ghosts sinking into the sand. Only 3 remained, last seen 5 days ago near the southern oasis. Ranjai, in disguise, went on reconnaissance alone and realized that this ambush was risky, especially if Sort came instead. Suddenly, the ground beneath the mannequin trembled. A giant dragon burst upward in a sudden attack. After 3 days of patient tracking, Renj finally spotted one and prepared her mechanical weapon for battle. Confident and fierce, she stood before the dragon, shouting threats and rushing forward to deliver divine punishment. Returning home that night, Aina calmly told Sort that the bath was free, completely unaware of Renj's fierce battle. Returning home, Sort began writing a letter to Renj, anxiously asking himself if she was okay. Under the full moon, Renj fiercely clashed with the Earth Dragon, relying on her raw strength and sharp instincts. Range, though in heavy armor, took a hit and cursed. This monster turned out to be faster than she expected. The dragon's twisting tail struck hard. Renj, he steadfastly withstood the blow, muttering that the dragon's body was as tough as predicted. The wrench gathered energy, the stance firm. The next move was decisive. No more hesitation before this armored beast. Focused to the edge and lightning fast, Riniad dashed forward, muscles tense. She was ready to deliver her final strike. Her punch hit the dragon's jaw directly, breaking through its armored skin with explosive force and fury. Even as the beast howled in pain, Renj fought its limbs, not allowing it to gain the upper hand. Covered in slime and blood, she stood victorious, 1 killed, 2 dragons still to hunt. 2 weeks later, Renj sat alone in a cool spring in the middle of the desert, quietly recovering after the brutal mission. Ranya returned to the city. Children celebrated her victory. 3 dragons felled. Grateful voices filled the market streets. The boy happily thanked her. Now his father could recover thanks to Range's brave deed. Reng settled the bill at the guilds, joking about dragon meat and winking. Payment would come later, she didn't care. The guildmaster handed her a letter. Her eyes opened wide. It was a letter from Sort. Aina sent it. Aina. After reading the letter, Renge threw down her weapon and dashed away. She was gripped by anxiety. Something urgent had happened. Ranked ran out of the guilds, shouting that trouble had occurred, and completely forgot the letter behind. She raced through the wild wilderness. Furious Aina and Sort were in danger. She vowed to save them herself. That name burned in her head. Rinya clenched her fists and blamed only one person for everything: Itsuki. Her rage boiled over as she recalled the rumors. Gritting her teeth, she moved forward with burning determination. Suddenly she saw him, Itsuki. Without hesitation, she lunged forward and shouted, demanding that he stop immediately. Rengai drew her blade, but Shiro, enraged, parried it. If Rengai moved again, Shiro would strike. Itsuki shouted in shock, Shiro, because the confrontation turned into something much more personal and unexpected. Renji blocked the corridor and growled at Shiro. Shiro did not back down. The tension between them was oppressive. Steel met steel. Shiro fiercely parried as Renge charged with all her strength, and their blades pressed against each other, stuck in an immobile grip. Spectators gasped as the clash intensified. Renge pushed harder and shouted at Shiro, unaware of the crowd gathering around. Suddenly a man stood between them and stopped Shiro's strike. Rin frowned, surprised by his sudden, uninvited intervention. Renji broke free and punched the ground next to them. The stone cracked. Her anger was now directed at Itsuki. Shiro lunged with a high kick, but Renji met it with her knee, and Shiro's dagger instantly shattered in the air. Renge grabbed Kairo by the leg, sharply pulled her down, and irritated threw her across the tavern. Shiro's flying body frightened those present. The girl screamed and covered herself as Shiro flew straight at them. Shiro awkwardly fell on her back, stunning both and causing even more shocked looks in the crowd. Shiro jumped again to attack, but Ranya was already waiting, mocking. She immediately prepared a counterattack. Shiro flipped over Renge's swing and barely avoided the strike. Her body spun in the air, preparing for a swift counterattack. Both fighters froze, studying each other's stance. Shiro prepared her hands, and Renge tensed before the strike. Shiro lunged with her leg. It sliced the air and hit Renya's side with a clean strike. Renger's body twitched sharply from the blow, and a loud crack sounded as she clenched her teeth in pain. Renya flew across the floor. Before either could move, Itsuki appeared and instantly stopped everything. Shiro stood over Renge's body, raising her claws with murderous intent, ready to finish the fight. Before Shiro could strike, a hand firmly grabbed her wrist, interrupting the final blow at the last moment. Itsuki explained who Renge really was, and Shiro froze for a moment. He realized that Renge was not an enemy, but merely a misunderstood ally. Renge, still weak and trembling, confirmed everything. She named Danon Sort and vowed to save her dear comrades herself. Renge, defiant and full of emotion, resolutely declared that she would save them herself. Itsuki insisted that Shiro leave. Wounded but determined, Rinya whispered that she would contact Aina and Sort, paying no attention to her surroundings. Sensing danger, Shiro noticed movement and instantly pulled her master back, barely dodging an object thrown in their direction. The thrown object nearly hit Itsuki. Shiro's instincts snatched him from under the blow, but the danger still lingered in the air. Shiro shouted, "I will hold back any threat." She ordered Itsuki to run ahead. "Do not hesitate, do not delay." Shiro boldly rushed forward. Itsuki began to cast spells, believing in his words and vowing to succeed at any cost. Renge exploded with magic from rage, swearing that Shiro would not escape, and a deadly spell flared beneath her feet. Crystalline thorns burst from the ground as Rang screamed. The magic surged outward, sharp and swift. Shiro reacted instantly, dodging the barrage of thorns and covering herself, while Itsuki ran a little behind, keeping his distance. When Shiro landed, her eyes widened. Renge's magic was aimed not at her, but at someone else. A thorn pierced Itsuki's side and blood flowed. His eyes trembled. He froze completely from surprise in the middle of running. Itsuki completely collapsed. His side was soaked with blood, and his confused mind slowly realized something was terribly wrong. Lying on the cold floor, Itsuki groaned. Blood flowed freely from his hand, real, painful, and his. Diurnal panicked nearby, begged him to stay conscious, and shook him while he quickly fainted. Renge approached again. Her voice was sharp. She told Shiro to move. He froze, but his body trembled. Suddenly, city guards burst into the crowd, and a new voice appeared. "The fight is over." Everyone froze instantly. Surrounded by soldiers, Reng stood motionless. Shiro dropped to his knees beside Itsuki, her face numb and quietly broken. Lord Yasus came, sighing over the destruction, and with grim disapproval cast a glance at this chaos. Wendy pushed through the guards, begging to reach Itsuki. Her despair touched everyone deeply. She approached him, gently embraced him, and begged him to hold on a little longer. Itsuki weakly opened his eyes, tears rolling down his cheeks. Wendy screamed, her voice trembling. She was worried about her master. The guards surrounded Renge with spears raised, and Wendy pressed tightly against Itsuki, pleading for him to survive. Shiro silently looked around. Wendy shouted for help, but Rengi's face became cold and resolute. Yasus gave the order to treat, and Wendy instantly rushed to help, pressing the potion to the wound while Itsuki groaned in pain. The guard stepped forward and loudly announced, "Renge under arrest," and spears approached closer while she stood silently. Suddenly Renge activated magic beneath her feet. The guards shouted, but she lifted her leg, ready to break through. Renge cast Quagmire, the ground softened, and the guards stumbled and fell, confused by the sudden instability underfoot. The guards panicked. The swamp was pulling their legs in. They screamed, unable to move or keep their balance. The ranger hovered high above the chaos, landed on solid ground, and left the soldiers trapped behind her. Madness flared in Renge's eyes. She lunged at Wendy, filled with an uncontrollable desire to kill and without the slightest hesitation. Wendy shielded Itsuki with her body. As the wrench approached, she silently tensed and refused to move. When Reng rushed at Wendy, Shiro suddenly jumped midair and caught them both, taking them by surprise. Shiro's kick hit Renge's side, throwing her back in pain. She completely lost her balance. A crack sounded as debris collapsed. Shiro hit the ground hard, stunned, and Renji disappeared under the pile of broken stones. Shiro loomed over Renge, who now lay unconscious under the rubble. Smoke curled upward, and silence finally fell in the room. Shiro silently watched as Renji was detained. Yasus gave the order. The guards moved forward. Shiro remained calm and sharply reminded everyone, the wounded master Itsuki now needed not thanks but immediate help. Wendy insisted he must be urgently taken to the Adventurers Guild. There, his potions awaited in the stash in case of trouble. Renge collapsed. Yasus got bruises. He ordered the guards to escort her safely to his estate so they could take care of her there. Outside the Adventurers Guild, Yasus cast one last glance, making sure everything was ready to treat Itsuki. Itsuki lay unconscious, barely twitching. Wendy stayed by his side and quietly prayed for his safe recovery. Itsuki woke up confused and exhausted, shocked to find himself in the Adventurers Guild, where he was being carefully cared for. Shiro burst in emotionally and jumped on Itsuki, constantly apologizing, overwhelmed with guilt over his injury. Tears welled up in her eyes as Shiro confessed she couldn't protect him and fully blamed herself for that critical wound. Itsuki gently calmed Shiro, reminding her that her courage saved him from worse. He owed her his life. Wendy and Shiro, with tears in their eyes, watched as Itsuki thanked them both, grateful for their courage and support all along. Wendy explained that the potion saved Itsuki's life, but the scar would forever remind him of that wound. Itsuki anxiously asked about Sword and Aina, but no one had seen them since the attack. Suddenly, Aina entered and reported that Renge is now being held under supervision at Lord Yasus's estate. Aina returned in armor. Yasus told her everything, and her face grew grim as she stood before Itsuki. She bowed deeply, apologizing for the incident, and repeatedly insisted that this is the only lease she can offer now. Aina confessed that Renge was behind the attack, and this shocked everyone. Behind her apology hid an unexpected truth. Aina reveals Renge's past. Once they fought side by side, but now she is stunned and cannot comprehend her friend's betrayal. Wendy demanded an answer about where Sort was, and Aina hesitated, knowing the truth would only upset them more. At Yasus's estate, Rengli and Chains are accused of a series of crimes from assault to smuggling and breaking down gates. Shrouded in shame, Renche awaited punishment for attempted murder, destruction, and betrayal of those who trusted her. Ranger the guard confirmed that Itsuki was alive and, lowering her head, felt guilt quietly growing within her. Yasus delivered the verdict coldly, showing no sympathy and disappointment that her actions had not killed. Reng fiercely struggled against the enchanted chains, but even her strength could not break the bonds forged for monsters. These shackles suppressed both magic and power made of rare copper, and sealed by Yasus with talismans that blocked sorcery. Reng clenched her teeth. Meanwhile, someone was heavily panting, despair pulling her toward an unknown goal. Sort ran in shock in her eyes. Renge was bound and broken, and this cruel reality was impossible to comprehend. Sort found Ren under the roof, ashamed and trembling. She reached out, feeling danger creeping from behind. Yasus stood coldly by the door. Renge was restrained, and Sort raised her voice in protest. Angry Sort accused Yasus of cruelty and condemned him for locking up Renju without any reason. But Yasis barked back rudely, blaming Sorda said her recklessness caused harm and endangered her master. Yasis brought to light a hidden letter it was Sort's doing. He was the one who called Renge and unleashed this whole conflict. Yasis coldly reminded Sort that her intentions meant nothing in the eyes of justice, only the consequences matter. He called Renya a criminal, one of the allies was wounded, and in that chaos someone important almost died. Standing before Sort, Yasis condemned her again. As soon as guilt overwhelmed her, her nettle loudly shouted to stop him. She exploded, rattling chains, demanding why only Sort should bear the blame for Rengi's crime. Rengi passionately confessed. She took responsibility, said she acted alone to protect Aina and Sort, and does not regret it. Sort's crying subsided, and Renge's voice broke as she insisted that Renge should not bear everything alone. Sort finally openly admitted, neither she nor Aina were abused. Renge simply misunderstood their situation. Embarrassed, Sort apologized through tears. Renge was confused and worried, asked why she suddenly apologized like that. Lord Yeshus grimly explained that Sort and Aina were not abused, they themselves agreed to slavery because of debt. The truth surfaced, the guild wronged the merchant and Sort and Aina silently accepted the punishment. Rang realized the bitter truth, Sort and Aina became slaves and they both voluntarily accepted it together. Yasis explained that the content of the letter was misleading. It was not a warning, but only unfinished words from Lokak Guild. The letter arrived late, the damage had already been done before the whole truth came out. Sort was stunned, speechless, the truth overwhelmed her, and everything spun due to a misunderstanding she did not want at all. Previously, envy and fear clouded her, she resented his presence and even Aina's smile. Sort recalled joyful moments with Itsuki and Aina. Although she was offended, he greeted her warmly. Itsuki forgave her without hesitation. Holding a flower, he smiled, never judging her for what she felt. In his presence, anger melted into laughter, slowly happiness displaced guilt, and her heart began to open. But shame returned, she remembered secretly writing that letter, driven by confusion, fear, and pride. In tears, she admitted everything. She offended Renge, endangered Itsuki, and realized she behaved like a child. Sort fell to her knees, sobbing and begging for forgiveness. Her constant "forgive me" filled the quiet, tense room. She begged for mercy, admitted guilt, and was ready for anything, asking forgiveness from Vreng and pleading for his safety. Vreng, enraged, decisively defended Sort and exclaimed that accusing him of slave trading could bring even greater danger. Vreng again confessed. She asked instead to punish herself, but Yasis rejected the letter. He only wanted the truth. Through tears, they both apologized. Renge felt Sort's sincerity and was moved by her kindness, and then Lord Yasis quietly applauded. Yasis praised their unity, saying it was worthy of admiration, but his tone changed. The law and consequences would come anyway. He raised his hand authoritatively. Tears would not soften the verdict, they would be condemned without any exceptions. Yasis mocked Sort. Her fame as an adventurer now meant nothing. He threatened to hand her over to criminal slavery. Renge accused Yasis of guilt and he coldly brushed it off, saying their fate would be decided by the law, not feelings. Just at that moment, a man they all knew entered the room. Hitsuki quietly apologized, but there was weight in his voice. He calmly stepped forward and asked Yasis to listen. Smiling, he challenged this injustice. Yasis froze, surprised. Sort raised a tearful look full of hope. Now everything depended on the man's words. Itsuki stood up, surprising everyone. Though wounded, he confidently looked into the room, hiding his deep anxiety. Sorty froze, consumed by guilt. Seeing Itsuki alive, she burst into tears, unable to move, only whispering broken apologies. Falling to her knees, Sort confessed everything. Her voice trembled. She believed she had ruined everything beyond repair. Itsuki gently touched her head and smiled warmly, not in anger, but with quiet confidence she did not expect. Without hesitation, he pulled her to himself and whispered, "Leave everything to me." She finally broke down in tears. Renge slowly opened her eyes. The cold air stung her skin. Shackles clattered in the dim room. Itsuki flew in and demanded to remove the chains from Renge's, but Lord Yeshus coldly refused and instantly declared her a dangerous criminal. Itsuki tried to persuade him, even offered to compensate for the damages, but Yeshus coldly waved it off and shifted the verdict to the master. Still bargaining, Itsuki promised more gold and Yeshus slightly smirked, intrigued, but was not yet ready to act. Itsuki raised his voice and pleaded personally, but Yeshus's response was cold, final, and impossible. It doomed Rengis's fate. Ina decisively stepped forward, taking full responsibility. She begged Lord Yeshus to release Rangju and Sort. Yeshus coldly asked if she would become their criminal slave. Ina agreed, determined to protect her friends. Sort screamed, begging Aina not to do it. Itsuki was shocked by her resolve. Yasus, somewhat moved, clarified the confusion. Forgiveness alone was not enough. Justice had to follow, regardless of feelings. He explained that lawbreakers must be judged, order must prevail, even if hearts are broken in return. Yasus firmly refused. The law ruled over everything. He insisted that Itsuki abandon hope and submit. Itsuki froze for a moment and acknowledged that the law was unshakable, but he had not yet finished presenting his argument. He changed his approach, addressed Yasus not as a lord, but as a merchant, as a negotiator. Itsuki put himself on the line, his knowledge and origin as leverage, reminding Yasus how valuable an outsider's perspective can be. Turning around, Itsuki proposed an exchange, hinted at the promise of alchemy, and pushed a deal without any mercy. Itsuki suddenly completely changed his tone, offered a well-thought-out deal, and put himself as collateral to overturn the harsh decision. Despite Yasu's warnings, Itsuki and Aina stubbornly insisted. Itsuki proposed to settle it by a direct competition. Itsuki set a clear condition: if she wins, Renge and Sort will leave free and unharmed. Yasus revealed an unexpected twist: the last word was not his. Itsuki realized that mere persuasion would not be enough. Yasus leaned in interestedly, approved the proposal, but reminded them of the risk of losing everything. Itsuki made the final offer: lifelong service if they lose, and his willingness to sacrifice himself stunned everyone in the room. Renge screamed in disbelief, bound and stunned. She could not understand why he was willing to risk everything for her. Itsuki smiled gently, hinted to Aina how important Renge was, and thereby Sort justified his determination. Family meant everything. In the memory, Rangs again felt that desperate escape, and suddenly she was struck. She had always been protected. Tears streamed down her face, and Renge suddenly felt all her guilt and shame. She completely blamed herself, calling herself a fool. Shiro quietly warned Itsuki. Yasu's partner, Jordan, was not working, and now the match could become dangerously one-sided. Despite everything, Itsuki smiled confidently. Shiro's calm faith in him only strengthened his reckless determination. Filled with pride, Yasus accepted the challenge. As a traitor, retreat would ruin his reputation. Yasus revealed the format of the trial. It was a repetition of the previous trial, which required a fast and risky economic strategy. Itsuki was given the task to earn 120 million Nora in a week to achieve a complete victory. Yasus announced the rules. The shared pink rotor rights could not be used, but help from allies was still allowed. Until the game ended, Range and Sort were temporarily placed under Itsuki's care. A new day blossomed under a bright sky, and after long negotiations, calm finally descended on the group. Tired but relieved, Itsuki led everyone outside. Their exhausted faces hid the burden of the night. Rang stopped him. Tears welled up again. She begged for forgiveness, drowning in guilt and still seeking atonement herself. Sort broke down and confessed everything. In tears, she insisted that Ranji was not to blame, it was all her fault. Ina apologized to Itsuki, and he reassured them both the pain was gone, they had endured enough. When the sunlight returned, Itsuki smiled and announced that it was time to rest. Their long suffering was finally over. They returned home but felt that something was wrong. Wendy greeted them with a smile that hid deep anger. Itsuki apologized for his absence. Wendy recognized Renji and, quietly sneaking up, suddenly slapped him. Wendy calmly took control of the situation. She asked everyone to settle down and prepare for breakfast, and gradually calm prevailed. Alone, Wendy confessed that she was afraid of being left behind again. She just wanted to be accepted. Itsuki did not give false hope, only the truth. Some things cannot be fixed, but comfort can still remain. At breakfast together, they shared laughter and bread. A slow life awaited them, but not yet. Itsuki woke up late in a soft bed. Far from home, birds chirped behind unfamiliar walls. Reflecting on his new world, Itsuki stood and looked at the city, not knowing what trouble awaited him. Shiro and Renge mistakenly took him for a threat, and their ambush instantly shattered his peaceful life. Chaos covered everything, but Itsuki survived the clash. Now he must defeat Yasusa to help his friends. And 7 days remained until the final. Itsuki worked tirelessly, crafting supplies for the trial that could decide everything. Yasus set strict conditions: earn 120 million Nords in a week without any help. Itsuki realized forbidden items had ruined his best plan, and crafting alone would not bring the needed money so quickly. Half the goal was defended and the rest remained in question. He headed to the bathhouse and met Shiro. Shiro insisted on joining him. Itsuki smiled, hoping the warm water would calm his anxious thoughts. While he rested, he scolded Shiro for stealing food. She shyly apologized, saying she was just hungry. Itsuki accidentally entered the bath and froze. Renge and Sort were already bathing there together. Panic broke out when Sort grabbed a bucket. Itsuki hurriedly apologized, covering his eyes from embarrassment. Still embarrassed, Sort covered herself and glared fiercely, and her quiet words made Itsuki turn away from shame. Renge and Sort sat silently. Itsuki, confused by Sort's sudden change in mood, tried to ask what was wrong. Sort suddenly flared up, shouting at him. Her irritation burst out. Renge watched silently, and Itsuki received a wet hit. Shiro stared at Renge and only then called her. Shiro approached, spread his arms, and demanded to take a shower. Everyone together helped bathe Shiro. Steamed rose. Sorte calmly guided her, and in Renge's soul it quietly became warmer. Renji broke the silence and asked if Shiro was injured, and Shiro smiled and without hesitation praised her strength. Everyone laughed. Despite the recent reprimand, Shiro's cheerful mood returned again. Even Ren looked more relaxed. Later, Wendy offered snacks. Aina tasted one and quietly whispered thank you, surprised by how this flavor warmed and soothed. Wendy smiled and handed over the treats. Aina praised her skill, quietly and without hesitation, calling her incredible. Aina admitted that although she was strong, she felt useless and was ashamed that she relied on Itsuki more than she had planned. Turning her back, Aina called herself pathetic. Wendy responded calmly, without judgment, just silently listening. Wendy confessed her devotion. She would give everything for Itsuki, but he always kept an emotional distance from her. Itsuki took her hands and said he loved Wendy. Tears welled up in her eyes. Finally, she heard what she needed. Wendy encouraged Aina, sincerely saying she believed in her, and Aina barely smiled, hearing hope where she expected a quarrel. When the sunlight broke through the sky, Aina stood firm and vowed to give all her strength. Itsuki's face twisted with tension. Only 5 days left and progress had stalled, though he was doing everything he could. Panic gripped him when he imagined himself bound and punished by Yasus. He knew he could no longer handle everything alone. Having no other choice, Itsuki considered Darwin, though he doubted thought of the danger lurking behind this choice deeply troubled him. While Itsuki was tormented by anxiety, Wendy quietly entered and informed that an unexpected guest was waiting downstairs. To his horror, it was Darwin's daughter with a warm smile. Panic seized him. Why did she come right now? Trying to stay calm, Itsuki asked what Mera was doing here. She recalled the incident at the brothel and he immediately turned pale. She asked about money. Itsuki admitted that it was not easy for him, and she listened. There was quiet sympathy in her voice. With an interesting sparkle in her eyes, Mera suggested looking inside. If everything is difficult, maybe the problem is in him. This made us doubt Itsuki's abilities, hinting that his hidden powers might be more than just alchemy. Leaning closer, she smiled and, sensing that he might be hiding something, inquired about his new skills. Itsuki sank deep into thought after Mater mentioned the goddess. He was puzzled. What skills had he inherited? He activated the status card, called it up with a single touch. Mater, intrigued, asked him to show everything. On the shining screen, various skills were listed. Alchemy was especially high, and among the unique ones, pocket money immediately caught the eye. Itsuki, stunned, noticed that his alchemical skills had improved, and suddenly realized how often he had been using them unnoticed. Looking at his hand, he felt his progress and, surrounded by tools, took up work again to create something useful. Itsuki meticulously studied forging and hand molding. Both had their advantages, but their limitations could not be ignored. At first, he dreamed of making unique hand-molded products, but then he considered mass-producing fakes even if the quality would suffer. Mera reminded him that he was a foreigner now. He had to plan sales and resources very carefully. Looking ahead, Itsuki gathered his resolve and prepared to speak, addressing everyone in the manor with a request for support. Sort, Renge, Aina, and others listened silently. Itsuki's request would already change their shared future. Sort, Renge, and Aina suddenly burst with enthusiasm, shouting loyally even before they heard what Itsuki really needed. Itsuki handed them a list of resources and urgently asked them to gather them, hinting that nothing could be crafted without them. His second demand shocked them. One of them had to undress. Confusion instantly filled the quiet room. They misunderstood his intention, and Aina bravely volunteered, not suspecting that he actually meant something completely different for the alchemy trials. Girls ignited with energy together, confident and united, they set out to fulfill his request. Itsuki asked Wendy to help. She immediately agreed, while Shiro dozed off as everyone else got to work. He worked all night, crafting and molding by hand, and fatigue overwhelmed him despite the strengthening potions. Wendy gently covered him with a blanket, whispering words of gratitude. His last words before sleep were about tomorrow's sales task.